This boy was the final student to take the admission exam for the academy. He thought it was simply a waste of time, since nothing about it seemed like a real challenge for him. Ban had already battled those monsters plenty of times before, and his special ability allowed him to grow stronger each time he took down formidable foes. He could even absorb various kinds of attributes. He was summoned to a different dimension where this school was established to train the mightiest warriors, preparing them for the day they would conquer the Tower of Babel. Yuan still didn't quite grasp how the rules of this world function, but he recalled reading a book as a kid that narrated the tale of that tower. He took the test and smashed through everything effortlessly, as if it were nothing. The moment he passed, he was teleported directly to the academy with just a few minutes to spare before the ceremony kicked off. Folks were astonished since the deadline for new students had already come and gone. But soon enough, they started laughing when they realized he was just a human. That's when Ban recognized that in this academy, the students weren't human. There were all sorts of unique races. And to make matters worse, he could see everyone's attributes, which were spectacularly strong. A group of humans called out to him. They told him that lower races had to sit in the back. His spot was already saved for the so-called inferiors. But Ban noticed something odd. These individuals who were supposed to be the weakest actually boasted monstrous attributes. That guy was a threat. That girl was a powerhouse. And the other one had stats higher than anyone else around. Up to this point, Ban believed he was the monster, but now he understood he needed to level up a whole lot more to match their strength. He introduced himself to a girl named Rushel. She was so adorable that he couldn't help but be captivated by her beauty. Then he greeted another girl, but unlike Rushel, she had sharp, intimidating eyes. The truth was, she was intrigued by the artifact hidden on the protagonist's arm. He revealed it was Ava, a sentient artifact. The girl's name was Yuan, daughter of a Muran master. That made Yuan wonder if she practiced martial arts and utilized key control to create explosions. Everyone chuckled at his comments. The girl blushed and admitted he wasn't entirely wrong. The blonde boy was called Slight, and it seemed like only he and Rushel were actually humans there. But before they could chat more, a brilliant light broke their conversation. The ceiling above opened up, and a loud noise suddenly rang out. Everyone felt their bodies crushed by an intense pressure. Slight and Ban experienced real dread. The force was unbelievable. Yuan sensed it was coming from the sky, but he couldn't wrap his head around what it was. This marked the start of the 2557th ceremony for admission into the Union Academy. Congratulations to everyone. Later, the 4 special admission students gathered in Professor Yumina's office. She asked if they found the principal's speech engaging, and an awkward silence settled over the room. Breaking the ice, Yuan said it was amazing and inquired, "That giant eye?" Was that the principal? The surprise on Yumina's face was authentic. Yan thought to herself that the principal's presence was cloaked by immense magic. How did this newcomer even manage to see him? Yumina confirmed that yes, that was indeed the principal, a being who rarely reveals himself. She then turned to Yuan and informed him that he would have a private meeting with the principal later. Next, she spoke to everyone, formally introducing herself as the instructor assigned to their special class for the next 5 years. Her message was straightforward. Their success was her success, so they better give it their all. She warned them to be cautious of the envy and resentment from the regular students who would view them as outsiders who didn't deserve to be there. Stick together, she cautioned, because from this day forward, you are a team that will climb the tower side by side. To wrap things up, she announced that the academy had prepared a welcome gift for them. A brilliant light flooded the room, and each of them found a necklace with a pendant in their hands. "Is this a student ID?" asked Slight. Yumina explained that the pendant is much more than that. It's an ID, a pass to the facilities, and a personal teleportation device to show them. Slight fiddled with the pendant accidentally, and in the blink of an eye, Yuan and Rushel vanished and reappeared in the same spot, totally bewildered. Yumina smiled and added that the pendant is their only ticket to enter the tower, so they should cherish it. The 3 left the room confused about why Yuan was sticking around. Yan ever watchful guesses the reason behind it. It's likely because he was the only one who made direct eye contact with the principal. The scene shifts. Yuan is slouched down in an oversized chair in a notably quiet and imposing room. He can't shake off the feeling that he must have done something wrong to warrant a private chat. A strong yet calm voice fills the room from a figure lurking in the shadows. Banuan, says the principal, "Look at me. There's no need to feel scared. After all, this isn't my real form." In the imposing room, Yuan keeps his gaze fixed on the floor, feeling overwhelmed by the principal's presence. The serene, ancient voice speaks again. "It's okay. You can look at me." With a hint of reluctance, he finally lifts his head and the sight leaves him utterly puzzled. There was no one seated in the principal's chair. Instead, a simple rag doll was perched on the desk. The voice was emanating from it. "Should I call you principal or chancellor?" you ask the doll. The answer is straightforward. "You can call me master." The master then goes on to explain why they are meeting. He mentions that he typically doesn't interfere with how students develop. If they're weak, he lets them be. His ultimate goal is to observe with his own eyes the one who will finally reach the top of the tower. Yuan quietly processes this information. For the master, it was a display, but for him, the tower represented his family's legacy, something he was ready to risk everything for. What did it mean for everyone else? Why did so many congregate there with the same ambition? Breaking the silence, he looks at the doll and asks the burning question. What exactly is the tower? The rag doll pauses and then reveals that the tower is a gateway to the divine, a form of judgment. The response resonates in Yuan's mind as he tries to grasp whether divine referred to gods or something entirely different. Before he could delve too deeply into thought, the master continues, saying that he sees in Yuan the greatest potential he's encountered in centuries. Because of this, he would make an exception to his usual rule of not interfering. The doll extends one of its fabric arms toward Yuan. In that moment, the ID pendant in his pocket begins to glow brightly. What's going on? The protagonist asks, alarmed. The master explains that he has expanded his privileges, granting him unrestricted access to any dungeon beyond the academy to sharpen his skills before confronting the tower. Outside the academy, Yuan questions, but his inquiry is interrupted as a portal opens beneath him, pulling him downward. As he struggles to maintain his balance, the master imparts one final piece of advice. If your advancement is remarkable, I will unlock additional privileges. What privileges? He shouts, already being engulfed by the darkness. The last thing he hears is the doll's voice. The privilege of exploring the tower on your own. I'll be waiting with anticipation. The journey is both instant and bewildering. Yuan tumbles from the portal and lands softly on something unexpected. How was the meeting with the principal? A gentle voice inquires. He looks up to find himself nestled in the lap of a professor, adorned with flowers in her hair, causing him to leap to his feet, his face completely flushed. She chuckles and mentions that the principal always sends his visitors away like this. She then takes hold of Yuan's ID, her eyes growing wide. Incredible, she murmurs. The principal granted a student permission to exit the academy. She elaborates on the immense fortune he has the opportunity to roam freely in dungeons and become stronger without restrictions from the school. Only then does he realize it wasn't a punishment for weakness. It was a gift for his potential. The professor sighs with a touch of envy and a bright demeanor, suggests he check out a city called Ronica, renowned for its stunning temple. A little while later, we find Yuan strolling down a lengthy stone pathway with a magnificent city in the background. He recalls the professor's request for a bottle or two of alcohol as a keepsake and smiles. The exchange of information truly paid off. His thoughts then drift to the last chat he had with his grandfather. In the memory, the old man hands him a small pouch asking if he was ready. Inside the pouch, a stack of gold bars gleamed. This is our ancestral legacy, the grandfather said with a grin. Gold holds value in every realm. Carrying such weight used to be risky, but with his inventory, it was perfect preparation. He takes a few bars, feeling the weight of his heritage and the responsibilities resting in his hands. At last, he arrives in the city. Ronica is an energetic city where ancient buildings mix with amazing technology. Flying cars and bikes zip through the skies, and Yuan stares at them in wonder. Lost in thought, he gets approached by two city guards. Their initial suspicion quickly transforms into instant respect once they spot the academy's uniform on his shoulder. They salute him and share that the peace in the city is thanks to the protection of the academy and the chancellor. Noticing he's new here, the guards offer to assist him with anything. Anything, Yuan replies, a cheeky grin spreading across his face as he points toward a motorcycle soaring overhead. I want one of those, he exclaims, his eyes sparkling. What's the price? Far away from the academy, Yuan was soaring through the skies above Ronica, racing his newly acquired flying motorcycle across wide fields and diving off cliffs to enjoy the wind rushing against his face. It felt like absolute freedom. The decision to buy it was impulsive, but totally worth it. When he asked the guards how much it cost, they told him the basic model was 250,000 ronis. Not realizing its worth, he pulled out one of his gold bars and asked the guard how much it was valued at. The guard's reaction was pure astonishment. That single gold bar, as he would soon learn, was worth over 7 million rainies. While flying Eve, his trusty snake-shaped weapon appeared on his shoulder. Thrilled, he asked her what she thought about the journey. He had infused the motorcycle with the essence of both demon and ghost, making it a living relic, a sibling for Eve, which he named Lilith. The two seemed to bond well, exploring this new world together. Back at the academy, freedom was interrupted by an intense headache. Yuan was slumped over the table as Slight shot him a furious glare. I'm really let down, the blonde said, placing a glass of water in front of him. The source of his frustration was that after their first meeting, Yuan simply vanished without saying a word. He mumbled an apology, blaming his professor for insisting on drinking with him, but Slight wasn't buying it. What's that, asks Yuan, the girl with white hair pointing at an emblem on Yuan's shirt. He sheepishly explains that he was named class president. Slight seems to agree with the decision, but Duko Yan quickly interrupts him. I'm the strongest, so this position ought to be mine, she states, glaring straight at Yuan. Slight grows frustrated with her self-importance. You always think you're the best, he snaps back. The tension escalates when Du Yan reveals that she knows about Slight's plan to ascend the tower alone. Caught off guard, the swordsman stutters, while Royal, the pink-haired girl, watches the whole scene with interest. Overwhelmed by the fighting and his pounding headache, Yuan rests his head on the table. He assesses his new team. Slight is a proud but clueless lion. Du Yan is a fierce street cat who easily makes enemies, and Rushel is like an adorable puppy. Letting out a sigh, he raises his hand to grab their attention. The class president doesn't need to be the strongest, he argues. If that were true, they'd just make solo decisions. The true role of a leader is to unite everyone. After much discussion, Du Yan finally relents. She stands, eyeing Yuan up and down, accepting the outcome. But remember this, she says with a pointed look at Slight. To get what we want, we sometimes have to accept things we don't like. As she walks away, Slight trembles with anger, and Yuan wonders how he'll get those two prideful characters to collaborate. Seizing the moment of silence, Rukal approaches him, her eyes sparkling. Hey, where did that cute little white snake go? Yuan's first task as leader kicked off with a challenge. During the inaugural practical class in a training area, shared with other classes, a student with a body made of stone from Class 1 started challenging the professor. The regular students who already held resentment toward the special admissions for their favoritism began to stir, all eager for a chance to take them on. Yuan just played it cool, but Slight was already bracing for this, aware of the animosity from the other classes. Amidst the chaos, the stone student Erector by name sees Professor Yumina's brooch on Yuan's uniform, a marker of his prestigious status. Furious at the thought of a weakling wearing such an honor, he shouts, demanding to be the first to battle. The professor, intrigued by the rivalry, turns to Yuan and says, "All right, I declare Yuan will face Erector." Meanwhile, in her office, Professor Yumina couldn't believe her eyes as she read the reports from the joint class. A practical combat session in the very first period. What a ridiculous and arrogant call. She couldn't help but wonder who cooked up such a hostile course. Meanwhile, back on the training field, the substitute professor was calling out the matchup, and Yuan calmly raised his hand. Flashing a charming smile, he tried to keep it respectful. "Professor, with all due respect, my talents aren't really made for combat." The professor adjusted his glasses with a smirk. Baloney. -3 points off your grade for making weak excuses. It was obvious the professor enjoyed trying to make him look foolish. Thinking quickly, Yuan decided to try a different tactic. I was accepted through special admission for unique skills that don't involve fighting. This attempt to dodge just rubbed Professor Moore the wrong way, and he shouted that he wouldn't stand for any disrespect. -5 points. Yuan raised his hand again, this time one last time. "Okay, I'll fight," he said, surprising everyone. "But give me a week to gear up. I promise I'll be ready." The room fell silent, followed by whispers and some snickering from the crowd. To them, it sounded like a confession of cowardice. A girl with blue hair and a witch's hat raised an eyebrow, skeptical that he could really pull anything off in just 7 days. Yet the professor saw a golden opportunity. With a sly grin, he said, "Perfect. The fight between Banu Wan and Erector is scheduled for 1 week from today, and it'll be live-streamed on the Academy's website for everyone to watch." He was clearly aiming for a public shaming. Yuan stared at his opponent, the towering stone giant Erector, and activated his eyes. The stats were brutal, 5 times the health and 10 times the strength compared to him. The odds were staggering. Still, a plan began to take shape in his mind. As he plotted, he noticed the worried expressions on Slight and Rial. He needed to bulk up to compete with these titans. Suddenly, he caught sight of Du Yan stretching at the edge of the field. She turned to Class 1 and announced in a frosty tone, "So, you wanted a taste of the talents from special admission? Well, I focus on combat. Who's stepping up first?" Yuan assessed her and was blown away. Her stats were so outrageous that he could hardly take them in. She was a double S-rank powerhouse. The bravado of Class 1 evaporated instantly. The crowd that had been all hyped for a brawl sank into a chilling silence. Growing impatient, Duko Yan pointed right at Erector with a predatory grin, beckoning him with a finger. "You're the one who was yapping the loudest. Come on, I'll wipe the floor with you." The stone giant froze beads of sweat forming on his rocky face. His target was the seemingly weak newcomer, not this unstoppable force in the guise of a woman. Yuan realized that if this fight went down, his opponent wouldn't be in shape for their showdown next week. Even though he felt no sympathy for Erector, Yuan bolted toward his classmate. "Don't fight him, he's my opponent next week." Dako Yan looked at him, surprised. "I'm just trying to help you," she replied. He thanked her for her concern but insisted I need to prove myself with my own hands. "Please understand." A curious smile crept onto her lips. "I figured you were just some guy with a few tricks up your sleeve. Maybe I misjudged you." Pleased with his answer, she turned to the crowd one last time. Anyone else, she called out, but everyone looked away. You all bark like mad dogs, but when the cage opens, you scurry away with your tails tucked. As you and the rest exhaled in relief, the humiliation only fueled the resentment of the regular students. From the stands, a new, powerful, arrogant voice boomed across the field. Who are you calling a dog girl? All eyes shifted to a blonde guy with imposing horns radiating an overwhelming aura of strength. It's always the weak ones who stick together, he sneered, snarling as if to protect his little gang. Little dogs are just a pitiful sight. Du Yan's focus shifted entirely to him as a new, much more perilous confrontation was about to unfold. The horned man wore a grin full of arrogance, confident that no one there could stand against him. Yet Yuan caught something more. That guy's power was in an entirely different league, even amongst the prodigies. Who is he? Yuan asked, slight answered tension palpable in his voice. That's Orta Regent of the Katui's dimension. He belongs to one of the 10 great families ruling the highest dimensions. As Orta descended from the stands, even his own friends looked uneasy. He's part of one of the 10 prominent families that rule the upper echelon dimensions. As Orma stepped down from the stands, even his buddies seemed on edge. He strides over to the substitute professor and insists that the conflict should be made official. The professor, sporting a wicked grin, whips out a recording device. He's planning to livestream everything on the Academy's internet, Slight explains. Slight's surprise doubles when Yuan not only knows what the internet is, but also digs into his inventory and connects to the Academy's channel. Rachel and Slight huddle together, eyes wide with amazement at what appears on the screen. On the live feed, the professor's smug grin reveals his intention to publicly humiliate the special admission team. But Yuan glances at Doko Yan, who's already in the arena's center, and senses that things won't unfold according to the professor's plans. The two fighters stand opposite each other, their auras distorting the air around them. Make the first move, Ortima says with a sneer. Duan flings her hand in a dismissive motion. You're the new one here. I'll let you go first, feeling insulted. Orta raises his hand, and with a voice that resonates with authority commands kneel. An invisible tsunami of force erupts from him. A suffocating pressure not only slams into Doko Yan, but spreads across the entire arena. Students tumble from their seats in the stands. Slight gasps as the air seems to rush from his lungs, feeling as though he's being crushed. Rachel, frightened, grips Yuan's arm, shivering. That's a distortion of natural law, Yuan whispers, while Slight gapes at him, taken aback by his insight. Yet at the center, Doko Yan stands still unfazed, a dark, foreboding aura. A bloodthirst that felt as sharp as glass in the air surges from her. With a simple, graceful gesture, she dispels Orta's pressure as easily as swatting away a breeze. The professor is left aghast. Orta's team can only stare in disbelief. Even Yuan, who always knew she was strong, realizes her power exceeds his expectations. Your strength is as absurd as those horns on your head, she retorts, her tone icy. In the blink of an eye, she vanishes and reappears right in front of Orta, delivering a punishing kick to his midsection. Caught off guard, he can barely raise his arms to block. The hit sends him staggering back. You're not repeating the same trick twice, she warns, and the hunt begins. What follows is utter chaos. Doko Yan moves like a shadow, smooth and deadly. Her strikes become a whirlwind of punches and kicks that Orta reliant on his immense power struggles to keep up with. He attempts to counter, but his actions come off as slow and obvious. She dodges effortlessly, landing a precise kick to his chin that sends him reeling. She's taking down a regent. Slight breathes out in disbelief. Yuan observes the scene not with disbelief but with a critical eye. His ability suppresses an opponent's movements, but it doesn't work on her. He isn't used to a fight relying on his own body. Slight turns to him amazed. How does he catch these details amidst all that chaos? Orta feels more humiliated with each strike he endures. Is that all you can do? Talk tough? She mocks him, gliding past another frantic swing. Pushed to his breaking point, Orta's composure crumbles. With a furious roar, he unleashes his full aura. His eyes blaze with fury. How dare you insult me this way? He bellows, energy bursting around him. I won't let this slide. You'll pay for this insult with your life. Confronting the storm of his power and rage, Doko Yan simply meets his glare with a cold, defiant stare, ready for whatever comes next. Standing firm against Ortima's uncontrolled fury, Doko Yan stays calm. A predator biding her time for the perfect moment to strike. That's a topic you shouldn't take so lightly, she remarks, as her own threatening aura starts to build, preparing for her counterattack. Just as she gets ready to charge, the arena fills with the sound of clapping. It's Professor Yuma stepping onto the battlefield. Her mere presence diffuses the animosity between the two fighters, and vibrant flowers burst forth from the stone floor, filling the air with a delightful springtime fragrance. Stunned, the two duelers watch as petals swirl around them. With a tranquil smile, but radiating undeniable authority, Yuma reprimands them. The Academy doesn't promote pointless brawls. Save that energy for the tower. Seething and embarrassed, Orta grits. His teeth turns away and leaves silently. "You're incredibly strong, Professor." Doko-yan remarks a rare note of admiration in her voice. Happy to hear that Yumina beams and Doko-yan rejoins her group. "What did you think of the fight?" she asks Yuan. He responds that just observing was super helpful, but his words are interrupted by a headbutt to his back. Taken aback, he turns around to find Rutel, who was quivering with fear. Using him as a shield to hide from Du Yan, he reassures her while the white-haired warrior looks on completely unaware of the chaos her presence was causing. Still on the field, Yumina is publicly giving the assistant professor a tongue lashing, making it clear that his behavior was totally unacceptable and a quick sorry wouldn't cut it. Then she gracefully strides over to Yuan, points to the representative's pin on his chest, and with a little flick adjusts it. "For a class representative, maintaining dignity is key," she says with a cheeky wink. The gesture, so casual and close, sparks a wave of jealous and furious glares from all the guys nearby. You won the charm factor. Instead of helping, the professor only stoked the flames. After the battle, the rumors spread like wildfire. The video the professor shared to embarrass them backfired spectacularly. The footage showed Du Yan's total domination over Orma, with the comments going wild. Before long, two figures stole the spotlight. Dako-yan, now dubbed the Silver Queen, and Yuan, the master negotiator who cleverly carved out time for his own match. His interaction with Professor Yumina at the video's end only stirred up more speculation, making the special admission students the biggest stars on campus. Reading the comments with his crew, Yuan chuckles. Next to him, Slight is struggling to make sense of the internet slang utterly lost. "No surprise they're talking about us," Duan says, then drops a bombshell. But that guy Ortima wasn't even the strongest in their class. She remembers the blue-haired girl with the witch's hat. There was at least one other person who was more capable than him. Yuan admits he missed that as he was too focused on the fight. The chat is interrupted when they spot Ruhul sitting alone, still terrified of Du Yan and unable to approach her. Realizing the situation couldn't go on like this, especially since they shared a room, Yuan decides to intervene. He opens his inventory and pulls out a glass jar. "I think I have just the thing," he says, revealing a jar of special elixir jelly. As he opens it, an overwhelmingly sweet and enticing aroma fills the air. Rushel's head whips up instantly, her eyes glued to the jar. Yuan spreads the golden jelly on some bread and offers it to the group. Slight and Doan take a bite, their eyes going wide. "This is amazing," the blonde exclaims. Even Doan's frosty demeanor melts for a moment. "It's incredible," she stutters, smiling. And Yuan turns to Rook, who is already nearly drooling. "Come join us." Hesitant, she moves closer and asks for a piece of bread. As she takes her first bite, joy lights up her eyes. The subtle flavor and calming effect of the elixir start to dissolve her fears. As Rushel enjoys her bread, Yuan hands another piece to Dako-yan. "Think of this as a little favor," he says nonchalantly. At the mention of a favor, Dako-yan's expression shifts. She stands with sudden determination. Before Yuan can react, she yanks him by the tie, pulling him close while he's still holding a piece of bread up in the air. In exchange for the jelly, she says with sudden seriousness, "I'll give you a private martial arts lesson." Before Yuan can respond, the world around him blurs. They're in a Spartan training room mirroring the focused and disciplined atmosphere of her mind. Dako-yan picks up a wooden sword. "Don't move carelessly," she warns, and with a simple swing, the blade slices through the air, creating a breeze. She takes her stance, and in the next moment, a fierce pressure radiates from her. She charges forward. The movement is a blur, a perfect thrust so swift that it parts the air in front of it, stopping just a hair's breadth from Yuan's nose. He stares at her blankly, processing what just took place. This, she explains, is a thrust, an attack, without the slightest hint of doubt or hesitation. It's hard for him to believe a human could pull off something so flawless. But in that fleeting moment, his power did more than just observe. It absorbed. A new concept sparked in his mind penetration. As he got lost in thought, trying to grasp why that particular concept resonated with him, Du Yan snaps him back to reality. Focus. A thrust isn't limited to just one form. She starts to unleash a sequence of strikes into the air, each one slightly unique from the last. How many times should you jab with how much power? What should you mimic? There are so many variables, she says. Yet the core principle is that just one strong thrust is all that's truly necessary. Never forget that her words and actions, which perfected a concept into its most pure form, contained the essence of truth. She hands him the sword. "Now it's your turn." With the wooden weapon in hand, Yuan asks her not to chuckle at his effort. "If you imitated me flawlessly on the first try," she grins, "my decade of training would have been pointless." He shifts, mimicking the stance and strike she had demonstrated. The instant his thrust slices through the air, Dako-yan's smile disappears. She was in disbelief. He somehow captured the essence of the strike just from watching it once, yet Yuan felt something wasn't right. Until now, he had been blending various concepts. But her lesson made him see where he erred. He needed to focus on strengthening one concept at a time. Removing his shirt for freer movement, He zeroes in. He repeats the motion, pondering, why should it penetrate? The answer hits him like a lightning bolt, because the initial user, Yuan, believes with all her heart that the true essence of a thrust is to break through the target. With this thought in mind, he channels all his focus, power and conviction into a single strike. The outcome is entirely transformed. The strike through the air is exponentially more powerful, as if he and the sword had become the true representation of a thrust. Stop, she commands. Noticing the effort draining him, he collapses to his knees, gasping as a wave of system notifications floods his vision. Martial arts concept acquired, swordsman concept absorbed as a subconcept. He glances at his stats, and his jaw nearly hits the floor. His attributes had shot up dramatically. The swordsman concept, which had barely budged before, had surged. His combat skills had essentially doubled. I never thought I could be outdone like this, she murmurs, genuinely impressed, feeling shy. He scratches his head and insists he was just imitating, and that he learned quickly because she was an amazing teacher. The compliment surprises her, and she turns her face to hide a light blush on her cheeks. Happy with the progress, Yuan thanks her and offers her an elixir as payment. Just one elixir doesn't come close to covering this lesson, she replies, and he tenses up, unsure of what else he could offer. Seeing his unease, she beams. Don't worry, she says with a mischievous glint in her eyes. I'll take my payment over time. Get ready. With the mood taking a cheerful turn, she reminds him about the next class, and they teleport away. Yuan was still lost in thought about her mysterious smile when the scene shifts. In the academy hallways, Rachel and Slight stroll distractedly while scrolling through a phone. Suddenly, Rushel accidentally walks into a group of students from another class who glare at her with hostility and menacing vibes. The group's ringleader slams his hand against the wall, blocking her way. Where do you think you're going? Cutie, he says, smirking wickedly. The bully continues to obstruct the path, but Ral, although visibly frustrated, doesn't back down. Noticing the situation, Slight jumps in without hesitation. What do you want with my classmate? He inquires, his tone as cold as ice. The bully shoots him an annoyed glare. Get out of my way, pest. Just then, Yuan and Yuan materialize in the hallway, teleported. The sudden appearance of the now renowned Silver Queen changes everything. Recognizing the warrior who had bested Orda, the bully group retreats instantly, fleeing, but not before hurling a subtle threat. This time, Rushel takes refuge behind Slight, thanking him for standing up for her. Yuan notices the simmering anger in his friend's eyes. This wasn't the end. Moments later in the classroom, an elderly professor is lecturing about the Union's history. But for the bullying group, the class serves as an opportunity to keep up their harassment. Secretly, they start snapping pictures of Rushel, whispering nasty comments amongst themselves. The young woman tries to block it out, but her sorrow and discomfort are clear. Both Slight and Yuan feel their anger boiling. It doesn't matter where you are, Yuan thinks. Human cruelty is always the same. Unable to hold back, Slight suddenly stands up, capturing the professor's attention. Excuse me, but some students are disrupting the class. The old professor simply asks for quiet, not paying much attention. Resumes his explanation. Seeing this, the bullies quietly tease, Slight calling him innocent and accusing him of trying too hard to impress. Things heat up when they ask if he and Rushel are a couple. That was just too much, and tears start rolling down Rel's cheeks. It was the final straw. With a sharp snap, Slight breaks a pencil in his grip on the edge of losing it. But before he can stand up, a steady hand rests on his shoulder. It was you-know-who. Take it easy, he whispers. Seriously, Slight responds in shock. Starting trouble here is only going to make it worse, Yuan says, showing him his phone screen. Just watch. On the screen, a live stream on Union Tuber is playing. Slight gets it right away, and a sly grin spreads across his face. Turning to the bullies, he shouts, "Keep laughing, please." The audience is totally loving it. Confused, they glance around and see nothing out of the ordinary. What they didn't realize was that right behind them, little Eve was holding a camera in her mouth, capturing every word and giggle since the beginning. In seconds, the live stream's comments section erupts with hundreds of messages of outrage. Great move. Yuan comments quietly to Yuan, who simply replies, "They messed with one of us. They're not getting away with it." By the time the three knuckleheads finally grasp what's going down, it's too late. They scramble to hide and desperately search for the camera until one of them spots the small white snake. But before they can reach her, Eve vanishes in a heartbeat. The commotion grabs the professor's attention, who this time has lost his patience. "I want your names and get out of my classroom right now," he commands. As they're being shown the door, the professor grumbles that they'll be getting low grades. One of them thought the punishment was too light, but Rushel, looking a bit relieved, disagrees. "That's plenty," she says, genuinely thanking the two with a bright smile. "I'm all right, all thanks to you." This moment of gratitude brings the group together. Even Yuan flashes a rare slight smile. They agree that having Yuan as class president makes things a lot smoother, but the peace didn't last long. After class, the three expelled bullies were waiting for them in the hallway. Anxious Rushel hides behind Yuan. The group's anger flares back up again. This time, the bullies weren't empty-handed. They were armed, staring at the weapons aimed at them. Slight steps forward with a chilling composure. "What do you want?" Facing the three armed bullies, Slight stood unfazed. Their leader demanded an explanation for the humiliation caused by the recording, which they claimed had wrecked their grades. Yuan glanced over and noticed the substitute professor watching from a distance, doing absolutely nothing, even while his students were brandishing weapons. It was pure contempt for those below them. The yelling erupted once more, but Slight, with a terrifying calm, simply stared at them and uttered a single word: "Barbarians." The insult was the spark. The leader lunged forward, sword aimed. "What did you say, you worthless creature?" In response, Slight unfurled his own sword. With a relaxed, almost careless motion, a fan of golden light sliced through the air. The bully's sword shattered in two, the blade flying away. The shock was complete. Yuan, observing the strike closely, noticed the golden energy that surrounded Slight's blade and was learning something new. Meanwhile, the aggressor was shaking with fear. Slight moved forward, resting his golden sword against the boy's neck, who crumpled to his knees. Terrified. "If only you had asked nicely," Slight said in a chilling tone. "I would have considered talking." His demeanor had shifted entirely, turning cold and authoritative. As the bully's friends yelled curses, Slight turned to the professor. "What's the punishment for students who attack classmates with real weapons?" The professor, caught off guard, looked away and said, "The academy actually encouraged combat practice, but I never agreed to a fight." Slight shot back. The professor attempted to shift the blame, accusing him of drawing his sword first and pretending not to have noticed the earlier taunts. Slight's temper erupted, and the golden glow on his sword flared. Before he could act, he felt a tap on his cheek. It was Yuan. With just a gentle touch, she dissipated Slight's aura, pulling him back to reality. Shocked, he made his sword disappear, as the professor, realizing he had lost control, exited muttering. "Do then," scolded Slight, and Yuan noticed that the golden sword seemed to impact his friend's personality. Later during lunch, Yuan called out Slight for his hasty behavior. Feeling remorseful, the blonde said he was sorry, insisting he could handle the sword. Du stepped in to break up the disagreement, reminding everyone of Professor Yumina's caution. If they kept showing off their strength, the tension with other students would only escalate. She then turned to Yuan. "You're the spokesperson. What's the strategy?" Yuan paused for a moment, realizing the academy's system was plagued by bias and social status. He asked the group, "What does it take to win over the crowd?" "Power," they suggested. Yuan beamed. "Nope, it's something else. Something we already possess." He shaped a square with his fingers like a camera lens. The idea was straightforward, yet genius. Start a channel on Union Tuber to showcase their everyday lives. Cultivate a positive public image and shift how people viewed them. The first video featured a training match between Du Yan and a hesitant Slight. To push him to fight earnestly, Do attacked, seriously, sending him crashing to the ground and teasing him until he finally fought back with everything he had. While capturing the epic duel on film, Yuan reassured a concerned Rushel that showcasing their real abilities was the best way to deter future bullies. Their channel took off like a rocket. The fight video went viral, and other clips displaying the group in relaxed settings, like gaming, sharing tea with Professor Yumina, and Rushel making goofy faces while trying new dishes, charmed the audience. They became the biggest stars at the academy. Next on the agenda was a live stream of their first climb up the tower. On the big day, a huge crowd gathered to cheer them on. Yumina praised their creative approach, and the group geared up. Yuan, still in his school uniform, stood out from the others, dressed in battle gear. With confidence, he adjusted his tie, declaring that this was sufficient. Yumina teleported them to the tower entrance, where another set of stairs awaited them. Now filled with awe and curiosity, he announced they would stay for 3 days and 2 nights. With a mini camera floating above to capture everything, he led his team into the greatest challenge they'd ever faced, wishing his ancestors could watch him now. Inside the tower, things worked differently. As Yumina had explained before, the rooms or floors were always reshuffling. Death wasn't final. Usually losing meant being teleported back to the entrance with the student pendant, allowing a return to the same spot. Yet she admitted there were zones where death was truly the end. On the first floor, they encountered claw scythers, slimy beasts that were easily chopped up by Slight and Diane. Meanwhile, Yuan struggled to extract fire from a torch, only to be shocked when his power wouldn't activate. Distracted, he almost got attacked, but Eve jumped in to protect him, transforming into a chain of spikes. That's when Rushel leaped into action, unveiling a wild side with fiery eyes and sharp claws, tearing the creatures apart with fierce intensity. Dako Yan sensed a stronger energy building and warned the group. Yuan focused his gaze and spotted an obelisk forming a summoning circle. Rushel smashed that, now he commanded. With a powerful strike, she shattered the obelisk just before the elite monster could spawn, claiming its core as a prize. At that moment, Slight noticed something remarkable. Rushal's hair, once a soft pink, now sported vibrant streaks of color. Yuan explained that this was a sign of Rushal's furnace heart ability, which burned emotions to wield power. Concerned, the girl asked if she had seemed frightening. Duan, with her signature cool demeanor, said that if she lost control, she would handle it herself, which only made Rushal feel more anxious. Yuan stepped in, promising to help her master her power, and then the group was whisked away to the second floor. The new environment was a lush green field. Yuan seized the moment to study the core Rel had collected, learning the traits of acid and fusion. He fed Eve some acid and infused his weapon with the fusion energy. Suddenly, monsters resembling evil spirits began to emerge. Dakoyan obliterated one with an energy blast and provocatively suggested that Yuan tackle the entire floor solo for a speedier growth process. After a brief pause, he accepted the challenge. Stretching his arms, he called upon Eve, who upon crossing through a magic circle, transformed into a gigantic firearm. With a command, the weapon unleashed a barrage of fire, obliterating the spirits in moments. Slight watched in awe, wishing his kingdom could boast such firepower. Du Yan, although impressed, spotted a flaw. The weapon was pretty much useless in close combat. Just to make her point, a spirit silently slipped up behind Yuan, opening an enormous mouth eager to swallow him whole. His friends shrieked a warning. The protagonist, catching on to their reaction, turned around and found himself staring right into the depths of the monster's jaws. He brushed off his friends' worries and made a sword materialize out of thin air, ready to confront the evil spirit. With one clean vertical swipe, he took down the monster that had tried to attack him. His two friends, who were holding their breath, finally let out a wave of relief. Light, however, stood there with his jaw dropped when he saw the protagonist holding a sword. After all, he himself had enhanced his own sword, with various attributes gearing up for when things became serious. As for the pink-haired girl, she was completely shocked that the protagonist even knew how to wield a sword. He modestly explained that it wasn't exactly like that, saying he still had a long way to go before reaching the level of Slight or Dio. Hearing this, the young woman smiled, finding his modesty well-deserved and feeling quite proud of how much he had grown. But the protagonist wasn't done yet. He kept pushing forward, switching between shots with his weapon and sword strikes, taking down every evil spirit that crossed his path. The monsters kept appearing only to be defeated one by one. Now, besides using Eve, he was also wielding the sword with amazing skill. Every movement displayed everything he had learned thus far. Smiling, the protagonist remarked that even though he wasn't the top dog, he was working to level up with each battle. After wiping out most of the spirits, he propped his sword on the ground and sighed. Worn out, he looked at the others and said there were no more enemies around. Only one remained. With that in mind, he summoned Eve and transformed her into a chain, instructing her to bind the last spirit. With the monster held in place, he suggested they take a breather before wrapping things up. While they were catching their breath, the white-haired girl knelt down and touched the remnants of one of the defeated spirits. That's when she noticed something fascinating. The edge of the protagonist's sword had melted and disintegrated the monsters. She quickly figured out that he was already using abilities he had picked up in the last room. Light couldn't hide his astonishment either. Du, for her part, didn't hold back on the compliments, stating that his last move had been top-notch. She began to think out loud, saying his technique was way better than just swinging a sword around without any real plan. Slight got a bit irritated by her comment, asking why she treated him like a rookie. In the midst of their squabble, the protagonist dug into his inventory and pulled out a cold energy drink can. He popped it open and began sipping leisurely, chuckling at the two of them bickering. Seeing this, his three friends shot him glares. They all got upset, wanting to know what he was drinking and definitely wanting a taste. He just pointed at the can and said he didn't have any left, mentioning that this kind of drink could be bought outside. Nobody bought the excuse because, unlike him, no one there could just head out and buy something. Frustrated, he put the can back in his inventory, muttering that he'd only use it again when he was really worn out. This comment caught the white-haired girl's attention, who decided to take the initiative from that moment on. Realizing everyone had rested enough, the protagonist rushed to take down the final monster. At that moment, a magic circle appeared underneath their feet. As they were being whisked to the next room, the protagonist closed his eyes. He wanted to check his personal attributes. A window popped up in his mind, showcasing more than 10 different attributes. Seeing that got him pumped. With that score, he would be right at the average level of the academy. However, he knew he needed to focus on boosting his swordsman skills to be more effective. The strength difference between him and a certain opponent was about 200 points, and there was no way he could bridge that gap over a weekend. But since he was learning martial arts from his classmate, he thought he might have found a way. He understood it wasn't just about picking up skills. He had to evolve them. Considering how to improve, he thought about asking his classmate for extra lessons but promptly dismissed the idea, thinking it would be unfair to load her with extra pressure. While he was deep in thought about how to get tougher, several gusts of wind swooshed past him. The issue was he was so engrossed in his mind that he didn't even notice the looming danger. For a brief moment, he still believed he was being whisked away to another room. That's when he heard a voice urgently calling his name. It was faint, and he was still plummeting. All of a sudden, the protagonist blinked his eyes open and became aware of what was going on. The four of them were in freefall with the wind howling around them. Faced with this wild scene, the protagonist felt a quick wave of panic. Peering down, he attempted to comprehend why in the world he was plummeting from the sky. Rushel appeared even more frantic, battling against gravity while desperately clutching her skirt to prevent the wind from lifting it. He looked down again, still baffled, but this time he spotted something that sent chills down his spine. Below them, the ground was littered with sharp spikes all aiming upward. Thinking on his feet, he called upon Eve, who promptly morphed into a chain. In a swift motion, the chain wrapped around Ral, saving her from becoming a kebab by just a hair's breadth. Breathless with relief that it worked, he sighed but kept a firm grip on the chain. Yet right at the transition point, there lurked a trap. As he struggled to piece together the situation, he heard someone yell his name. Turning back, he saw the pink-haired girl stuck upside down on the ceiling. Her suggestion was crystal clear. He had to act, and he had to do it fast. But instead of jumping into action, he froze, stunned by the sight of her hanging there. Just after she shouted her warning, a deafening noise erupted. One of the walls was swinging open, launching a rain of spears in his direction. Terrified, he thought quickly. He couldn't let the girl dangling from the chain fall. Without a second thought, he gave a hearty tug on the chain, sending her soaring upward. Simultaneously, he concocted the plan to summon Lilith while keeping control of Eve. The girl screamed in fear from the sudden pull, but she needed to be thrown at just the right angle for the spears to whiz right by her without hitting. The protagonist's swift maneuver caused the spears to clash into each other. As the girl began to fall again, he was already there, catching her in his arms. She blushed slightly from their closeness while he inquired if she was all right. Now they were both cruising on a hoverbike. Calmly, he apologized for the abrupt tug earlier, explaining that things were complicated and he had no other choice. As he chatted, more traps began to spring up all around them. He merely smiled, and with agile movements began dodging the axes that flew toward them, taking them out before they could get close. Out of nowhere, it became evident that Slight had transformed. Now he sported 2 pairs of dragon wings on his back. With his divine sword in hand, he walked through the wreckage of the axes, pondering what was going on. He recalled his meeting with the professor, who had mentioned that the traps only appeared after room 20. Yet they were only in the 3rd room, and the challenge level was already so high. Flapping his wings to hover, Slight spotted a flying motorcycle zipping through the room and wondered when his buddy had acquired such a neat item. The protagonist riding the motorcycle felt irritated. He revved up, weaving through traps that emerged at every turn. Behind him, Rochelle still remembered how he had held her just moments earlier. Now grinning, she wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling much more at ease with the situation. Caught off guard by her sudden embrace, the protagonist got distracted for just a moment, and that was enough for an arrow to strike the motorcycle. He started dodging between columns in the room, trying to evade the barrage of weapons being hurled their way. The threat was inching closer until a brilliant flash of light deflected some spears. The protagonist halted the motorcycle and glanced over, spotting Slight floating there. He wanted to know why his friend was just hovering there watching. Taking a closer look at Slight's new look, the protagonist was taken aback and called out, "What are those wings?" But the blonde kid had a question of his own, pointing at the motorcycle and asking where it had come from, saying it looked like something from Yuan's world. The protagonist then inquired about Du, growing worried that she might have ended up in a trap. But the reality was quite the opposite. She was moving with astonishing agility along the walls of the tower. The protagonist had no idea where she was, but he trusted she wouldn't fall for such an easy trap. And he was spot on. The young woman was darting around the spears like a total champ, always making quick, sharp moves while keeping an eye on everything. Now, without a care for her own safety, Slight asked what their next move should be. He recalled the manual, which instructed them to. The protagonist motioned for Slight to dash to the other side of the room so he could take a moment to figure out the trap patterns. As Slight zipped across, the protagonist observed and noticed something important. All the traps were after just one person, Slight. That's when it hit him. Maybe the traps were zeroing in on whoever was in motion. He flashed back to the incident with his classmate earlier and finally put the pieces together. They really needed to be cautious about moving carelessly in that room. With a sigh, the protagonist put his hands on his head, frustrated that he hadn't clicked to it sooner. Meanwhile, his classmate was trying to alert him about another arrow flying his way. The arrow struck the floating motorcycle. Annoyed, the protagonist yanked out the arrow and gripped it tightly. He needed to alert the others to stay put, but if they did that, how would they get through the level? Pressing the arrow even tighter, he finally noticed something. It was reacting, looking closer. He saw that the arrow was being drawn in. This was something new. Since the very first room, he had tried to absorb ideas, but it had never worked. Now his gaze shifted to his sword. Could his gut feeling be correct? He wouldn't know until he gave it a shot. so he decided to grab the sword. His companion, clueless, merely watched. Right before her eyes, he began to absorb the sword itself, and both of them were left stunned. Once the sword dissolved in the protagonist's hand, transforming into shimmering golden dust, he received a concept, but it wasn't what he anticipated. Instead of receiving sword, he got the concept of cutting, which reminded him of the thrusting technique his companion had been teaching him. While he was pondering this, Ruckle nudged him to look in a specific direction. When he looked, he saw Slight surfing on a wave of traps. After getting knocked off the wave and feeling frustrated, he leaned on his sword. All of this happened because he had let his guard down, thinking that only the weapons were a threat. After hitting his breakthrough, Slight's vision started to fade, and he realized he could barely defend himself against the swarm of new traps that were appearing. In that moment, the protagonist didn't just sit back. He was on Lilith, his glider motorcycle, and had to leave Rucall behind to assist Slight. Before dashing off, he had already said sorry to her, and she understood he didn't want to drag her into this. As the protagonist zoomed over the waves bumping into his friend, he earned more points toward his water concept. Everything played out just as he thought it would. What he touched was water, but he got the concept of waves instead. Finally, he began to make sense of his power and the reason he hadn't grasped the sword concept earlier. As he drove on the motorcycle, Dao was hopping from pillar to pillar, sizing up the scene. She was taken aback when she looked down to see the protagonist on the motorcycle with waves of energy swirling from the sides. He was racing towards Slight because he realized that the state of the substance at the moment it formed decided the concept he acquired. Just like the trap that had aimed for his neck earlier, which gifted him the concept of beheading. With that thought in mind, he rushed toward the activated arrows and spears, all of them targeting Slight, and yelled to Slight, telling him he would deal with it, and sped up on his motorcycle. At that moment, he hoped his all-seeing eye ability would become even clearer. The arrows were drawing nearer and nearer to Slight, who was calling out for help. The protagonist shut his eyes, extended his hands towards the weapons, and activated his power. When he opened his eyes, a word appeared on the tip of each blade, a concept he could grasp. The intention behind each weapon was revealed, and now they were all locked onto him. The little blonde guy was in shock at what had just transpired. He had been saved, but now, the protagonist found himself as the target of all those weapons. He grabbed one, but he wasn't keen on taking them one at a time, worried that the concepts would blend and lose their uniqueness. So he unleashed a massive amount of energy, connecting the concept in his hand to all the other concepts of the weapons. When he wrapped up the process, a brilliant golden glow enveloped him. The plan to combine the concepts had worked like a charm. On the other side of the room, the girl with pink hair observed everything around her. The fading golden shimmer made the scene even more enchanting. Calmly, she extended her hands, allowing the sparkling golden dust from the ruined weapons to settle on her palms. With a gentle smile, it was clear she was thrilled with Yuan's advancement. He finally brought the motorcycle to a stop just a few feet away from Slight, who dashed over to him. The protagonist was filled with joy to see his friend was safe. Slight looked taken aback by what he was holding and asked what it was. The protagonist confessed he wasn't sure. He simply remarked that it showed up when he collected all the weapons. While they were chatting, a new trap was set off. They instantly went on high alert, but thankfully the two girls showed up. With remarkable and synchronized actions, they deflected the swords with their strikes, keeping any disaster at bay. Ruchel let out a sigh of relief, while the girl with white hair took the chance to scold them a little more. The protagonist was so impressed by her performance that he didn't even mind the scolding. Slight, however, was not pleased at all. With the last trap handled, the 4 orbs of light reappeared, and the room started to shift. During their transport, the protagonist simply watched the pair battling once more. Slight questioned her need to always swoop in like a hero, arriving right at the last moment just to show off. The protagonist found her inspiring. Even though they were constantly fighting, he knew that one would always save the other. Dako in response claimed she intentionally waited until the last second to surprise everyone. They arrived in the 4th room. Now at least the protagonist had a chance to check out the monsters before they were attacked. They were gigantic spiders. Looking at the creature before him, he had no clue what it was or what powers it possessed. Slightly explained that it was a unique monster, the tower spider, and it could pop up anywhere. With that, he drew his sword, prepared to take charge and protect his friend. Since despite Yuan's efforts, the spiders hadn't taken a single scratch. Du, however, stepped up to the front and asked everyone to step back. Glaring at the protagonist, she told him to pay close attention to her next moves. Focusing energy in her hands, she created a cannon-like attack. With a powerful blast, she struck a whole bunch of spiders at once. The explosive energy left the protagonist in awe. Her attack was way more powerful than Eva's bullets. It was at that moment the young woman told everyone to leave the final blow to the protagonist. Casting a glance at him, she smiled and boasted, saying she was a phenomenal master. Feeling a bit bashful, he smiled back, drew his sword, and asked Slight to cover his back. He moved forward to confront the spiders, grateful for the chance to finish them off. However, Slight and Rochelle, who were watching, felt quite anxious, and justifiably so. When the protagonist struck his sword against the spider's shell, the blow had no effect and merely made his hands shake. He tried again with extra force, but that shell was way too thick. After that unsuccessful swing, it was the spider's turn. Its eyes gleamed and it lunged at him. Sensing the danger, he sprang back just in time, but he didn't give up and advanced again, this time remembering to go for a thrust. At least this time he managed to strike the spider's head, but it still wasn't enough to take it down. The couple cheered at seeing him make some progress. Still, the protagonist knew he couldn't keep up with such weak attacks. He was feeling frustrated just thinking that the tower spiders were way too strong for him. Suddenly a thought struck him that he should have remembered earlier, the concepts he had absorbed in the previous room. He hadn't utilized any of them yet. Seeing this as the perfect moment, he channeled the cutting concept into his sword. As soon as the weapon absorbed the concept, it began to unleash tiny bolts of lightning and with a simple swing emitted a powerful aura. He decided to see if that would work on the spiders. The sword moved swiftly, slicing through the spider with astonishing ease. The rush of finally landing a hit was exhilarating. Slight was blown away by his friend's instant transformation. Even Do was surprised, but she kept quiet to avoid drawing attention. After the strike, the protagonist sensed that he had made a clean cut, but something felt off. He started to wonder if he had swung the sword with more force than necessary and prepared to try again. Seeing his determination, Slight and the girl with pink hair stepped in to assist. Doko, after watching for a bit, realized that he had done something to his sword that allowed him to slice through the spiders effortlessly. She kept observing as he continued to chop away at the spiders, striving to perfect his technique with each strike. She recognized that usually when someone strengthens their weapon, they tend to swing it wildly without any finesse. However, the protagonist showed no signs of this mistake. She hoped that even if it took a while, he would eventually grasp the true meaning of a precise cut for himself. Watching him, she found herself reminiscing about her own journey. After overcoming 3 great challenges, she was proudly hailed as the top prodigy of the martial arts world. And now she realized she was witnessing someone just as talented, making her own abilities feel small in comparison. Unaware of her thoughts, the protagonist simply kept hacking away at the spiders, focused on wiping them out. While engaged in battle, even without realizing what his friend was pondering, the protagonist felt a chill. Slight, noticing him looking around, asked what was up. At one moment, his eyes met Doko's, who, spotting him with drinks in hand, rushed after him. Just then, the 4 of them received an external notification. It was the same message for all, a warning from their instructor to evacuate the tower right away. The protagonist didn't understand the urgency. Meanwhile, Rochelle noticed that something was troubling Dao. Their moment of calm didn't last. Rochelle shouted, alerting everyone that the enemy was approaching. They all turned to see, frightened. 2 massive portals opened, and hundreds of spiders began to pour out of them. Now they understood the reason for the evacuation. But that wasn't all. More dimensional rifts started to appear. When they attempted to use their student IDs, they realized they had no signal. With notifications down, the group was completely cornered. Light had already drawn his sword, bracing for the worst. They knew this was the dangerous scenario their teacher had warned them about, one that could take them out. The portals filled the room with spiders, which were climbing on the floor, walls, and ceiling, advancing without giving them a moment to breathe. Rochelle and Slight were the first to charge into battle. Faced with such a multitude of spiders, the protagonist felt overwhelmed. He had never encountered anything like this before. He remembered the day when their teacher Yumina had revealed there was a significant risk of dimensional pirates invading the tower. She explained that due to unusual invasions, safe areas could quickly turn hostile. The number of monsters would multiply and the challenge would increase unpredictably. And now they were living through exactly that scenario. An explosion blew open a passage in the wall. The protagonist sped on his floating motorcycle with Rel riding behind him, following the others into a larger area. Watching the spiders stream through the new entrance, Slight was furious. Rochelle growled with anger as the glow in the spiders' eyes intensified. They were well organized, invading the room where the group stood. It seemed endless, the white-haired young woman remarked before diving back into the fray. Harnessing her energy explosion, she aimed at a cluster of spiders and fired, taking out several in one shot. Inspired by her determination, Slight leaped into the fight as well, and the 2 of them caused significant damage together. Do and Slight were already feeling fatigued. Rochelle, too, after expending so much energy, had most of her hair turned dark. She barely spoke, only growled, driven by the desire to wipe out all the spiders. The protagonist knew that if her hair turned completely dark, things would go downhill fast. Do, noticing his concern, paused her attacks and approached him. She mentioned Rachel's situation and admitted she couldn't last much longer without a break. Realizing she was getting worn out, the protagonist didn't hesitate. He grabbed an energy drink from his inventory and handed it to her, saying he would fend off the spiders while she recharged. She accepted the drink, smiled, and asked if he really thought he could handle it solo. Absolutely, he replied, pulling a grenade out of nowhere, showing he was ready for anything. He pulled the pin and prepared to toss it. Check this out, he exclaimed. He hurled the grenade, which soared above the spiders. A power enveloped the grenade, and it detonated in midair, creating a fiery wave that engulfed the majority of the monsters. The blast was so powerful that the scorching shockwave made Slight step back, shielding himself with his sword. As he protected himself, he spotted the protagonist zoom past on the motorcycle and was curious about that impressive power. I really put a lot of work into this weapon, he replied, suggesting, Slight, take a break. He realized that Do probably had plenty of energy left. But he couldn't put all his faith in her alone. He pressed on, not knowing how long the spiders would keep showing up, trying to buy as much time as possible for his buddies. Suddenly, he got a notification. The blood poison on his sword had spiked to 15, and the cutting concept had leveled up to 2. Amazed by how fast it was happening, he glanced at the sword in his hand and saw it turning red. Although he wasn't sure how blood poison operated, he continued pushing forward, hoping to figure it out soon. When he swung the sword at the spiders, a huge burst of energy erupted alongside the cut. Then something unexpected occurred. The path of the slash seemed to alter, stretching out farther. He realized that the cutting concept boosted the sword's strength, and the blood poison expanded the attack's range. However, for this to happen, the sword needed to drain his blood. The protagonist felt a bit uneasy about the weapon. Knowing he couldn't use it too frequently, Light stepped up, expressing his admiration, saying he was impressed to see something intriguing again. Spotting Slight and Do approaching the protagonist, asked where Rukul was. The two responded that she should be nearby, taking down spiders. He wanted to stress that they should rest, but they insisted they had already recovered. As they readied to switch places with the protagonist, Slight noticed the number of spiders dwindling. Hearing this, they glanced at the passage and observed that the flow of monsters was slowing down. This could only mean two things. Either the battle was winding down, or something significantly stronger was on the way, and Rachel was feeling exactly that. A peculiar energy made her snarl. She stopped in front of a specific spot just in time to see a portal larger than all the previous ones starting to form. That's when the elite tower spider monster entered the room. The protagonist was stunned to see the massive spider, which was several times larger than any others present. While he was gaping, Slight called for his attention. Shouldn't there be more than one elite monster, he asked? This grabbed the protagonist's focus, who turned and understood the cause of his friend's anxiety. There's not just one giant monster, but two. We're surrounded. Light got super nervous, anxiously asking what was going on. While he was freaking out, Dako sipped her drink coolly. Unlike the others, Rel was growing increasingly furious. Baring her fangs, she charged at one of the giant spiders, attacking without a second thought. Slight got anxious, but the protagonist suggested it might be a good idea and that they should coordinate to assist each other. They agreed to split up. Slight and Rushal would handle one spider while the protagonist and Dio tackled the other. Positioned in front of his spider, the protagonist raised his sword. All that confidence seemed to evaporate when confronted with a monster that size. Noticing his hesitation, Dako, having finished her drink, leaned in and whispered in his ear, "You said you could take this on easily with my help, right?" She stepped back, tossed the empty can back at him, conjured her own sword, and stood before him to lead the charge. "Now we're going to make you pay for that sweetness of yours," she said, eyeing the giant spider. Startled, the protagonist wondered why she had drawn her sword. She was clearly demonstrating her skills for him. Catching his intrigued gaze, she shot him a sharp look and said, irritated, "I just don't want to get my hands dirty. Don't get the wrong idea." But that wasn't entirely true. After analyzing what she had studied for so long, she realized he was still missing one move to master, and she was determined to demonstrate it. Just this once. A vibrant blue energy enveloped her. As she got ready to strike, she wanted the protagonist to pay close attention. Her eyes sparkled with the same blue hue as her energy. However, in the brief moment she reached out for the attack, the protagonist lost his focus. The reason was simple. On the other side, Rushal had lost control, and instead of going after the spider, she began attacking Slight. He tried to defend himself with his sword, but the girl was fuming. Neither of them noticed that their elite spider was creeping closer. The spider leaped and shot a web blast to ensnare both of them. Slight was caught off guard. Thinking quickly, he tossed Rushal aside so she wouldn't get tangled with him. Now he was left to face the web all on his own. The young woman landed on a pillar, growling at the spider, which growled right back at her. With all this chaos, it was impossible for the hero to focus completely. Spotting his distraction, Du chided him. "What are you looking at? Just focus on me." He claimed he was, but he confessed that he was feeling anxious. The moment he confessed that she moved her sword with her energy, she did it slowly so he could follow along. "It's all good," she said with assurance. Suddenly, the enormous spider before her just toppled over perfectly, sliced in half. The strike Du executed was a simple upward motion, With just that one cut, the protagonist realized how vast the gap was between his skill level and hers. The spider fell apart, its body parts scattering all over the place. After witnessing that, the protagonist was bombarded with a flurry of notifications for new concepts, so many that he started to feel a headache coming on. He had just grasped super advanced techniques, and many other concepts had also leveled up. The power he sensed felt similar to what he experienced in Orima's force field. Shaking from the headache, he pondered how someone could channel so much willpower into a sword. The concept was both lethal and so alive that it gave him goosebumps. With his vision getting hazy, the girl suddenly approached and asked if he had closely observed her strike. He complained that she was too close, and without a second thought, she tossed a violet sphere at him. Holding the sphere, he noticed it was surging with energy. He felt thrilled, but wondered if he should really keep it since it had come from her. With a grin, the girl insisted it was his reward and that he shouldn't hesitate. He should just take the gift. From a distance, Slight watched the two of them getting all cozy and became furious, yelling at them to stop chatting and come help him. He'd been stuck in those webs for a while and was quite worried because Rukul, who was in full berserker mode, had already defeated her spider and was now completely out of control. The protagonist glanced at the young woman, frightened watching Slight's situation, and Du just remarked, "What a total loser." Our hero knew that if they pushed forward, they would be taken down in an instant by the out-of-control girl. He turned back and said that only Du could handle this mess. She didn't look thrilled about having to sort out all the group's problems again. Meanwhile, the completely wild young woman began to eye the others. The protagonist tried to reason with Du, asking for help since this was an utterly bizarre situation. Being persistent and making a strong case, she couldn't say no. But she did notice something. With that, she decided it was time to move and started to stretch. Seeing this, the protagonist felt a rush of excitement. Glancing at him, she said she would keep the beast entertained, but in return, he needed to take care of the other spider. Amidst their back and forth, Dao cut in, charging toward Rushel, still throwing words at her to provoke her even more. She said she could have a total blast with that wild girl, and the more she teased her, the deeper Rushel sank into a blind rage. At least Dao got what she wanted. Rushel lunged at her with claws, out-leaping from the corpse of the dead spider. Du simply dodged the first strike and jumped back, continuing to taunt. With each of Ru's blows, she executed a simple move to deflect it. After several attempts, the girl hadn't managed to snag a single hair on Du. Now in the spot she wanted, Du seized Rukel's wrist and slammed her to the ground. With the impact, a little bit of awareness returned to the young woman, but it still wasn't enough. Seeing this, Du let her go and threw in a few more provocations, telling her to stop blindly attacking someone stronger and to get back up. She asserted that she would keep her entertained enough to maintain her consciousness. While hearing the young woman growling, the protagonist watched their tussle. Noticing he was distracted, Du chastised him, and with that he drew his sword to face the spider. Even standing before that colossal monster, Du believed he could win as long as he had truly observed her strike. He asked her what his confidence was based on. In that instant, one of the massive claws from the spider slammed down right next to the protagonist. He just managed to dodge in time. From a distance, Slight caught sight of his friend nearly getting hit. Even though the spider was pretty weakened, it still underestimated its own power. Feeling provoked by the spider, he became so irritated that he clenched his teeth. Knowing exactly what to do, he called upon Eva. This time, not just one, but multiple chains appeared with all sorts of magical symbols. They wrapped around a large portion of the spider, making it quite unhappy. Slight was amazed to see his buddy trap the monster. Dako glanced back for a quick moment, momentarily pulling her focus from her own battle. The protagonist charged forward with his sword against the chained spider, but not all of its legs were caught. The free ones attempted to strike him, but he skillfully dodged several attacks. With Eva holding most of the legs and the concepts of cutting and blood poison on his sword, he felt ready. He got as close as possible with fury in his eyes and lunged at the giant spider. The hit landed, but it wasn't powerful enough to take it down. Watching the scene unfold, Slight felt doubtful, questioning why that attack didn't connect. Without much effort to shift, Rudu kept a sharp eye on the protagonist. He stepped back a few feet, wondering why his strike had lacked strength. Upon examining his sword, the realization hit him that the blood poison hadn't activated properly. Just then, the already trapped spider started to break free from the chains. It made sense that one of his abilities had flopped. Once it escaped, the spider was primed to attack. In a flash, it swung its massive legs, an onslaught that could have ended everything right there. As the giant spider broke free and lunged at the protagonist, stirring up a cloud of dust, Dio froze, leaving an opening for a counter-strike. But when the dust settled, everyone saw the spider lying on the ground while the young man clutched his sword. Almost instantly after, the sword dropped and he too fell to the ground, utterly spent. Overwhelmed by mental fatigue, he replayed the events in his mind. As soon as his sword met the spider's leg, he had shifted his attack angle at the last moment. Trembling as he picked up the sword, he knew if he hadn't dodged just right, Both he and the weapon would have been obliterated. He pondered how he managed to see the movement coming. For a brief moment, it felt like a split second stretched into eternity. Then a notification popped up. By evading the strike, he had mastered the concept of flow. Realizing what just happened, he struggled to stand back up, silently praising his friend in his thoughts. As he approached the spider again, he recognized he wouldn't be able to match her sword skills perfectly. But he knew what steps he needed to take to get better. Sword in hand, he faced the spider, ready to challenge it. Sensing his hostility, it lifted its legs to strike once more. But this time, he swung his sword, repeatedly blocking and redirecting its attacks. While observing, Slight recalled a swordsmanship concept called parrying, where you deflect or redirect your opponent's strikes. If executed well, it could create an opening in the enemy's defense. Slight realized this was merely a tactical idea, while reality had its own complexities. Yet his friend seemed to be accomplishing the extraordinary. Even without any prior experience, he was already showcasing impressive skills. Watching him evade the strikes, Slight wondered if he truly had never held a sword before. After deflecting another attack, the protagonist finally found the opening he had been seeking. Utilizing the deflection technique for frontal assaults, while spinning his sword to defend against side attacks, he pressed on. Little by little, the path to victory began to reveal itself. However, there was still another fight taking place. Rushel was still out of control. But at one moment, she got disarmed by tripping over Dio's feet, who calmly knocked her down while still keeping an eye on the protagonist's battle. Thinking it was unbelievable, she imagined he would learn something from her technique, but it turned out he was the one teaching her something new. She remembered a martial art that centered around the concept of flow. However, only a few dared to practice it as it required capturing a brief moment, something nearly impossible. Yet she was observing the main character do it over and over again. Now it was the spider that was feeling the heat. The young woman with white hair realized that using this technique non-stop was risky and took a tremendous amount of effort. That's why many folks like Slight sought out easier methods, but she had always aimed to be a master in martial arts. And right now, it felt like he was giving her that chance. While Dako was having his fun, Rushel got back up again. With a bit more clarity this time, she took a few quick flicks as Slight pleaded to be set free, wondering about either of them. She simply wanted to return to watching the duel. She understood that merely reflecting the attacks wouldn't be sufficient for him to win. At one moment, gritting his teeth, the main character moved toward the spider. Even with one of its legs threatening him, he pressed on, Du observed as he harnessed the enemy's strength, spinning rapidly and merging two skills. And right before her eyes, while the sword was whirling in a horizontal sweep from bottom to top, he managed to slice the massive spider. The strike was flawless and hit the mark. The spider began to cry out in agony. Watching the event unfold, Slight was left speechless, while the white-haired young woman, a bit flushed, felt a surge of excitement seeing the main character's triumph, who had triumphed over that tough battle and was now simply watching the enormous spider tumble down. With the spider's defeat, its body plummeted to the ground. Shortly after, it was Yuan's turn, who also fell overcome by the stress and exhaustion of the fight. On the protagonist's side, system alerts began to flood in, notifying him that his external and internal concepts had been temporarily merged. He felt significant shifts happening within his internal code. Simultaneously, he heard Slight's voice trapped in spiderwebs. The situation became trickier when Du also sought help to manage an uncontrollable beast. The protagonist felt swamped. He had just conquered an elite, and everyone was already relying on him to fix everything. In the midst of the chaos, Slight explained that magic was needed to untangle the webs. While Do warned about Rukal's seemingly endless stamina, watching the two bicker over who should get help first, the protagonist came up with a bright idea. His answer was to absorb the web concept that was binding Slight. With that, he acquired the web concept and quickly used it to fuel little Eva. Harnessing this new ability, he crafted net-like chains and tossed them in Rukal's direction, immobilizing the wild girl on the ground. The protagonist then cautioned that breaking free was impossible, as the chains drained magic. As she thrashed to break free, the chains tightened around her body, creating a scene that made both him and Du blush. Flustered, Slight hurriedly covered the protagonist's eyes, who was upset that he couldn't see what was happening anymore, even though the issue had been settled. The room transition still didn't occur. However, the chains did their job, and Rushel's hair began to revert to its natural pink hue. The protagonist noticed that his student ID was active again and asked if they should make a move. Everyone agreed, but they were suddenly startled by a crimson shadow that appeared nearby. The shadow, like a mirage, began to whisper that they had passed the test. Unsure how to react, the group watched as the shadow condensed into a circle of intense inner energy. This circle morphed into a red light and finally transformed into a woman who offered them a chance to make a pact with the 10,000-eyed observer. Meanwhile, outside the tower, the teacher was anxiously waiting. Her expression reflected all her worry as she held the ID. Suddenly, a large teleportation portal materialized in front of the tower, and when the dust settled, she spotted her students with the protagonist right in front. Yumina dashed toward them, asking over and over if they were okay. The protagonist reassured her, saying that everyone was all right. The teacher expressed her worry, explaining that they hadn't left even after the evacuation notice. In response to her question, the protagonist asked to go somewhere quieter before explaining. Speaking for the group, he mentioned that they got caught in some irregularity after transitioning to room 4, but admitted it was tough to articulate everything that had gone down. Yumina then shared what she knew. She said that the irregularity was caused by an external intruder who had taken out a student, but confessed that articulating everything that had transpired was a challenge. Yumina then shared her insights. She mentioned that the disruption was caused by an outsider who had taken down a student. She shared that these intruders are dimensional pirates who prey on fresh students to swipe their IDs, which stops resurrection and keeps them stuck in the tower forever. As for the fate of the invaders, she mentioned they somehow managed to get away. Just then, the white-haired girl Yuan chimed in, asking if all of this didn't feel a bit like a test. She pointed out that if intruders could invade the Academy's core, the tower, and nothing could be done, then the institution couldn't really claim to be the top in the multiverse. But the teacher Yumina had a different take, explaining the tough truth. The Academy does protect the students, but within the tower, they're on their own. If the tower favors the intruders over the students, the Academy can't step in. That's just the way the tower rolls, and it ought to be honored. Feeling a bit smug, Dio echoed the teacher's words with a hint of sarcasm. Snatching her ID, she declared that she wasn't cool with this situation at all and would rather teleport away than continue the chat. And just like that, she vanished right before a bewildered Yumina. Witnessing this, the protagonist stepped in. He asked the teacher to consider Dio's reaction, noting that something truly terrible had gone down. Curious, Yumina urged him to share precisely what happened. He paused for a second, trying to think of the best way to explain that before their return, they had an encounter. An encounter that left Slight and Rushal visibly shaken and was tough to put into words. Banune, one disclosed to the teacher that they had crossed paths with the constellation. It was known that the constellation consists of transcendent patrons or watchers who keep an eye on various dimensions. Whenever they stumbled upon someone who caught their eye, they would strike up a deal with those individuals. They were transcendent beings with influence in this dimension. They could offer super powerful magic, special abilities, and mighty artifacts. However, the catch was that they would ask for a lot in return, but so far, no one had said no. Everyone knew that in a world where power holds significant value, there was nothing more tempting than their delicious deals. The constellations made for enticing partners, which led the teacher to be in disbelief that these observers were on the same plane as them. The protagonist spoke up, revealing that the thousand-eyed observer had spoken. He went on to say that this observer had a bizarre voice and promised power in exchange for them meeting certain demands. The teacher, still grasping the full story, found everything astonishing, a bright smile lighting up her face as she spoke. Even with the teacher so thrilled, the pink-haired girl and Slight weren't sharing the excitement at all. After the protagonist asked the teacher if this was truly something to get excited about, and she affirmed it, he hit her with a tough and sudden question, wondering what the Academy's stance was on this issue. Initially taken aback by the student's question, the teacher replied that the Academy officially upheld neutrality, but when she said that deep down they kind of encouraged the contracts, the protagonist grasped that point. As he absorbed all this, he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that a place like the Academy had zero defenses. He returned to reality as the teacher pressed him for details about what the observer had requested. That question made Banune even more tense, revealing that the request was for an elimination. The teacher gasped at what the protagonist had just said. She was bewildered and wanted him to make his answer clearer. It was then he laid out the whole story. The observer had promised to contract 2 of them if they agreed to eliminate the other 2. So that's why everyone was so upset. He shared that back in the tower, the constellation's odd voice had spoken to them, presenting a strange proposition and swearing undying loyalty. The figure reached out to the 4 of them, waiting for one of them to make the first move and swiftly fulfill his demands. Our main character remembered grinding his teeth at all that ridiculous chatter. He refused to join, hoping Dio wouldn't either. Glancing sideways, he noticed his friend was building up energy. The girl's intense gaze was trembling from the sheer amount of power she was radiating. He told Yumina that Duko was requesting them to give her some space, but the professor looked sad. She realized that the young woman was unleashing her energy to pressure the constellation to back off. After he wrapped up his tale, the professor inquired if that meant they couldn't access the tower. Our main character was counting on that tower for his showdown with Erector, and not being able to use it was a real bummer. He figured he'd just have to make the most of the time he had left to train. He reached out to the professor, telling her he was considering sending a report about what happened in the tower, along with the recording he made. She was cool with that, but if possible, she'd love to chat more about it during a meal. However, when he glanced at the girl, he realized that chatting like that was out of the question, not after all that had gone down. The protagonist explained that they both looked wiped out, physically and emotionally. She felt heartbroken when she realized how her students were feeling. Ultimately, the professor commended all three of them for their excellent work. Our main character was really thankful for her kindness. She promised to do everything in her power to prevent this from happening again, hoping that none of them would think poorly of the academy. Then she encouraged everyone to get some good rest. Slight waved goodbye to both of them as he and Rushel left using teleportation. Meanwhile, our main character asked them to send his best to Dako. He was about to leave as well, but the professor requested him to hang on for a moment. She mentioned she had a question to ask and warned him she was going to be straightforward. Then concerned, she asked why the observer hadn't just given contracts to 2 of the 4 of them, instead choosing him and Duko Yuan. The professor's question caught our protagonist off guard, but eventually he affirmed her inquiry. Deep down, he sensed the observer wasn't merely trying to set them at odds. It seemed like he wanted to extract something from them, and the observer pointed out that they could absolutely rise to the top together, but only by shedding the dead weight. Upon hearing this, both the blue-eyed blonde and the pink-haired girl looked utterly crushed. That being, who had popped up out of nowhere and had seemed like an adversary before, was now trying to force their 2 friends to clash. Our protagonist and the white-haired girl were taken aback by the suggestion. The being claimed that as long as they eliminated the other 2, all climbers would receive more treasure, and they should take that opportunity because that's just how the world operates. After sharing everything and recalling moments with Professor Yumina, he returned to his dorm, finding her curled up in a fetal position. He glanced at his friend, pondering if Slight hadn't even taken a moment to shower. Our protagonist moved closer to Slight, trying to lighten the mood, commenting that his sitting position was quite something. Peanut. He then headed to the bathroom, while his friend attempted to say something. Slight wondered if he was trying to embarrass him. Rolling his eyes, the protagonist was startled by the question. Not understanding why his friend thought that, Slight apologized, explaining he only wanted to express some frustration. He even said the protagonist could insult him if he wanted, since he felt worthless. This made the protagonist feel uneasy about getting close to Slight. A few minutes later, for the first time since entering the room, Slight raised his head to make eye contact with the protagonist. He stated he hated him, leaving the protagonist unsure of how to respond. Even though our protagonist felt the same urge to express his hatred, he could only keep that thought to himself, so he had to bear with it, saying that his naivety might actually be useful. Despite everything, our protagonist chose to sit and listen to what his roommate wanted to share. It was then that he told Slight he could say whatever he liked. He wouldn't mind. However, Slight remained slumped in depression but decided to finally speak. He mentioned he was important in his world too. He was one of the most gifted, and from what the protagonist knew of Slight, he was already expecting him to have skills shining in his world. Slight's father had insisted he was exaggerating, as did his family and even his comrades. They admired him and highlighted his talent, even presenting him with the sacred sword, trusting him with extraordinary power. He shared that thanks to everyone who believed in him, he formed a bond with the sacred sword. Bora questioned why they were so concerned about the protagonist, who still tried to tell Slight that he had talent. He didn't need to take the opinions of that ridiculous entity to heart. While absorbing what the protagonist was saying, Slight's eyes grew wide because his situation was quite different. So he turned the protagonist's own words on him, suggesting it was no big deal to ignore the entity since he was the chosen one. Light, feeling really offended, kept complaining. First off, they were divine beings. They were on another level altogether, way stronger and more renowned than any human. He couldn't believe the protagonist Duke could just brush that off so easily. When that sank in, the protagonist was taken aback by the question. He kinda got what Slight was hinting at, then bowed his head and explained he turned it down because that kind of offer seemed pointless to him. He went on to say there were plenty of ways to stand out. Light, however, insisted he was only saying that because he was incredibly talented. And honestly, he admitted that if he were offered a choice by a divine being, he might hesitate, but with a bit of reluctance. Our protagonist was in disbelief, as he heard Slight say he wouldn't just turn it down so quickly. He mentioned he might have even made that choice. But the truth was, he felt a mix of resentment and fear. Faced with that unsettling truth, our protagonist was at a loss for words. After his shower, he sighed multiple times while drying his hair. He glanced around and found a calmer. Slight had gone to bed, now feeling more relaxed. Our protagonist stared at him for a moment. He even thought Slight might be asleep and decided to sneak out. But right then, the young man called out to him, "Light." Wearing a guilty expression, apologized for breaking down like that. He also mentioned that what happened wasn't all his fault and apologized for acting that way. Since his friend was feeling calmer and apologizing, our protagonist smiled gently and said it was all good because they were friends. After hearing that, Slight had to really hold back the tears. Our protagonist assured him he could talk anytime and then warned him he'd need to step out for a bit. After that, he pulled out a mug of hot chocolate from his inventory, planning to leave it for Slight. As he set the cup down, He mentioned that things they didn't like would fade away after indulging in something sweet. Exiting the room, the protagonist took a moment to reflect. He sensed he had transformed since the first time. While he was lost in thought, a white-haired young woman approached, and he hadn't noticed her until now. She quickly came up to him, her eyes sparkling, and said it was great that he was back. She also expressed her relief that she didn't have to go in. When the young woman dashed towards him, he jumped a bit and asked what she was doing in the boys' dorm. She told him to shush, saying it wasn't a crime if no one found out. Before he could respond, the girl tugged at his collar. Now sitting on a bench in an academy area, our protagonist asked her if she came just because the cafe was too packed. She explained she had only ended up there after wandering a bit. However, she mentioned she was curious about how the useless Slight was doing. Our protagonist scolded her for talking like that. She shot back, asking if he wasn't just speaking the truth. According to her, the issue was everything stemmed from his sword. She questioned whether Yuan didn't feel that too. She stated that such immense strength, or the instincts honed for battle, all came from the sword, shamelessly. She added more grievances to her ever-growing list against Slight. She also pointed out his inability to grasp the situation. Our protagonist, feeling annoyed, asked her to knock it off, but she concluded by saying that in tough times, Slight even lost his courage and spirit. She wasn't satisfied with just ranting about Slight. She also brought up Royal's shortcomings. This made our protagonist sigh. He had no clue if she was just trying to tease her friend or genuinely worried about him. In the end, he gazed at the sky and asked if she was all right. That question took her by surprise, so he elaborated, noting that she had been acting strange ever since meeting the divine being. She even showed irritation with the professor, and he asked if she was okay. The young woman looked taken aback, her cheeks flushed. In a shy moment, she asked if he had figured that out with his abilities. He simply tilted his head back. Returning to his normal stance, he dug out a bit more hot chocolate for both of them from his inventory. Handing her the hot chocolate, he shared that he didn't really need any superpowers, as her face showed everything she knew how to handle the protagonist's worries. She took a deep breath and savored the hot chocolate. After taking the first sip, she pondered if he was actually trying to comfort her. She noted that the drink was sweeter than she had anticipated, but our protagonist was curious about what she expected from a chocolate-sect drink. Then she remembered the observer she had encountered in the tower and shared her thoughts with him. She wondered if her two friends felt the same way. All her ideas took him by surprise. The beings they encountered in the tower were only there to wreak havoc in search of their desires. She asked the protagonist if he thought both she and the being had the same viewpoint. Taken aback by her question, the protagonist was stunned. Knowing he wouldn't have an answer, she spoke on his behalf. Basically, it was the same deal. She pondered that if the two weren't helpful, she'd contemplated ditching them. Her words sent a shiver down the protagonist's spine. She recognized that if she'd been more aggressive, she might have been swayed by the idea of picking only the best. She could have easily overlooked the slightly incompetent pink-haired girl. Du felt guilty for the shortcomings of the other two. She thought to herself that she shouldn't have entertained such thoughts. Our protagonist, feeling at a loss for words, took a sip of his drink, seeking some inspiration from it. After a little while, and hearing the girl confirm her thoughts for a moment, he decided to comment that she was also a bit naive. She flushed and turned her head away. She had poured out her innermost feelings. When she asked if he thought the other two were talented, it was evident that he did. Meanwhile, Slight in his room was gazing at the cup while our protagonist described their qualities, since he had a tendency to lean too much on a sacred sword. At the same time, Slight in his room took a sip of the hot chocolate as he was struggling to keep up with the situation. However, our protagonist believed the same was true for Rachel, since she possessed an incredibly formidable ability. The issue was that all that potential was being undermined by her various inner conflicts. If both of them could push through and fix their flaws, he was sure they'd transform into amazing fighters. So, he urged his teammate that their skills would truly astound them both. The white-haired young woman tried to grasp the protagonist's optimism, but she lacked the same belief. Silently, she conveyed her doubts by clutching her sides, indicating she didn't share the same faith in her friends. The real issue was that she didn't have faith in the others, but she chose to believe in the protagonist. This realization took him by surprise. This boosted his spirits. If the two friends trained hard, they certainly would grow stronger. Suddenly, the boy leaped to his feet, declaring that if things went as he suggested, and if the duo managed to tackle their challenges and develop, she would have to admit he was right. However, if the outcome didn't meet her expectations, he'd have to face the consequences. Our protagonist wasn't too fond of her putting all that responsibility on him. Nevertheless, the young woman left him with all the surprises and uncertainties still swirling in his mind. As she hopped away, she warned him that if he wasted even a single minute of her time, it would be his fault and he'd be held accountable. But then she said goodbye and asked him to meet up with the other two naive people the following morning. The next day, an epic battle was already unfolding in the training room. Our protagonist watched with a blank expression. Light even attempted to charge at Du while they were engaged in a bare-handed tussle. However, no amount of effort could stop the girl from launching him right at our protagonist. Light was quaking on the floor, searching for his buddy in the opposite direction, dragging himself over to him. Slight was in tears, questioning the protagonist about what had just happened. He insisted that he was the sole target of that savage girl, who felt all too free to hit him without restraint. As she approached the two, snapping her fingers, she sent a jolt of fright through everyone. She explained that they were doing physical training, so it was perfectly normal for some hits to pack a punch. In a wake-up call, she reminded Slight that he wasn't quite like Ban, who picked up new skills pretty fast. Light then mentioned he would need his sword, but his buddy, his mentor, wouldn't let him have it. The blondie, feeling a bit down, asked the main character for his sword. However, our hero insisted that he should earn it himself, since he was being trained by his pal Dako. Looking at Slight, he hoped he could trust them, at least this time, that it was all part of his journey. Reluctantly seeing how persistent our protagonist was, Slight finally agreed, bowing his head. He stood up, thinking that might mean something. He was ready to trust and give it a go. But just as they were gearing up to restart, the encouragement turned into a foot, almost smacking him in the face. It was his colleague Du who decided to catch him by surprise, despite telling him not to 1,000,000 times. While our protagonist was taken aback by how quickly his friend zipped towards Slight, she kept landing her hits to help train Slight, who really needed all the reinforcement he could muster. She figured he shouldn't just rely on his eyes to gauge the attacks coming his way. As long as he remained clueless, she'd keep coming at him over and over again. Seizing the moment to strike him a few more times, she angrily told him to watch his stance. He needed to react swiftly, not just with his eyes, but he ought to feel where the strikes were coming from. As the young woman continued to taunt Slight, our protagonist watched the showdown with his keen eyes. He noticed that Slight's stats were dropping swiftly in real time. Usually, Slight was a beast who could easily handle anything. But for some unknown reason, everything had shifted. Now that he felt he couldn't use his sword, his skills appeared to have vanished. While keeping an eye on the brawl, he thought that if this change stemmed from the sword, then Slight's situation could be worse than he imagined. Meanwhile, the girl kept up her fierce fight. She wasn't just delivering physical blows, but psychological ones too. She needed him to catch on fast, always asking if the real Slight was just a person or really just a sword. Even if he denied it once or twice, he kept getting hit. But fed up with his friend's jabs, he started to fight back. An unusual force surged through Slight's body like blazing flame, and he attempted to take charge for the first time, swinging a punch in Doko's direction. This completely caught the girl off guard. It sent explosive energy flying her way. However, Du dodged just in time. Yet one of Slight's punches created a massive gust of air, leaving our protagonist's jaw dropped at what just unfolded. Next to him, Rukul was also baffled at how something like that had occurred. Everyone stared as the young blondie transformed into a woman. Her curves became more pronounced and her hair flowed long. The moment Slight stopped holding back and surrendered, what he had concealed burst free. Du looked at Slight's new form and felt quite annoyed. But it was then that a powerful aura began to form and gather around Slight. It was a radiant glow with a light emanating directly from his chest, causing him to writhe in pain. It was so intense that he crouched to the ground as our protagonist dashed towards him. He felt helpless as his white-haired buddy stopped him, assuring him not to fret because his friend was okay. Watching the boy return to his original state, she realized that he wasn't the actual issue, but he was still tough to figure out. Sitting on the ground, he had a dazed look on his face. Moving closer and gazing at Slighto, asked if he knew what his problem was. And at this point, confirmation hit that she and Ban were indeed correct. Slight felt he couldn't keep going this way, but he requested her to keep battling him. She gave him a puzzled look before agreeing to his request. She then said that before anything else, the girl needed to apologize to Slight for being wrong. Seeing the young woman say sorry to him made him blush, and he even scratched his head saying she didn't need to apologize. Du's next words really hit hard. As she mentioned, she thought he was naive and clueless, but not completely naive or clueless. At that moment, Rushel tugged on Ban's shirt, suggesting they should also get some training in. At that moment, he didn't pay much attention to the young woman. Our protagonist's eyes gleamed a striking golden shade. As he noticed a slight shift from him, two ideas emerged. One was of a demonic spirit and the other of a sacred spirit. The main character was puzzled about how two such opposing forces could coexist. He figured that might be the reason behind it. He even thought about chatting with a buddy, but decided to put it off for later. First, he apologized to Ruchel. She accepted the apology with a smile, saying it was okay, but she really wanted to practice. He recalled how she was after her transformation. She also worried that things could go wrong, but she believed he would sort it out. He quickly called upon his snake, knowing that would be his best bet to restrict her if the transformation took place. Even though he felt a bit hesitant, the girl was resolute in her intent. She aimed to gain control of her own power to help everyone better. So he agreed to her request and walked over to the easel where a few wooden swords were hanging. After picking one out, he tossed it in her direction. She caught the sword with a curious expression. Unlike the clash between Do and Slight, our hero wanted both himself and the girl to find their own rhythm. He didn't want them to mirror the other duo, and the pink-haired lady understood his reasoning. When both of them were ready with their wooden swords, our protagonist asked if they could kick things off. While the young lady expressed her intent to give it her all, an idea popped into our hero's mind. He realized that this was what he had always envisioned for his university life, the tranquility of youth he had dreamed of. It wasn't going to be a chaotic brawl with wild punches, but rather young men and women motivating each other. Just thinking about it made our protagonist grin with a gently flushed face, recognizing how fortunate he truly was. The young woman, seeing him deep in thought, asked if they should get started. Once the two decided to begin, the adorable pink-haired girl unleashed all her powers, revealing her claws. 5 minutes after the beast revealed her demonic side, the room was filled with dust. Our scared protagonist quickly called for his snake, asking Ava to turn into chains and restrain the girl. The chains wrapped around her body again, draining her energy and leading to her exhaustion. Shortly thereafter, her power faded and she regained her senses. He looked visibly relieved, though now he seemed on the verge of collapse. She rushed over to him, anxious, asking how many times that had happened. He mentioned he had gone through that more than 10 times before. The young woman felt sad, regretting having left him so worn out, but he didn't want her feeling guilty about it. He gave her a gentle pat on the head. Grinning brightly, he reminded her that he had promised to help. Still, with his hand resting on her head, he declared he was ready for this. At that moment, they both jumped when someone approached. The annoyed expression on the white-haired young woman's face was unmistakable as she glared at the protagonist. Her contempt was evident as she held Slight by the legs, fuming, because while she was putting in the work, the protagonist was chatting calmly with the beast. He was taken aback by her words. Rochelle quickly came to defend him, prompting Doko to crouch down and ask if she had sneaky intentions. Then she claimed that training while distracted was disrespectful to her rival. Meanwhile, the young woman, still sitting on the floor and looking down, felt guilty, and Du seized the opportunity to make her feel even worse. After all that, our protagonist turned to see the young lady looking very downcast. Noticing her sadness, he realized she was quite sensitive when it came to Du. He understood that Rachel hadn't had much time to focus on her mental health, yet she was striving to do her best. Keeping this in mind, he reassured everyone that everything was okay. Du was curious about what he meant, responding to her. He revealed that he had recently asked the professor if he could take a rabbit when he left the floating island, and the professor agreed. Du, thinking she would be the one chosen, felt his request was fantastic, but then he shattered her expectations, telling the pink-haired lady that from that moment onward, he would take her with him. Not only did the white-haired young woman look shocked, but the blonde with blue eyes wasn't thrilled either. Ruchel could hardly believe he had chosen her. The very next day, our protagonist visited a women's clothing store. He was perched on a bench, chatting with folks on the communicator. He had already mentioned he wouldn't be staying out overnight and that he'd definitely be back before the break of dawn. Dio was fuming while speaking to the pair. His eyes grew wide as he glanced to the side. The pink-haired girl strolled in after slipping into the clothes Ban had picked out for her. A crisp white shirt paired with a pink skirt. This gave her an adorable vibe that perfectly matched her hair. She looked up at the protagonist and asked for his thoughts on her outfit, wondering if she was revealing too much. He quickly cupped his mouth to stifle a grin of delight at her appearance. Afterward, the two exited the shop and strolled through the streets. She was mesmerized by everything around her. The protagonist made his way across the street, encouraging her to walk a bit farther because there was more of the shopping district to explore. While trying to keep up with him, she found herself lost in the midst of a crowd. When she finally realized what had happened, a number of people had already surrounded her. She hurried along, worried that she'd lose sight of him. Just when she thought all hope was lost, someone came over and grabbed her arm. It was Ban, pulling her out of the bustling crowd. He apologized, mentioning that he had forgotten this was her first time in such a busy place. Rochelle felt herself blush at Ban holding her hand. He was aware of the crowds in the shopping area. In a flash, he turned away, embarrassed by his own flushed face. He also didn't notice that her cheeks were red as well. They continued on side by side in silence. At one point during their adventure, they indulged in various street foods, from meats to crepes. They even popped into a candy shop filled with plush toys. Ban gifted her a penguin. Not long after, they ran gleefully, startling a flock of white doves that took off, adding to the picture-perfect scene. Rochelle was having such a blast that her cheeks were practically glowing. The pair was filled with joy, and soon it was lunchtime. They settled into a cozy restaurant, and he asked Rochelle if she was enjoying the dishes since they were all made with monster meat. To her delight, she said it was all fantastic. For him, this was his first experience with such cuisine, and it exceeded all his expectations. Rochelle was utterly amazed. She couldn't believe she was actually eating meat while exploring the city. As she ate, her thoughts shifted, causing her expression to change rapidly. He noticed the change in her face while munching on a piece of meat and asked if something was wrong or if she didn't like the food. But her reason was something entirely different. She felt overly excited after such an enjoyable day. He was taken aback by why she looked so down. She was questioning whether her fun was fair, especially since she had no idea if it was helping her skills. Our protagonist pressed his lips together, feeling a bit irked and quite annoyed. In the next moment, he realized it was crucial to show her what worry really felt like. He asked her to look at his hands for a second, explaining that the concern she was feeling was taking shape. He revealed that until recently, he could sense her anger. But now, he said it was different. Spending this time together allowed him to pick up on her emotions. Rochelle nodded along to his words, considering the dilemmas they faced at that moment. He thought she might finally see the symbol hovering above his hand. At that instant, the protagonist closed his hand around the worry, wrapping it up with the other hand, and banished the feeling with a big, bright smile. He showed her his empty palms, claiming that all the worries had vanished. Rochelle was spellbound by the glow that scattered like tiny stars right before her eyes. She was not just thrilled by the sparkle, but also by Ban's promise to always help her tackle her problems. Hearing his words made her agree, because she found everything he said captivating. It felt like magic transforming into reality. The protagonist's mind drifted back to their last battle when she had been so fiercely aggressive with him. The young girl shifted topics, speaking a bit more softly now. She mentioned she wanted to meet the best. Our protagonist was intrigued about who Rochelle meant. Naturally, she was referring to Yuan. Rochelle clasped her hands in a soothing manner. She noted that Du could be intimidating, but it seemed she had a soft spot for Ban, which he quickly contested. It felt more like she treated him as if he were her possession. She mentioned that Du could be intimidating, but it appeared she had a soft spot for Ban, which he quickly disagreed with. It felt more like she considered him her property, like a sword. Rochelle burst out laughing at the protagonist's remark. She found it hilarious that he compared himself to a weapon. He was puzzled by her laughter, thinking the comparison was odd. She reassured him, saying it made her feel better, which caught the protagonist off guard. With a dazzling smile, she told him she imagined he was some sort of all-knowing wizard. Our protagonist was confused by her words and wondered why she was inching closer while they spoke. She took his hand, suggesting they leave once he was done eating. Her smile had transformed into something even more radiant, clearly showing that her worries had vanished. She mentioned that as a thank you for everything he'd done for her that day. She would pick out an outfit for him. The cheerful young woman walked ahead, beaming while he carried the bags. Back at the academy, Professor Yumina was caught up in a meeting in a dimly lit room. The camera robot Ban had given her was there too. It seemed under pressure, but she told it to hang in there a little longer as it would wrap up soon. While reviewing the footage, one of the professors was fuming about the leaked information regarding the tower. They were determined to uncover who had let them ascend the tower. He also had a disdain for lesser beings for their mistakes. A blue-haired professor inquired if there was a way to keep the tower's information from getting out. Another professor pointed out that the recordings didn't show any violations. Yet there were still plenty of upset professors. At one point, someone demanded silence. This person made it a point to address Professor Yumina, stating it was clearly a violation, and asked if she had considered how she would take responsibility for it. Confronted by that professor's boldness, she merely stared, keeping her emotions in check, unlike the robot beside her. Sometime prior, Yumina had watched the recordings made by the protagonist. She slapped her forehead, realizing how far they had actually gone. When Ban mentioned wanting to climb the tower and record a video, she didn't see any reason to oppose him. She even thought it wouldn't work, since she already knew that outside machines and gadgets were useless within the tower. Yet Ban defied logic, delivering results. She concluded the footage shown by the little robot. Yumina had a feeling that Ban still didn't grasp the situation. It wasn't just that he had brought back the tower recording, it was more about how Ban had invented a tool that functioned inside the tower, which was quite a feat. The challenges didn't end there. He wanted to share the video on his channel, knowing it would grab attention. That sort of defiance would gain his group more popularity among the academy students, and that made her a bit anxious. The hard-earned details about the tower would be thrown around carelessly. She felt a twinge of worry about whether he might come to regret it, but he asserted that hard work should be shared. Aside from Tick, his filming robot, there was no other means to record videos, so he would practically have a monopoly. He intended to edit out certain topics like the constellation. However, before the video was launched, he imagined she would usually stand by his side and thought his progress would be impressive, albeit with some consequences. He was aware of this, and it aligned with what Yumina had expressed to him earlier. That event was likely to attract both significant and minor curiosity. So, Ban declared his wish to solidify his standing and asked the professor if she thought she'd feel secure looking after them. She secretly smiled, doubting he could be this admirable. In response, she told him that if he wanted to feel secure, he ought to avoid causing any mishaps. She had already built up high hopes. She believed that what Ban created would lead to something massive. Thus, she stayed quiet, and one of the professors in the meeting asked what her thoughts were about Ban's actions and achievements. She made up her mind to support him, so she addressed the professor, stating that filming and publishing a video of the tower was merely a personal endeavor. Thus, it wasn't their responsibility to debate that. She clarified that she didn't quite understand why he wanted to hold her accountable. Professor Alex Canton had been the one to pressure the professor acting against her students. He began to laugh. Professor Alex Canton was the one who pressured the other professor acting against her students. He burst out laughing, calling her a beautiful liar, raising his voice and trying to rally the other professors, asking if he was the only one who sensed that her point seemed like it was aimed at defending the student. At that point, the blue-haired professor told Canton to hush up. Talia Liriana, from the Artifact Creation Department, asked Yumina to reveal who this student was, claiming he was just an ordinary student. However, another professor couldn't handle that. Coming from the Aura Combat Studies Department, he asserted that there was a limit to selfishness and that the information about the tower was all about the academy. At that moment, she confronted the professor, stating that his words were bizarre. The reason no one had managed to film the tower up to that point was because it obstructs. Professor Kenton interrupted Yumina with a grin, concealing his own interests, wanting her to clarify the principles behind the ability. Yumina stayed quiet, absorbing that question. On the other side of the table, Thalia also chimed in, boasting about having spent 200 years studying these matters. She was fully aware that artifacts created outside the tower wouldn't work inside it, particularly filming equipment. It was common knowledge that no circuit could manage the waves that the tower demanded. The more she explored, the more convinced she became that external machines could never function inside. Hearing all of that, Professor Yumina finished the thought by saying that her student had succeeded. This made Talia even more curious, stating that was exactly what she wanted to know who this boy was. She was irritated because he hailed from a dimension that didn't even have mana, making it seem like he was the only unique one. The moment she wrapped up her thoughts, she realized something. The artifact that had recorded that footage was now in Yumina's possession. The blue-haired professor took on a scholarly expression. Determined, she put on her gloves and asked for the artifact while Yumina quickly snuggled the little robot, refusing to hand it over. She explained that she had been asked to bring the artifact to the meeting, but that was an accomplishment made by her student, and she simply couldn't let anyone take that away. One by one, professors rallied against her. Suddenly, someone raised their hand, calling for everyone to pause. That was the professor in the corner of the table next to her. That professor was the Academy's vice president and head of the Constellations Department. With a finger to his lips and a smile, he urged everyone to keep it down, so the heated discussion could cool off, and everyone complied. However, after a little while, he broke the silence himself by calling out to Talia. Suddenly, the professor turned extremely shy upon hearing the vice director's praise, expressing gratitude for dedicating 200 years to research and acknowledging that she was someone qualified to judge. It seemed that the artifact crafted by the student was indeed special, and the professor stumbled over her words. After hearing the professor's affirmation, the vice president stated that this would be a tough truth for the professors to swallow. When the professors questioned his statement, he took the time to clarify, summarizing that the student in question had been recognized by the tower. After that revelation, the professors were left in shock upon hearing such a claim, since the student had only entered the tower for a single day. One professor attempted to challenge him, insisting that his statements were outlandish, even though he was the vice president, but he shrugged off the uproar. Shrugging his shoulders, he suggested they could either believe it or not. He also mentioned there was one more reason for him to be considered special. So, he urged the student's professor to elaborate, asking if she wouldn't like to unveil something more in the videos to help the professors understand. The tension escalated as they were livid to hear that the professor might be withholding information. The vice president then declared that he would disclose everything. He mentioned that he and his colleagues were the only individuals chosen by the constellation. The professors spotted the anger building within Talia. She couldn't wrap her head around the idea that someone had climbed the tower for the very first time. At that moment, Yumina informed the vice president that she would be reaching out to the constellations, a student achievement too. Responding to the professor's plea, he asked her to answer honestly to the question he would pose as vice president. Had her 4 students signed contracts with the constellations? She hesitated for a moment, wondering why he was going to such lengths. Still, she shared the facts. None of them had officially signed the contract, which sparked a ton of curiosity for the vice director. Making a call, Xenon let everyone know that he would consider Ban Yuan and the other students in Class 11 as his own. Upon hearing this, the professors quickly urged him to think twice. They reminded him that he had already stated that none of the students had sealed a deal with the constellations. The vice director, noticing their confusion, took the time to clarify. For him, it didn't matter whether the contract was signed or not. What truly mattered was that the constellations had selected them, proving they were remarkable, which left Yumina in awe. After mentioning that other constellations were also interested in them, he started putting pressure on the other professors. With that, no professor could argue against Xenon's claims, not even Alex Canton. So Xenon carried on announcing that he was the professor overseeing the students chosen by the constellations, and if Ban Yuan was picked, he would be under his guidance too. In the end, he faced all the professors with his shining golden eyes. Now that everyone was on board, the vice director moved on to his agenda and introduced the new topic. The lovely Yumina sat lost in thought looking down. As if realizing that the meeting wasn't solely about how to treat Ban, the vice director's words reflected the president's intentions, and he kept elaborating on the students. Everything became clearer the more he spoke, addressing points that underscored his message. He was relaying the president's warning, mentioning that professors could make requests to understand the students' skills. After hearing the vice director declare Ban as untouchable, the professors stayed quiet all the way till the end of the meeting. After saying he hoped they understood and wishing them a fantastic weekend, the vice director was off. Yumina let out a sigh of relief, never expecting her student to enjoy so many perks from the director. In that brief moment of relief, one of the professors, Alex Canton, approached her, suggesting they grab some drinks at a bar. He expressed a desire to toast to the student's success. Hearing his suggestion, Yumina turned green with disgust but didn't reply. She simply teleported elsewhere. The professors, noticing her reaction, quickly rushed to console Canton. The next day, throngs of students gathered around the protagonist in the cafeteria. Many were eager to introduce themselves. Everyone wanted to be B's buddy, and even extended an invite to join the student council. The protagonist felt overwhelmed by the crowd and all the date requests. Meanwhile, Duco teamed up with the other two classmates and they pondered what was going on with all the fuss. Light clarified the situation and asked if Du recalled the channel. He revealed it had gone viral. By now, it was tough to find anyone at the academy who hadn't seen their videos. After receiving this information and glancing around spotting several people watching Ban's created video, Doko thought B's ideas and talents were indeed impressive. However, Rachel, observing the scene, thought about Du's reaction regarding what was unfolding. At that moment, the protagonist set his tray down on the table, inquiring what all the fuss was about that morning. Exhausted, he couldn't help but rest his head on the table due to everything happening. The protagonist also felt like poking fun, suggesting that since he had so many fans, he ought to be kinder to them. They were startled by a loud voice that caught Ban's attention. Someone was claiming it was ridiculous to make a scene with doctored images. A few boys were slandering the protagonist's group. They directed their comments towards Ban, stating he should hold on because by the next day all his fabrications would be revealed. The antagonist then remembered that the following day was when he would face off against Erector. It was the day of the scheduled duel with the Stone Boy Erector. After hearing all the insults from those boys, he realized they were the very ones who would cheer against him in the duel. Light agreed with the protagonist's assessment, while Rushel offered her support. Wiping her mouth after her meal, the white-haired young woman suggested he should respond in the best way, especially for those watching and cheering for the protagonist, and she gave him a bright smile. The next day, the main character walked up to the arena where the assistant professor greeted him, letting him know that the duel would be streamed live. If both parties agreed to have their fight recorded and shown to everyone, they needed to sign the document that was presented to them. To their surprise, there were quite a few safety rules concerning the duel. If anyone got hurt or decided to give up, the duel would come to an end. The big guy approached the main character, suggesting they negotiate. The protagonist, taken aback by the suggestion to negotiate, assumed this man was a viewer of their channel who had seen their videos. But the big stone man asked Ban if he was scared and said he could throw in the towel. For that to happen, he'd have to crawl between his legs and bark like a dog. Only then would he accept the surrender. Hearing that left the protagonist astonished. Even though the duel was being broadcasted across the entire school, there were only 2 classes present in the arena. The troublemakers from Erector's class were cheering for him, disliking Ban. Ortima, who had taken a beating from the white-haired girl last time, watched the arena with curiosity. However, his attention wasn't on the fighters but rather on Du, who was with the other 2, looking for any signs of how the audience was reacting. He told the girl that the viewer count for the broadcast had already hit 10,000, and many were bad-mouthing Ban. Du figured that at best, the supporters of him due to the videos would only be a handful, so she aspired for that. Now with so many people tuned in, Ban would show if he had what it took to rise to the top. The protagonist reflected on Erector's comments about crawling and barking. This made him chuckle a little. He never thought he'd hear something so shameful. It was so ridiculous it felt like it came straight out of a low-budget soap opera. So he caught Erector's eye and gave him a look that could melt steel, asking if he had prepped himself enough to provoke him. Erector returned the grin, asking how long he thought he could keep up this calm facade. The protagonist just shrugged, noting that if he was acting relaxed, Erector would figure it out once they faced off. With that, the protagonist unsheathed his sword and provocatively called out Erector. Erector, agitated and grinding his teeth from the taunt, now looked ready to explode, urging the assistant professor to kick off the duel right away. Upon hearing him and fulfilling his wish, the assistant professor raised her hand and declared it was ban against Erector. With that green light, Erector charged straight at the protagonist, relying solely on his size to win. Erector's heavy steps shook the arena as he threw a massive fist towards the protagonist, who stood undeterred. Just as the fists were about to connect, Ban moved. His legs propelled him quickly as he focused his gaze. The protagonist silently commended Erector for taking the lead, but his sword swooshed past the big guy effortlessly. While pondering what Erector might do, Ban sent a punch that struck his opponent's face like crumpling a piece of paper. With that hit, Ban knocked Erector onto his back, gaining the upper hand in the match for a moment. He realized that facing that stone figure was best done using the reverse method. The protagonist and his friends had gathered in the training room the day before his meetup with Rushel. They explained to him that before trying out any technique, there were lots of trials and errors involved. Thus, he learned that when going up against a new opponent, he needed to be ready to use the technique, and only then could he claim to master the reverse method. After the theory, it was time for some hands-on practice. The protagonist grabbed a sword, preparing to block at least one hit. Du was trembling with fear, though she understood she was teaching this method, so Erector couldn't even touch him. As the protagonist executed the technique moments ago, he felt its accuracy. Unlike Du, who was way worse. Erector managed to get back up, still puzzled about what had just happened. But before he could make sense of it, another attack came his way, and Erector sank to his knees. As the protagonist analyzed the effects produced by the technique just before his attack landed, he infused his sword with a wave of energy. Thanks to this, Erector's tough stone body transmitted the energy like a wave, causing serious damage and leaving Erector raging. As the protagonist watched the impact from the technique just before his strike landed, the protagonist had charged his sword with a wave of energy. Thanks to that, Erector's tough stone body transmitted the energy as a wave, causing severe damage and leaving Erector enraged. He even wanted to know how Ban was causing him pain. The main character, squatting down to match the big guy's height, said sorry and told him to quit whining. Looking right into Erector's eyes, he mentioned that if Erector didn't want to keep going, they could call it quits right there. Those words only made Ector angrier at being taunted by such a minor being. He stood up and charged at Ban full speed, but the protagonist nimbly dodged out of the way. Erector was fuming. He couldn't believe that a mutt from a lower world was daring to look down on him. Erector yelled those words in a rage. With each shout, the protagonist's ears were more and more annoyed. After those screams, a bunch of concepts started swirling around Erector's arm. They stretched upwards and grew significantly larger. Erector's hands slammed down onto the arena floor, creating a thunderous thud. Still, the protagonist quietly mocked Erector, thinking he was way too gullible. He figured he should at least try a different approach after the first attempt failed. He wasn't interested in any strategy. His eyes revealed the rage bubbling inside him. He attempted to crush the protagonist with his massive frame. Luckily, Ban was quick enough to evade his blows. Erector persisted with the same tactics, reaching out to try to smash the protagonist. However, the protagonist's sword swiftly sliced through as it merged with concepts. The large stone arm cracked, now being cleaved by the protagonist's assault. Faced with repeated attacks, Ban had no choice but to counterattack. Just like the first round, he took serious damage, and Erector yelled out in a mix of pain and fury. As the battle unfolded, a lot of people were tuned in watching the live broadcast. Among them, even the directors were keeping a close eye on what was happening. Despite being a seemingly pointless skirmish, he was still watching. Just like the vice director, many others were observing, utterly confused by what was truly unfolding. Light turned to the pink-haired girl and said that everyone's reaction was totally predictable. They didn't believe it, even when witnessing it firsthand. Now everyone had to acknowledge that compared to when he first showed up at the academy, the protagonist was significantly stronger, and that was a fact. The students from Class 1, just like Erector, were in disbelief because their buddy was being taken out right at the start of the match. Now they were questioning if the abilities shown in the channel's video could actually be real. Even the substitute professor couldn't hide his fear at how easily Erector was being beaten. He recalled that just a week ago, that kid was feeling weak enough to ask for a week to train. The professor was baffled about what had transformed the protagonist in such a short time. While the professor managed the message he received from the assembly, the protagonist pondered his next move. Erector stood right in front of him, unable to move. For him, it seemed ridiculous to attack someone so motionless. He lingered for a moment, staring at him, hoping he'd get up to resume the fight. While caught in that thought, he heard the professor arm raised, declaring that the match was over. The professor's announcement surprised both of them. It was the decision of the observing faculty regarding that match, and he declared the duel concluded. As the professor spoke, Erector's eyes burned with hatred, feeling that the professor was deeming him incapable of continuing the fight. Despite Erector's protests, the assistant professor warned that the duel was ending right then. Even when the protagonist tried to say something, the professor stated that neither of their objections would be accepted. Ban still gritted his teeth as the assistant professor ordered him to leave the arena. Very upset, but with no other choice, he left the arena grumbling. Sword drawn, he was annoyed because he couldn't determine whether he'd win or not. He felt frustrated and upset, but at least he hadn't lost. The sadness in his friend's expression was unmistakable. As he exited the arena, feeling down, he heard someone call him an insect, telling him to wait a moment, even with the assistant professor declaring him incapable. Erector refused to lose to someone he deemed an insect. Locking eyes with Ban, he yearned to put an end to that humiliation once and for all, even defying the professor's ruling. With that in mind, he lunged at the protagonist first. That's when he transformed his arm into a spiked weapon, shouting at Ban about his intentions. The assistant professor was terrified, yelling for Yuan to dodge as quickly as he could. However, he calmly adjusted his sword, not inclined to evade. Even in front of Erector's furious gaze, he remained calm and composed while the big guy shouted. He knew the opponent had already been told to stand down, but still, he wouldn't back down. He thought he was superior because of the dimension and felt untouchable, believing he didn't have to abide by the rules. With that mindset, Ban infused some ideas into his sword. Observing everything, Ban understood that the confrontation had only halted at the professor's discretion. And now that man was driven solely by his pride, so he raised his sword, ready to bring everything to an end as swiftly as possible. Now, with his eyes shining in a different hue, and a determination like never before, he was ready. As soon as the rival attempted to strike him, Ban simply countered. Erector's eyes were filled with fury and pain, and the protagonist felt he had done the right thing. After enduring so many insults, he couldn't remain silent any longer. Erector only stopped shouting when he realized what had happened after the protagonist's blow. He had lost his arm. The students from Erector's class had their hands on their heads, eyes wide, unable to fathom it. Even Ban's friends couldn't believe their eyes. Everyone began chattering loudly with their opinions. Meanwhile, a system window popped up for the protagonist, who looked at it warily, curious about what it was. The system message said that if he wished, he could claim the strength of Erector's arm. Meanwhile, the assistant professor was telling the stone man to stay put. He would be taken to the medical room. The big guy was slumped on the ground, shaking and grinding his teeth from the agony. Now he felt the consequences of his embarrassment. The assistant professor was taking the initial steps, while the protagonist looked off to the side. Now the protagonist was getting a lecture from the assistant professor, who had already stated it was just about dodging. The protagonist attempted to clarify himself, apologizing since the incident unfolded so quickly that he struggled to connect the dots. The professor was outraged because the protagonist's excuse was ludicrous. But while the professor was furious with the student, he got a notification urging him to stop. The vice director would provide the answers he sought. Then the assistant professor revealed the vice director's message to Ban. The message greeted him and informed him that the speaker was the professor's representative. He stated that from that moment on, he would be asking the questions, and Ban should respond honestly. He wanted to know why he hadn't dodged. The professor's representative warned that their powers clashed so much that even they agreed to end the duel. Now he demanded an answer that everyone would accept and pressed for an explanation of why he didn't evade the attack. The protagonist simply stared with a closed expression, offering no response. The protagonist thought that even though he had gained the ability, he had never really pondered what the so-called spirit words truly meant. Now, with the question gnawing at him, he felt an immense pressure beyond the screen and wondered who that person was. So he asked the figure on the other side how they had figured out that he hadn't dodged the opponent's attack and instead countered. He believed that a student who disrespected the authority of the professors and acted as he pleased deserved to face the music. The person on the other end wanted to clarify if he was suggesting that the professors held authority. The main character nodded in agreement, mentioning that in an official context where rules must be followed closely, this was vital to stop other students from ignoring the regulations and attempting sneak attacks. While they exchanged messages, the group of professors was able to hear everything that unfolded. He added that if he had reacted calmly in that moment, word might have spread that he was weak, leading to a belief that rules could be bypassed when interacting with a student from a lesser dimension. It wasn't solely the professors or the headmaster and vice principal who could access Ban's comments. The entire academy could. Many individuals followed the screen where he discussed the guidelines and individuals from lower dimensions. He went on to mention that even if he had taken a different approach in a short period, he believed his actions were totally reasonable. The vice principal found it intriguing when the student claimed he was acting to protect the academy's values. The vice principal recognized he was responding wisely, aware that plenty of ears were tuned in. He observed that the boy possessed remarkable intelligence by expanding the conflict between two individuals to encompass the entire school. Attempting to sound intelligent himself, the vice principal acknowledged that the student's remarks were valid, pointing out that students who ignored the rules during matches deserved punishment according to the school's standards. Despite that, the responsibility for punishing a student for a mistake fell to him and the academy, not something a student like him should be handling. The protagonist realized he was engaging with someone of equal or even greater intelligence. The assistant professor smiled as he overheard Ban's dialogue, while the vice principal thought that, regardless of the silly things said, his opponent was formidable. The student stated that if the director was correct, and if he had stepped on the professor's authority, he was sorry. He wrapped up by saying that in any case, he was ready to accept whatever punishment came for his actions. The vice principal was pleased to hear that. The director mentioned everything was all right and that he wasn't even looking to discuss punishment at the start. Those words left the protagonist feeling relieved, yet the assistant professor stood there speechless. Zenon, feeling he had grasped the situation, thought that the young man had enough charm to gain the support of a crowd. He announced to everyone that he would consider Ban Yuan's self-defense as justified. Those words made Slight and Rushel beam with happiness. The assistant professor even tried to contest the vice principal, who told him to chill out and stop the embarrassing antics. Furthermore, the assistant professor received a reprimand for not handling the students appropriately. He hadn't displayed the necessary enthusiasm during the match and remarked that the situation with the right arm was something easily resolved. Wrapping things up, a reminder was given for the students watching the match to return to their seats. As the reminders were given, Dio felt relieved, as everything wrapped up smoothly, without any further issues, and Slight shared in her relief. The director also mentioned that student Ban had worked hard and could head out at that moment. Demonstrating good manners, he bowed to the assistant professor, who was fuming at that moment, and exited. He was about to leave when he seemed to notice something. The communicator still said, "Catch you later." However, when he turned to look, no message appeared on the screen. Ban felt as if this was happening all over again. After the incident, he reunited with his friends, who were thrilled to have him back. Light exclaimed that the sword strikes he executed at the end were mind-blowing. The protagonist mentioned this had to be thanks to the tower. Du praised, expressing how much she enjoyed watching him since he had grown stronger. She inquired what it felt like to gain a new power, and if he thought it was beneficial. Feeling a bit bashful, he scratched his head and said that it was all due to her intense training. Du made him nervous when she brought up the arm of the stone man. She made him even more uneasy when she said she knew he had absorbed it. This reminded him of that moment in the arena when the message popped up. He found that hard to believe. The system message offered various options he could select. To play it safe, he chose just a bit. When it worked, he thought it was unbelievable. He selected a little of everything and discovered that all the traits were incredibly powerful. Up until then, he hadn't been able to control the essence of living beings at will. He told his friends that now he could take specific parts by making cuts. His expression turned somber. As he mentioned, he ended up absorbing the strength from his opponent's right arm. Du asked him why he was acting like that and if it wasn't a good thing. He replied that initially he felt thrilled to be getting stronger, but then realized he wasn't grappling with the same monster as before. He confided in his friends that after it all he felt strange and uneasy. The white-haired girl yelled at him to lift his head because there was no need to speak such nonsense. She reminded him that that individual had approached with deadly intentions all the time. She told the main character that in a fight for survival, he needed to know his choice. Those words from his buddy provided a little comfort, hearing her reassure him that he shouldn't feel guilty about his decision. Once he calmed down a bit, he admitted he was overthinking and apologized to his pals. Du told him that he couldn't just stroll around cutting the arms off those from the so-called special class. While the girls were having a spat, he seemed to have received a message that left him pretty anxious, even yelling. His shouts startled his friends, who were confused about what was going on. There was an extra mandatory fee for the course on the constellations of Babylon taught by Professor Zenon. He taught how to effectively gain support from the constellations and how to smartly negotiate contracts with them. This knowledge and preparation were super helpful in avoiding the constellation's wrath. Now, that course was available to Class 11. Everyone watched as those from the lower dimensions started to pass by. People commented that the negotiating boy strutted around with his chin up, making the main character feel uneasy under their gazes. As the protagonist and his friends climbed the stairs, they overheard a mix of opinions from those around them, both praising and critiquing. Looking back, he noticed his friends were unsettled and anxious about the comments. With a mysterious look, he told them that the more people were cursed, the more they thrived. While walking, Rushel grabbed his wrist, seeming eager to say something to him. She was concerned about what had happened the previous day and worried that more people would start to dislike them. Upset, she mentioned how everyone spoke their mind without even knowing him at all. Seeing the sadness in her eyes, the protagonist tried to reassure her, saying it was all going to be okay. Placing his hand on her head, he encouraged her not to worry so much and expressed his gratitude for all the affection she was showing him. However, those watching them weren't very fond of their closeness. Light and Du thought it was a bit much. They had already hung out over the weekend, and now they seemed to be perfectly in sync. Doko asked the pink-haired girl if she loved the clothes she got so much. Rochelle, who usually stayed quiet during the jab, teased Du if she was feeling jealous, which made the protagonist feel awkward. Du got annoyed and shot back at Rochelle, asking if she wasn't tired of getting thrashed by her. Rochelle made it clear that she realized the young woman would keep beating her up sooner or later. Standing at the door, they checked if they were indeed at the right classroom for the constellations of Babylon. Light was sure there was a class last week, but he was unsure what would happen if people like them mixed with the others. He was apprehensive about what the senior students might say, but the main character urged them not to worry about it. Summoning his courage, he grasped the doorknob to enter and start the course. He reassured Slight that everyone would think talented juniors would blend in nicely. But when he opened the door, even he appeared a bit nervous at the crowd inside. Everyone turned to face them when the door swung open, seemingly sizing each of them up. Dio thought that since they were older and more seasoned, even she couldn't overlook their skills. The pink-haired girl looked visibly intimidated, as did Slight. The protagonist also felt uneasy with so many people around. As soon as Zenon spotted the students, he welcomed Class 11 to his lecture. The protagonist, upon seeing the vice director, was puzzled about what his powers were. Nothing had been hinted at. And when the man spoke, the protagonist recognized that voice from their duel. Zenon started by explaining that the purpose of his classes was to comprehend the tower and the constellations. He informed those who joined the class that day that he'd first discuss the tower. He began by saying that at first glance it appeared to be a massive structure with no clear purpose or end. He mentioned that the tower was just like a living being. To the protagonist, the class felt slightly dull. He clarified that it might seem they were being rewarded for completing the rooms, but that wasn't quite the case. He clarified that it might look like they were seeking rewards for clearing the rooms, but that wasn't the case at all. It wasn't just about the rewards that the tower was eager to welcome them. It did this to single out the most impressive climbers among the crowd. For those who stood out, it offered even greater and more remarkable treasures. There were also transcendent beings, like the mediums, a fundamental requirement for any smart creature to reason like a superior. It was a delicate system that could be flipped upside down by a lone irregular intruder through unorthodox paths. All that professor's talk sounded like gibberish. The protagonist wasn't buying it. Even though he kept quiet, his mind was always brewing with thoughts. That was when the Chancellor shot out a mass email. The protagonist recalled this happening not long after the intruder made their move in the tower. What if he thought that the bizarre event with the spider swarm in room 4 was triggered by the intruder? The tricky part was that the weirdness in room 1 seemed off, too. Those were definitely elite monsters. It was odd if the tower had kicked off in a strange way after their arrival in room 4 and things got rolling. With that, the weird occurrences in rooms 1, 2, and 3 couldn't be unraveled. Now, with the professor suggesting that the tower could be a living entity, everything started to make more sense. Shifting the perspective, it might be that the tower didn't just adjust the difficulty because of the intruder, but rather because everyone began their climb. This idea felt much simpler. Now, he was puzzled whether the insane difficulty was genuinely the tower thinking for itself and throwing challenges at them. There came a point when the protagonist was so deep in thought that even his friends began to notice, as did the professor, who, though silent at first, couldn't help but smile, thinking he was getting closer to his goal. The protagonist was sweating from all the pondering, yet he pushed on, thinking that if the tower were a system, it would definitely select those individuals, as Professor Zenon mentioned, as he glanced around, believing there wasn't any better place. He figured that his class had faced challenges and situations unlike any others. If that were true, the second phase would be even more thrilling, packed with gold, thrilling events, and magical artifacts. He was mulling over the events in the tower room when someone asked if he had figured it all out. The professor, having piqued the protagonist's attention, pointed out that there was a barrier present that many students hadn't yet discovered. Congratulating Ban and Rushel for uncovering an orb on the first day of class, he then informed everyone in that class that Class 11 was completely ready to move forward with the lectures. Zenon raised his hand, tossing something into the air. Then that poor little violet orb came down. The prof had a question for Ban, asking what he saw when he gazed at that sphere. Ban, despite staring intently, couldn't see anything because it was beyond measure or simply not known. Being truthful, he admitted that he wasn't seeing anything. The professor encouraged him to concentrate a bit harder and take another look. Although the protagonist insisted he could see nothing, the professor kept prompting him to focus more, believing there was something there that he could catch sight of. Despite appearing to genuinely try, the words immeasurable and unknown were all he seemed to perceive. He should aim to uncover the mystery of that orb. And in a split second, for some reason his eyes widened. With that, he was able to discern the core concepts of the orb: barriers, separation, and protection. He noted that besides that, there was something he just couldn't grasp. The professor instructed him to close his eyes and take a breather. The professor merely smiled, thinking that the young student had unearthed 3 major abilities of the orb. As the protagonist rubbed his eyes, looking a bit weary yet observant, he realized why the director had such faith in him. Pointing at the orb, Xenon asked the protagonist if he grasped what it was. Being sincere, Ban replied that he didn't understand at all, prompting the professor to commend him for being so honest. Xenon wanted to emphasize to everyone the value of broadening thoughts and igniting imagination. He also mentioned that if they wanted to harness those abilities in a more advanced way, they ought to nurture the power of thought. That's the driving force behind it all. Now the protagonist wasn't quite sure how all that connected to the orb. He was curious whether someone with exceptional brain power or creativity could wield the orb. He nodded in agreement, saying that if someone ever figured out how to analyze and enhance themselves, they'd be able to boost that ability. Grinning and speaking in that odd tone, the professor mentioned that when that person finally achieved it, the orb would morph them into a pseudo-god. The professor's words felt over the top and unsettling, leaving the students in a state of sheer shock. However, for our main character, everything still felt incredibly mundane. The professor went on saying that while it might be tough to grasp right now as the lecture rolled on, everyone would gradually come to comprehend. Wrapping up the lecture, he tasked them with picturing the possible uses of what they just learned. From start to finish, our main character found everything to be quite puzzling. He pondered, if God is God, then what exactly is a pseudo-god? He wasn't sure if it was like a god or just a fake one. His daydreaming was interrupted when Slight called out to Ban, who was busy asking a classmate to break down the lecture since he hadn't caught on. Meanwhile, Slight remarked that he thought the protagonist would sum it all up perfectly, but he was too focused on Orma. Once the shock subsided, he managed to ask Orma what she was up to there. The gloomy-faced young man stated that he was the one with questions. He wanted to know where she was, and Slight could hardly believe he was referring to their classmate. Out of nowhere, Dako showed up asking why everyone was huddled together. With a playful grin, she quipped that she thought something serious must have gone down. Awkwardly, our protagonist, not wanting the situation to escalate, was at a loss for words. Orma stepped up to the white-haired girl and verified if her name was Du. He mentioned he had business to discuss with her. She continued to tease him, asking if he was throwing down another duel request, stating that if he wanted to hurt her, she wouldn't stop him. He insisted that dueling within the academy seemed quite challenging. While she was chatting, the young man knelt and clarified that this wasn't a duel request at all. He produced a stunning bouquet of flowers and offered it to the furious girl standing before him, leaving everyone gasping. Orma asked the girl out on a date. As he blushed with embarrassment, those behind him with their mouths agape could hardly believe that scene was happening. Just like them, the icy young woman kept her expressions tightly sealed. Nobody could wrap their heads around the fact that the proud and cocky Orma had actually developed feelings for a girl who had wiped the floor with him. Our main character mused about the kind of taste someone must have for that to even occur, remembering that Ban himself had been on the receiving end of Duko's punches several times. Slight asked if he wasn't questioning his own taste in that not-so-subtle way, which truly stung our protagonist, who then shared the same vibes with Rushal. Du was taken aback that Ban didn't grasp another guy's feelings, as she was just about to inquire what sort of scheme he believed Orma was cooking up. Hearing about a plan, the three of them gazed at Dao with astonished expressions, making her realize they genuinely didn't seem to notice what was going on. Du was positive that Ordo was scheming something, because his gaze was void of any tenderness. The main character had to disagree with Duko. No way, that doesn't seem likely. I mean, you're absolutely gorgeous. The unexpected compliment threw Du for a loop, causing her to blush hard. Shaking with fury, Du demanded to know how the oblivious Ban could casually say something like that, noticing that Ban didn't even realize what he had done. Slight advised her not to fall for his tricks. As Du and Slight argued, Rushal pondered if there was indeed some other motive behind that confession. She couldn't shake off the odd expression he had shown. At that moment, with Orma still kneeling, Doko crossed her arms to dismiss him, leaving Orma behind. She signaled her friends to leave. It was then that Rushal glanced at Orma out of the corner of her eye and was startled to see his face wore a melancholic expression. During training, our main character picked up some surprising news. By making his presence known to numerous beings and embedding his existence in their minds, Ban had unlocked a fresh notion of language, charm, and honor, all of which skyrocketed to 10 points. The main character was taken aback since he had just dropped a fresh video on the channel. Scanning through the details, he realized that charm could enchant and sway others, while honor bolstered dignity by earning recognition from many folks. Though he had no complaints, Ban pondered how these two ideas could assist him in scaling the tower. Rushal, standing right before the protagonist, was taken aback when he asked if her face had changed at all. Blushing shyly, Rushal looked down as she replied, "Oh well, I think Ban is super handsome." The protagonist gasped in surprise, clarifying that wasn't quite the question he meant. Meanwhile, Dao, eavesdropping on their whole chat with her keen super hearing, was starting to feel a bit irritated. Abruptly, Rushal heard a faint scream, coming from Duko, who was training with Du, and suddenly felt a strong gust of wind whack her back. Stomping on the ground, Duko caught the attention of the two lovebirds. train. Stay focused on your training, and when it's time to rest, just chill. Poor, Slight, still reeling from a beating, was getting hoisted by Duko. The protagonist tried to ask Dako about his face, but the flustered girl swiftly slapped him on the cheek while blushing. Come on, didn't you hear what I said? Focus on your training. If you keep messing around, I'll make you two train until tomorrow. With Dio's stern warning, Ban and Rachel got back to work, while a weary Slight cried out for a break. Ban and Rushel dove right into their sparring trading blows as they moved all around the training room, using every inch of space they could find. Rule's claws clashed against the main character's sword, leaving trails of energy behind. Trying to take a breather, Slight remarked that Ban seemed much stronger now and wondered if he ought to stop focusing on dungeons and head back to the tower. Du thought Slight was rushing things. In her eyes, even if Ban had improved, he still lagged behind Slight and the beast Rushel. She noticed that from the start the sparring only worked because one of them, Rushel, was taking it easy on the other. Anyway, Dio recalled that they would head back to the tower the following day. She questioned if Ban had already cracked the code on how to handle the beast inside Rel, because otherwise it'd be just like last week. Ban also understood that if they didn't figure something out quickly, they'd end up reliving last time's fiasco. Mid-battle, he activated his all-seeing eye. Over the past week, he'd been keeping a close eye on Ruchel, which led him to discover some intriguing insights. Her violent outbursts were fueled by various emotions. Depending on the emotion ignited, her state shifted dramatically. When powered by a highly negative emotion, she burned until she lost total control. However, when she drew from positive and calm feelings, the violence in Ruchel subsided and her emotions stabilized. Knowing this, Ban kept fighting Ruchel to gain more insight into her powers. During battles, emotions ran high, making violence an unavoidable outcome. The more emotional energy was used, the wilder Royal became. But Ban was determined to switch up that energy. He wanted to channel something more positive. The sparring went on until Ban gained an upper hand using the back of his sword to push Ru, whose hair was entirely dark now. The observers who were not fighting watched the spectacle unfold. Rule had been toppled to the ground, and due to exhaustion, Ban dropped to his knees. Yet, the fury in Ruchel was at its highest. Clenching her teeth, she refused to back down. Realizing it was time to put his plan into action, Ban extended his hand and conjured a magical circle. He intended to demonstrate that the time spent with Ruchel was used to gather bits of her emotions. Whether she was joyful, playful, or at peace, Ban had not only gathered those feelings, but mirrored them directly from their core essence. As he released the essences of joy, happiness, and laughter, Ban moved toward Ruchel, wielding those emotions in hopes they would resonate with her. He aimed for her to soak them up. However, a blow sent him stumbling back, keeping him from reaching her. In a fit of rage, Ruchel managed to strike Ban's hand where he held on to those emotions. The protagonist jumped in surprise. In front of him, Dao was grinding her teeth fiercely. In a flash, she sprang up, tackling Ban in the stomach like a rugby player, and with the force of her movement. Right in front of him, Dao was clenching her teeth tightly. Without hesitation, the girl sprang up, wrapping her arms around Ban's waist like a rugby player, and with the force of the movement, tossed him to the ground, landing right on top of him. The main character felt the weight hit hard, mounting Ban. Ruchel's eyes had a devilish gleam. With a thunderous roar, she lunged at the main character with her sharp claws. Instantly sensing the threat, Dio and Slight rushed over to intervene. But a chain outpaced the two of them. It snaked around Ruchel's arm, halting her attack. Another chain emerged, gripping her other arm and restraining her completely. Seeing Ruchel's face, the main character felt a twinge of concern, but soon noticed that her hair shimmered with lightning. When Ruchel reverted to her normal self, the main character asked if she felt faster after her transformation. Finally, Ban could take a breather, relieved to observe that Ruchel's beastly nature was settling down quickly. Still, it raised a red flag about having to restrain her every time they fought. He couldn't shake the thought of finding a better way to calm her down, maybe a specific condition for it. Just then, Ruchel expressed her gratitude. Ban was puzzled by her thanks since the issue wasn't fully resolved. Yet, Rachel quickly shook her head, thanking him because now she could at least put up some sort of fight. She saw this improvement as major and was glad to have him around. Ban's cheeks flushed at Ruchel's words. Before he could process it, Du approached him, locking eyes. The main character jumped in surprise when Dao got so close and scrambled for excuses. "We're really trying hard here, didn't you notice?" As Du kept staring at him, Slight also drew near, relieved that no one had been hurt. However, Du sensed something more pressing. She started gazing at Ruchel, grabbing everyone's attention, including hers, making the main character uneasy. Du scrutinized Rel for a bit, staying quiet before finally turning away. "No, it's nothing." She decided to wrap up the training for the day so everyone could recharge. Remaining behind, Ruchel looked at Do with a mix of doubts and sadness. The following day, the group set off toward the tower. Once they arrived, Slight attempted to ask Du for a green light to use the holy sword, at least as they entered the tower. He was anxious about the challenges they might face, knowing this could change the fate of all four of them. However, Du reminded him that they had all agreed to build a strong foundation without rushing. This was just their second exploration in their rookie semester, so she didn't feel they needed to be overly concerned. The main character sided with Du, although Slight still seemed unconvinced. The more he relied on the holy sword, the more dependent he became. Struggling with the concept of a demonic spirit carrying the Holy Spirit, Ban was starting to wonder if it really was a holy sword after all. Regardless, it would be a good idea to keep Slight away from that negative influence. Slight realized he wouldn't be able to use the sword, but asked her not to fault him if he crumbled in the tower. However, in response to that request, Ban, feeling quite demonic himself, showed a ruthless side. "We're not going to blame you. But just remember, millions of viewers are watching the video." While Slight fretted, the main character delved into his internal codes. His stats popped up along with his skill points and learned essences. With everything falling into place, he got his Snake Eve and the recorder Tikiki ready. He planned to rely on both of them during this adventure. Before they stepped inside, Rachel approached the main character. "I'll give it my all in there and listen to every word you say." The main character thanked Rushel for her commitment, asking her to trust him since he was improving in battle too. With a bright smile, Rushel felt ready to depend on Ban. Jealous Du looked down at Rushel. "I just hope you last at least until Saturday night. If anyone gets knocked out, I'll give them a serious punishment." As Slight pressed on about getting the sword, Du called the main character aside. Intrigued, he wondered what she wanted. Du needed to discuss a few things with him before they entered. Her words were direct. "Today is the first evaluation. Honestly, I'm pretty let down by both of you. You haven't forgotten the promise you made to me, right?" In one of her rare moments of smiling, Du had promised he would take responsibility if things went south. Ban tried to keep a positive mindset. "Of course I haven't forgotten. Besides, both of us have started to change already. You don't need to sit around waiting for the results. They're going to unfold just like I said." Du shifted gears and started chatting about Rushel, who popped up hiding behind one of the pillars. Just before Do began to speak, she snapped her fingers. The sound bounced around, making Rushel wince from a sudden pain in her ears. Hearing her scream, the main character spun around in surprise, noticing Rushel straining to catch the chatter. Du got a little annoyed and kept snapping her fingers. "Trying to eavesdrop on us, are you? You're getting so bold in front of Ban and Ban." The main character was taken aback because Du's finger snaps seemed to be at a frequency he couldn't hear at all. It was probably something only Rushel could pick up. Back to the topic. Doko asked the main character if he understood what submission meant. The main character replied it was about being dominated, but that wasn't quite the right answer for Do. From the viewpoint of someone being dominated, it can be a bit uncomfortable. Still, some folks find comfort in strong leadership. In that way, that beast seems to truly appreciate someone who can fully dominate and control her. Since Ban didn't seem to get it, Du tried to clarify further. In other words, when that beast loses control, trying to communicate without any emotions is pointless. Even with that new explanation, Ban was still full of questions, which frustrated the girl. Gritting her teeth, she ordered him to stop pondering and just memorize her words. With a sigh, the main character agreed to keep that in mind while watching Dio turn her back to join Slight, who was already ready for them to enter the tower. Leading the way, the group approached the entrance. As he placed his hand on the door, Ban asked if everyone was all set. Light was the first to nod, followed by Ruchul and Do with excitement. The main character began recording. First years from the special admission class 11. The second exploration starts now. And with that, he opened the doors of the tower, unleashing a brilliant light that enveloped them. Instantly, they were whisked away to a place where the floor seemed to be melting, triggering a labyrinthitis crisis for those who had it. Staring at the northern lights, twinkling in the sky and the various square walls, Ban pondered their whereabouts. Having been caught in so many bizarre situations, Doko thought they would start on the first floor, but soon realized that wasn't the case. If someone could view them from above, they'd see they were inside a gigantic labyrinth. While Slight scouted around, the main character checked his pendant, confirming they were on the 5th floor. Slight was relieved they were on a regular floor, prompting Du to question if he was getting too relaxed. As the two bickered once more, the main character noticed something. Ruchel was fixated on one direction of the labyrinth. She was certain she caught a whiff of a monster. Instead of finding a way out, she had stumbled upon a creature. Ban felt a wave of anxiety, but what happened next left him utterly shocked. In the direction Ruchel was fixated on, something began to materialize like computer data being transmitted. Immediately, Slight drew his sword, asking Ban what that was. The main character realized this was something different from what they encountered on the first floor. It made an unsettling crackling sound and had a warped appearance, as if it were falling apart. Without missing a beat, Rachel brandished her claws and lunged at the creature. She successfully struck her target, which then shattered into data. At that moment, Ban received a notification. From what Ruchel had just hit, he acquired several concepts: 0.1 glitch and noise points, 0.2 demonic spirit points, 0.05 malfunction points, and 0.01 inversion points. Just as Ban suspected, that was a glitch phenomenon. When a signal gets interrupted, both the graphics and sound become all distorted. This inverted force generated a bizarre sense of fear, morphing into a monster. Given that this was a completely different kind of creature compared to those they had faced before, there were many unknown concepts. He wasn't sure how the malfunction and inversion concepts worked. For the moment, Glitch had inversion, so it appeared to be quite handy. It would be interesting to collect. Lost in thought, Ban didn't realize he was under attack. But with a burst of energy, Du quickly saved him. Frowning, she scolded him. Ban and Yuan need to stay focused. Beating these creatures while trying to escape the labyrinth is going to be a real challenge. With Doko leading the way, they navigated through the maze, making sure not to get split up on the tricky paths. As the main character was sprinting, a message came through. They didn't seem like the kind of beings that would show up in room 5, but honestly, that wasn't too surprising. Ban felt pretty pleased that he managed to snag a few fragments of inversion points while escaping. However, remembering that he needed 100 points made him question if it was worth the trouble. The main character halted when he heard Rushel scream. The girl, who was facing off against one of the glitches, was recklessly advancing, but the main character stopped her by summoning the chain created by Eve. He wouldn't let Rushel fight by herself to keep her from going berserk. When Ban told her to stay close, Rushel quickly agreed. Meanwhile, while Dako took down several other glitches, she bickered with both of them. Hey, quit flirting and let's move. Protecting Royal, the main character conjured another chain. He put the concepts on the walls aside for now to focus on the fight. Thanks to her sharp sense of smell, Rushel was able to alert the main character just before monsters were about to show up. By using the chains, the main character was able to rack up inversion points by taking down the glitches. Even after several minutes of running, they still hadn't found the end of the labyrinth. Du then revealed that she had memorized the entire route they had taken while sprinting. And both she and Ban sensed that while the place felt different, they had definitely been there before. She figured it wasn't a regular labyrinth, but one that changed in real time. Given this situation, Du concluded that their only choice was to completely destroy it. When she took a battle stand, the main character noticed something with his eye ability. He had been so focused on gathering inversion that he had overlooked an important detail. Du wanted to smash everything to uncover whatever was hidden, but the main character interrupted her, rushing past to place his hands on the walls of the labyrinth. He explained his thoughts. Logically, a path that keeps changing doesn't really make sense. This indicates there has to be some trick concealed within the walls. The main character felt along the entire wall until he found a spot that caved in when pressed, just like a hidden button. Ban earned half a point of illusion for uncovering that secret button, a concept that couldn't be claimed by humans. As the wall in front of him vanished, the main character beamed, thrilled that he was right. His bet had paid off, and a path appeared ahead of him. Rushel was eager to know how Ban had achieved that. With a bit of pondering, he thought it was amazing that he had uncovered the labyrinth's secret, and the main character scratched his nose trying to mask his pride. Actually, he had noticed it slightly earlier, but ended up saying nothing because it slipped his mind while collecting concepts. To cover this up, the main character made up a story. I don't like to waste time. I just noticed a section of the wall that seemed off after we had been walking for ages. Du found Ban a bit shady but kept her thoughts to herself. She was more astounded that he had detected a flaw in the magic that even her powers hadn't caught. Watching the main character lead the way, Du reminded herself as she had predicted that Ban was far from just an ordinary talent. The team continued making their way through the labyrinth, battling the glitches along the way. This time they stumbled upon a giant elite glitch, even though they were just on their second exploration. For Slight, this only confirmed that their experience was unlike the other group's explorations. Rushel shared the same thought. Even after taking down the elite monster and racking up plenty of concept points, the main character remained still, staring blankly, which concerned Rel. She feared he might be hurt, but Ban quickly reassured her. The truth was, he was worried. He was a 1,000th of a mana point, shy of hitting 200, but that number just wouldn't budge. Despite having absorbed more than enough concepts in the past 3 hours, his mana didn't reach 200 points, a dilemma that the concepts of life and body had never encountered. Noticing his condition, Du approached and whispered in his ear, "What's up? What's the matter with you? You don't seem hurt." The main character jumped at Du's sudden presence, something he had already asked her to refrain from, but it wasn't just Du who was worried. Everyone else was too. The main character opened up about his struggle with his monogrowth, which left Du puzzled. Out of the blue, Du chuckled as if she found it amusing. When Ban asked her why she was so cheerful, Du inquired if he had hit a wall. Ban was taken aback by Du's comment. She recalled that he had been rapidly expanding his energy, almost as if he were absorbing everything around him, which resulted in an enormous growth rate. It was like endlessly watering a plant without giving its roots time to develop, causing him to hit a growth ceiling. After hearing Du's explanation, the main character asked what he should do next. Du thought it was a clever strategy to carelessly defeat monsters just as he was doing. Searching for a more effective method, she glanced around. Her eyes landed on Rukul, who was puzzled as to why she was staring at her. Du huffed, feeling annoyed. It must be nice for someone to get fresh air on the weekend instead of being cooped up in school, enjoying tasty food and shopping for clothes. Noticing how Du was treating him, the main character tried to persuade her. Hey Doko, if you teach me, I promise I'll learn hard. I'll think about the trip, the food, and the shopping. So, Du eventually agreed to assist him since he quickly grasped the predicament he was in. Catching the eyes of her friends, Du asked if it would be alright since it might take a bit. Rutel didn't mind if it was to help Ban. Likewise, Slight was on board since they had recently battled in Elite and hadn't switched rooms. Seeing everyone was understanding, the main character expressed his gratitude. Then Du explained that the best technique would be for him to undergo the basic transmission of the mystic body art. The main character was puzzled, so Du clarified thoroughly. Despite its lofty title, it was simply a basic martial art, so it wasn't too tricky. Still, Ban felt a bit anxious. Until now, he had only learned the basics with Dio, but had never directly trained in a martial art. This would be a martial art. That's why he wondered if he could actually learn it well. Before they kicked things off, the main character asked if he needed to perform something akin to the nine-bow ritual, a traditional master and disciple ceremony. Du couldn't believe he was trying to stir up drama over a martial art even kids learned. She urged him to relax and just prepare. As Ban removed his shirt for better mobility during training, Du lost herself in thought. She was taken aback to hear an outsider mention the ritual. Although she had acted nonchalant, her mystic body art was a secret that couldn't be taught. Even if the student revered someone as their master, because it was a divine family art, strictly passed down through blood, Du was aware of how stunned her father would be if he learned she was teaching the art to someone, especially someone she had just met from another world. While Du was deep in her thoughts, the main character called out to her. Having taken off his shirt, revealing his toned physique, Ban wondered if he really needed to go that far. Du couldn't believe she was actually teaching this shameless young man a secret family technique. She felt that could only happen if he became her husband. Unaware of Du's thoughts, the main character tried to cover himself, feeling embarrassed. Slight, who was gazing at his physique with wide eyes. He tried to tell Rushel not to peek. He thought it was fine for him as a guy to look, but not for her. Watching the two chattering away, Du yelled for them to hush. As the training began, Du directed Ban to take a seat and clear his mind. So the main character did just that. Moving behind him, Du reached out her hand. Ever since she first met him, there had been this strange feeling that kept intensifying. The urge to care for this man with her own hands bubbled up inside her. Ban was unlike any other guy Dio had encountered. She didn't even need to point out B's remarkable skills in martial arts. But what really amazed her was his potential to harness these abilities. She was convinced that if he managed to develop his impressive qualities and skills in a structured way, he could turn into something beyond imagination. She pondered just how quickly and far he could advance. At the same time, she felt a strong desire to protect his talent, wanting to keep him from being swayed by others. She was curious about what made her care so much for this man. While Dio was deep in thought, Ban felt her warm fingertips gently resting on his back. Refocusing, Du asked if he was prepared, reminding him she had covered the basics earlier. The main character mentioned he was all set, but wondered if she wasn't going to share an oral formula before jumping into it. Du had no idea Ban was looking for an explanation of the technique, and started chuckling, finding his curiosity amusing. Would you even get it if I recited the oral formula for a technique? Instead of diving into the details, it's better to let your body learn it. Remembering Ban's thoughts about the master and disciple ritual, she couldn't help but giggle, asking where he had picked up his martial arts knowledge. The main character pondered if she would smack him if he admitted he learned it from novels. Putting the laughter on pause, Du prepared to kick things off. Not quite ready, Ban hesitated, but suddenly felt a rush of energy ripple through his body. Just a few moments before, Du had explained to the main character, "The divine manifestation technique I'm about to teach you is going to completely transform your key magical power and body foundation." Faced with such shocking news, Ban was taken aback. Initially, he thought he'd just learned some simple martial arts, so he expected the process to be pretty laid back, but now he sensed it was going to be a whole different ballgame. However, Du reassured him, "Don't fret. As you train your Kai, it's totally normal for its nature to evolve. The magical power affected by the divine manifestation energizes the body, and this ever-active body uses magical power to create a pristine ki. As long as both your body and magical power are developed, the pathways will flourish naturally." Ban was still struggling to grasp it. Even after the thorough explanation, he tried to simplify it. Magical power gets filtered and turned into pure Kai. As Dio guided the technique along his back, Ban felt a burning sensation in his body. From the instant she made contact, it was like he was turning into a fireball. He sensed that the magical power coursing through his veins was being consumed at an astonishing rate. It felt as if a pathway that didn't exist before was being forced into existence. While the main character gritted his teeth, worried he might literally catch fire, Du placed her hand on his shoulder. Ban, just breathe. She instructed him on what to do next. Follow the pathways imprinted in your body and keep the divine Kai moving. Move the flames. This is your first step in the divine manifestation journey. Ban shut his eyes to soak in Du's final advice. If you nail this training, you'll eventually find the next path on your own. With his eyes closed, Ban visualized the blue flames inside him constantly in motion. Sitting in a lotus position, he directed the flames to flow smoothly through every vessel, honing in on his heart. After a little while, Ban let out a sigh, feeling increasingly at ease. Thanks to the technique taught by Tao, he realized that relying solely on raw magical power wasn't always the best strategy. When Ban opened his eyes, a notification popped up in front of him. He was taken aback when he read it. You've uncovered the new concept of martial arts divine manifestation. The depth of the divine manifestation has reached 20 points. Thanks to the training in divine manifestation, some of the negative concepts in your body have been cleared away. A positive overflow of life has been generated. This potential overflow will help boost the growth of other concepts. Getting confirmed that he had gained a new ability was exhilarating. Even better, Ban noticed that the depth of his soul attribute had gone up to 440 points. Additionally, his body's resistance attribute increased, just like Dio mentioned would happen when he filled his body with divine Kai. The more Ban trained with that blue flame, the more he could feel the power of the concepts surging. Next to the main character, since she had already finished teaching him the technique, Duko checked in. So are you happy with? Ban couldn't help but give a thumbs up for the divine manifestation technique. It's incredible. Now you can start thinking about what reward you'd like to receive. Ban almost felt a twinge of regret when he heard Du's maniacal laughter. I can't wait to see what you choose. But in that moment, Du had something on her mind, tossing Ban's shirt back to him. She told him to wipe off the sweat and get dressed unless he planned on scaling the tower alone. Ban ducked behind a wall while cleaning himself up. As he was getting ready, he noticed something unusual. He sensed that with a bit more focus on training, he could detect the divine ki flowing through his body. Ban glanced at his hand, able to visualize the internal vessels. The more the divine ki expanded, the stronger his body grew, and the sharper his senses became. Ban gazed at his hand, noticing the inner veins. As the divine ki grew, he felt his body getting stronger and his senses sharpening. Can you believe that such a martial art could be shared at no cost? After a bit, Ban was back with his crew, remembering the events that unfolded. Slight asked if Ban was going to make a video showcasing everything that just happened. Of course, he wasn't going to do that. While chatting with Slight, Ban noticed Ducko folding her arms in an unusual way. Catching his gaze, Du wondered what was up. The main character quickly diverted the topic, suggesting they move ahead. Rushel and Slight couldn't resist poking fun at him before departing. Looks like they're going to rack up some serious views. A shirtless training session. As they strolled through the maze, Slight asked if anyone was feeling peckish since it had to be around lunchtime. Ban realized they ended up wasting some time, so it must be mealtime. However, Du didn't want to stop because they had been stuck in room 5 for too long. She wouldn't be able to eat until they reached the next room. Slight took the opportunity to tease her. You're acting like a soldier enforcing rules on mealtimes, since Slight still had the energy to complain. Du told him he ought to focus that energy on finding the exit. Just as Du suggested, Slight search for the way out, the young blonde stumbled upon something. Right ahead was a big door. It looked like he had genuinely found the exit since that was the only door they had spotted on the whole floor. The group thought this might be the path to the next room. Nevertheless, Ban asked them to pause for a moment before pressing on. Ban's eyes began to glimmer with a golden shine. It felt odd since he hadn't tapped into any special ability. However, he sensed that there was more to that door from the groove. Convinced that this intriguing presence was indeed emanating from the back of the structure, Ban moved closer, surprising Slight, who was eager to dash off for lunch. Du questioned Ban's decision and trailed after him, calling for the others. Ban circled around the structure, housing the door joined by the rest, but they didn't uncover anything. As he approached, Ban Slight asked if they were in the wrong spot. Ban realized it might seem like that to the others, but to him that wall was buzzing with illusory concepts. Ban extended his hand toward the wall. Halfway there, his hand brushed against a glass-like surface, which began to split at his touch. The crack spread swiftly, spiderwebbing across the entire invisible wall. Then all at once, the wall shattered, leaving everyone astonished. Slight was flabbergasted. What just happened? The girls realized Ban had discovered a new route. Before them, through the shattered wall, they could see a spiral staircase, a shortcut to the upper levels. At that moment, Ban received a notification. You have absorbed 50 illusions. The outrageous number took him by surprise, proving how well hidden this path was. While he could hardly believe he'd found this place, Ban flashed a forced smile. Wow, that's amazing. Presenting the shortcut to the group, Ban asked what they should do next. Slight couldn't fathom why Ban was even asking. Next to him, Dako had already made the obvious choice. As if they were on the same wavelength, the quartet sprinted into the shortcut area. While ascending the stairs, Ban fed his little snake Eve with the 50 illusions so she could grow stronger. During their climb, Ban shared a thought. Looks like the floor changes around here since there's no exchange system. Built on Ban's theory. Perhaps the stairs themselves function as the mechanism. She argued with Slight, directing him to make sure he walked straight without veering to the side. Slight questioned what would happen if a monster attacked them. Couldn't see why he was worried about that since they could always fight back. Using the identification stone, Raoul revealed that they were already on the 8th floor. Ban was amazed they had jumped 3 floors in one go, but complimented him. You found an awesome shortcut, huh? Ban couldn't help but smile back at the praise. Honestly, I wasn't really aware of how great this shortcut was either. Light, who had read the manual, recalled it mentioning that discovering a shortcut was a stroke of luck. What had Slight on edge was that the more floors they skipped, the harder the next one would be. He didn't understand why nobody seemed concerned, for Doshi focused more on the rewards than the challenges looming ahead. In frustration, Slight griped and begged, Ban, please don't find any more shortcuts next time. The main character couldn't help but chuckle in agreement. Slight's complaints definitely stood out. Ban, don't look for any shortcuts next time. The main character couldn't help but chuckle and nodded in agreement. Slight's worries really stood out. Ban was puzzled about why Slight was acting so terrified, especially since he wasn't like this during their last expedition. Gripping his spear, Slight mixed sadness with complaints. If it gets any tougher, it's going to be risky. The holy sword, if only I could wield it. Slight seemed a bit lost in thought, heavily reliant on his sword. Hearing his endless complaints, wondered if she should just break the sword. This only made him more anxious. As the usual argument between them continued, Ruchel spotted something from her spot. Glancing up, she noticed the stairs leading to a way out. Because the student identification stone showed they were on the 8th floor, Ban assumed this exit would take them to the 9th. Ruchel urged him to be cautious since he was in front. I can sense some hostility over there, just like that time. When Ruchel mentioned feeling the same way as when the irregularity emerged, and Slight paused their quarrel. Then did something unexpected. It's always good to be cautious, Light. Once we step onto that floor, get your sword ready. Slight was taken aback by approval. He instantly drew his sword, brimming with confidence and enthusiasm. Don't worry, everyone. I've got this. Haha. His sudden change in demeanor slightly irritated although there was nothing she could do about it. The moment they walked through the glowing gate, they found themselves on a floor with stone walls and pillars. Ban scanned the area but saw no monsters, just a tall ceiling. This led Slight to imagine they had entered a resting spot. Ban was skeptical since this area wasn't mentioned in any guidebooks. They started to investigate, aware someone with a weapon was hiding nearby. Then, without warning, that person made their move. Their weapon unleashed an explosive wave that formed a magic circle. Ban was taken aback by the loud noise. Suddenly, a massive sphere shot towards When she realized the sphere was right up against her, a powerful explosion erupted on impact, sending debris and dust flying everywhere. Ban and the others shielded themselves from the dust cloud, worried about But when she appeared, she was calmly standing on the bomb, grumbling toward the main character. Didn't you say only you could handle those kinds of things in the tower? The main character sheepishly recalled he had said that, believing it to be a one-time use weapon. He quickly scanned the surroundings for the jerk who attacked them. With his golden eye, he swiftly pinpointed the hidden enemy. Ban pointed to one of the pillars, Light over there. Before he could specify the exact spot, Slight had already dashed forward. The hooded man turned toward the group, startled to see someone charging right at him. He couldn't believe they had discovered him. His stealth shouldn't have been noticed by newbies. Bursting with excitement, Slight swung his sword, slicing through the large pillar. The man, now flustered, tried to steady himself. He had planned to take on the swordsman alone, and then blow up the 3 near the bomb. Ban stepped over to asking if she was alright. He knew just how dangerous it could have been if that initial attack had hit anyone else. Confirmed Ban's concern. It was at that moment, while activating his all-seeing eye, that Ban was taken aback, pointing to the sphere beneath Dooko's feet, discovering a massive energy inside it. In reality, it was a level 30 magic bomb, exceptionally powerful. Kneeling next to the sphere, he warned everyone to step back. With great effort, Ban managed to deactivate the bomb's energy. He exhaled, disbelieving that someone would use such a potent artifact, but he was certain that this person would pay for it. He knew this because Slight was fiercely attacking the enemy, delivering blows that lit up as they collided with the opponent's weapon. The intruder had to defend himself at all times, gritting his teeth as he realized that the young warrior he faced was quite skilled. Yet he anticipated something different. The invader had already positioned himself far enough to avoid the explosion of the sphere. He glanced in the group's direction. only to be shocked as a boy hurled something his way. He didn't stress because the blast was set to happen in 3 seconds. Waving goodbye to the group, the invader pressed the detonator. That's when he noticed a sphere heading his way. With his mouth agape, he wondered why that sphere was there. Slight also caught sight of it and rushed forward. Panicking, the man screamed, bracing for the explosion. The sphere missed him, and instead smashed into a pillar behind him, bouncing off. He was so focused on the sphere that he was taken aback when it didn't explode. At that moment, he jumped in surprise. The boy's sword was getting dangerously close. Slight calmly warned, "I'm not sure why you're so shocked, but you really shouldn't take your eyes off your opponent during a fight." With a swift and unblocked strike, Slight won the duel. The man wasn't entirely defeated yet. Wincing as he held his shoulder wound, he remarked, "That's strange." Light found the whole situation odd. "You're human, right? So why are you attacking us? How did you even end up here?" Just then, Ban stepped in to grab the sphere. "Since I saw through your sneaky stealth, did you really think I wouldn't catch on to the bomb tucked inside the sphere?" He pointed out the man's blunder. "You were a bit too cocky with your tricks. That's why you're in the mess you're in," he said, slamming the defective product. "Are you really that foolish?" The man, unable to fight back, clenched his teeth in frustration and demanded to know who those youngsters were. He was fuming with rage. How do novices who are still on the lower floors of the tower possess so much power? As he yelled out his complaints, he was startled by an attack that struck the pillar next to him. Du had caused the commotion, launching energy with her fingers. Her sinister look could instill fear deep in anyone who dared to meet her gaze. "Before we chat calmly, I need to make sure your arms and legs are restrained, just so you don't pull any funny business." But another thought was brewing in Rushal's mind. "No, we have to finish him off. He can't be left alive." Rushal's words caught everyone's attention. Her hair started to darken as she clenched her teeth, growing more furious by the second. "If we don't do this, it'll be the end for all of us." Fury overwhelmed Lively. Ban tried to intervene to stop her, but her claws were already racing toward the man. Just before they made contact, chains wrapped around her body, created by Ban and Eve, ensuring she was secured. At that moment, a gloomy voice echoed with a suffocating pressure. "What a failure. Idiot." The man glanced around. Ban pondered the origin of that pressure. Slight, however, had an inkling. Du knew precisely who was behind it. The constellation. That voice began to haunt the defeated man. Observing the chaos, the voice commented, "It seems your usefulness has come to an end." The man, now engulfed by dark energy, attempted to apologize to the voice, pleading for another shot. "I can still get it right," but the voice was unconvinced. "Surrender so your companions can reap the rewards." Watching the man writhe in torment, Slight asked what was going on. Immediately, Ban warned everyone to stand back. The voice continued, "For the Oshudos, offer yourself." The man screamed, desperately trying to escape his fate. Ban attempted to rush away, but upon facing that energy, he realized he was out of time. He couldn't evade the explosion, nor could he fully escape its reach. Once again, the explosion filled the air with dust and debris. Concerned Do peered in Ban's direction, searching for him. Chuckling, the main character was seated on the ground. By sheer luck, the explosion had halted just a meter away from him. Almost fainting, he remarked, "For a split second, I caught a glimpse of the Samsara River." In a panic, Rushal dashed over to him. Light followed suit. "How are you all right after all this?" At that moment, Ban realized dodging wasn't an option. Then he drew upon the concept he had taken from the magic bomb. He directed the explosion toward the ground to contain the shockwave from the other one. Countering one explosion with another was a first for Duco. It had been a tough feat for Ban to accomplish. If I had been any slower, it would have been a total disaster. Intrigued, Slight asked what had happened to the man. The main character felt that he was okay, likely sent back to the first floor since they were in the tower. However, the gloomy voice disagreed. "He no longer exists. He's definitely gone. The tower accepted this demise during the battle against you. You obliterated his essence." Ban frowned and smiled, questioning the voice. "What kind of nonsense is that? You triggered the explosion. We were just trying to survive." Yet the voice sounded sorrowful. "I lost a member but gained nothing. I should have taken precautions when the tower started to treat you all so specially." Slight couldn't wrap his head around it while Ban quickly interjected, "Cut the nonsense and just be straightforward. Who was that guy and who are you?" The voice paused before deciding to say just one thing to the group. "We're Exodus, your foes." The main character was taken aback and puzzled by that statement and the enigmatic voice's farewell. As the energy faded away, Rel was relieved. Even though Ban was still clenching his jaw against the constellations, he couldn't quite grasp why none of them were behaving normally. However, Ruchal seized on the crucial information they had uncovered. The name of the group, Exodus, was something she definitely remembered. Slight recognized that organization. Exodus is the most renowned band of pirates across all dimensions. The constellation must be one of their backers. Ban recalled that Professor Yumina had mentioned the Exodus pirates before. Slight was at a loss for what was happening since these guys were targeting them. Du found it intriguing. We would eventually encounter them while ascending the tower. Wasn't this experience a good thing? Ban wound up agreeing, causing Slight to frown. You two really get each other. Still, Slight sensed something was off with one of the constellation's comments about the tower treating them specially. Their suspicions were confirmed. Is anyone feeling anything? Slight looked concerned. It was right then that Rachel got a notification. Slight received one too. The three of them, leaving Bon out for now, gathered around to check it out, which made the main character anxious. Did you all get a message from the director? Du denied it, but admitted that it was something he should have experienced too. The trio had leveled up and Ban was left out feeling frightened. Du noticed her level climbing for the first time since they entered the tower. Could this be a reward from the tower for us handling the constellation's assault? She mused. Slight found it irritating if what Du thought was accurate. Ruchal, seeing her stats rise significantly, looked quite pleased. The trio sat admiring how much they had improved, while Bon and Yvonne lingered aside, a bit annoyed, as he saw his companions utilize status windows for the first time. The main character realized that they just hadn't evolved yet since their averages were already pretty high. Thinking about himself again, he wondered if the tower was overlooking him since he hadn't received any notification or reward. To be sure, he activated the all-seeing eye ability. He then realized he was mistaken. In the middle of the crater left by the explosion, he spotted a concept hovering amidst the smoke and debris. A peculiar concept was floating right where that enemy had vanished. The main character moved closer to the concept, gambling on the idea that it was his reward, and touched it. Instantly, upon touching the spiritual item, a powerful burst of energy erupted. Words and phrases spiraled up, Ban's arm filling him with tons of stats. Ban was astonished to see himself receiving 79 life points. Absolutely wild. Plus, among the concepts, there were some he had never laid eyes on before. The first was the concept of metamorphosis, something that could usually not be applied to humans. The other was star scar, a remnant of a pure star's brightness that lingered even after all beings had been swept away. The main character imagined that the first represented an advanced force of transformation, while the second was linked to constellations. As Ban pondered how to make use of these concepts, Ivan showed up, clicking his tongue at Ban. When Ban asked Eve if she wanted the metamorphosis concept, the little snake wiggled happily in excitement. Sighing, Ban decided to reclaim the concept. Alright, it's not like I'm going to use this anyway. Here you go, eat up Eve, with fondness. The little snake devoured the metamorphosis concept, and instantly traces of energy started coursing through her body. Ban's surprised yelp caught his companion's attention, who quickly turned to look at him. Raul was the first to approach, asking what was going on. Shaking Ban, replied Eve, she's turned into an egg. The main character was holding an egg with digital features in his hands. A notification appeared from it. Object has mastered a lower-tier concept. Origin mutation in progress. Worried, Ruchal asked if that had occurred before. Ban confirmed it had, but explained that last time Eve had hatched right after turning into an egg, which wasn't happening this time. Slight speculated that this delay was due to it being Eve's second evolution. Du crossed her arms with a playful grin. That little girl has probably changed too. Ruchal, who picked up the egg, could feel a gentle energy radiating from it. Quaking, Ban even started biting his nails. What should I do? What should I do? We've lost the only way to calm Rachel down during emergencies. Upon hearing B's remark about Rachel, Slight felt a wave of concern. However, since the next level was a rest area, they managed to stay pretty calm. It was when they began discussing the upcoming floor that things started to shift. Moments later, they materialized on a level resembling a delightful garden beneath a dome. A stunning fountain with a bubbly water spout stood proudly at the center, while stone staircases led up to even more beautiful gardens. This was the 10th floor, which they had only heard thrilling tales about. It was rumored that sometimes there wouldn't be any food or drinks if the climbers got unlucky. But this place was a whole different story. As they strolled through, Ban remarked, actually, it seems like we've hit the jackpot. Slight wandered over to some trees and gathered a few fruits known as Eden fruits. These fruits could ease fatigue and boost individual potential. You definitely need to munch on them during rest zones. Hearing his buddy's suggestion, the main character picked one of the fruits and took a bite. As soon as he tasted it, he was blown away by the sweet and citrusy flavor. Next to him, Du couldn't resist trying a fruit herself and nearly melted from the incredible taste. Ban couldn't help but rave. It's so delicious, I've never had anything this amazing. Du agreed wholeheartedly. This is the sweetest flavor I've ever experienced. I can feel a slight boost in my internal energy. Sitting on a bench, Ruchel enjoyed some grapes with a peaceful smile. Her hair even seemed to brighten because of it. Playfully, Dako suggested they chow down on all the fruits on the floor before moving on, or maybe even take some with them. But Slight reminded her that wasn't allowed and that the fruits would vanish as soon as they left the floor. Frustrated with the rules, Dako huffed while Ban tried to figure out if there was any way to take some of those fruits with him. Just then, notifications popped up. You've indulged in an eaten fruit along with the unique fruit, the fruit of knowledge. From now on, the all-seeing eye can identify sins. The protagonist was taken aback. Gazing at the fruit in his hand, he pondered if it was genuinely called the fruit of knowledge. So this fig-like fruit is named that. Despite gaining a new ability, he couldn't quite grasp what distinguishing sins actually meant. At that moment, Rel captured everyone's attention by announcing she had discovered a mysterious box. Du folded her arms and explained, "This is a reward for our accomplishments. Even on the lower floors, there has to be something cool inside." Right, after all, we haven't had typical experiences so far. Everyone finally recalled what they had tackled over the last few days. They had battled constellations twice, in addition to facing off against several elite monsters in a trap zone. As Ban reflected on those tough times, he believed that all of those challenges had culminated in this reward. Drawing closer to the wooden chest adorned with golden details, Ban was wowed. Wow, this must be the achievement reward we heard about. Since Rushel wasn't too familiar with the details, he explained, "In every rest zone, there's treasure that recognizes the accomplishments you made. Since this is a wooden chest with gold accents, it has to be one of the higher-tier rewards among the lower ranks." Rushel looked puzzled about how the chests were judged, and Ban continued, "The treasure chests on rest floors are ranked based on their material. Wood, copper, silver, and gold. The better the material, the better the treasure inside." Excited about the reward, Slight was eager to open the chest right away. But Du held him back. Slight, confused, asked why, and Du answered plainly, "Let Ban open the box." Slight was even more bewildered and soon taken aback by the explanation. "I feel like we'll be jinxed if you open the chest," Rachel instantly agreed. Frantic Slight demanded to know why he was the target, and Du was straightforward, because he's unlucky. As the two engaged in their usual bickering, Ban opened the chest with Rachel peeking beside him. The moment they laid eyes on the dazzling contents, they gasped in awe. Ban recognized the item inside the chest, a magic wand for a magical girl. The wand nestled within was a short pink staff topped with a bow and a large heart-shaped gem. Light, unfamiliar with such an item, assumed it had no real function, and soon daydreamed that it was merely a ceremonial tool. Grabbing the wand, Ruchel remarked, "This thing sure has an interesting shape," feeling the energy radiating from it. Du figured it had to be some sort of artifact. As the protagonist started to grasp what it might be, he asked Rukul if he could borrow it. Just by looking at the design, Ban realized the item was from his realm, something magical girls would use. After checking out its properties, he found out that everything about it was connected to magic. With an astonishing 200 soul points, Ban stared thoughtfully at the wand, prompting Du to step closer with curiosity. "Did you uncover anything?" After pondering over the item, Ban shared his insight. "I believe it's a magical training tool for newbies. It seems to have a personality in it, ready to teach its wielder." Slight was taken aback by the idea that an item could possess a personality that taught people. As their disbelief began to grow, the wand in Ban's grip started twisting as if it had a mind of its own. Recognizing the object, Ban made a request. "Hey, can I keep this? Definitely, I'll buy it. Quickly." The entire crew affirmed that he could keep the item. They appreciated all the hard work Ban had put in and felt it was only fair to reward him. Placing the item in his inventory, the protagonist casually remarked, "I have a feeling this little buddy is going to help me a lot." After stashing his items, Ban began to gather a bunch of fruits, but Slight quickly cautioned him. "Ban, I already told you there's no use in picking more." Ban fashioned a basket out of the fruits and handed it over to him. Slight looked completely baffled. "For what? Won't they just vanish when we leave?" Ban conceded that Slight had a point. Pulling out the golden jelly, he thought he might as well try something since he had nothing to lose. He stretched a bit as he prepared himself. "All right, I'll pay you right now." Du looked a tad confused and asked Ban if he was going to pay with money. Grabbing a fresh basket, the protagonist shook his head, saying he wouldn't be using cash. Tossing the new basket to Slight, he urged the puzzled young man to follow him. Du and Ruchel quickly caught on to Ban's plan, especially as they recalled how he had used the jelly a few days back. Slight, still bewildered, approached Ban with the fruits. Sitting on the ground, Ban started asking some questions. "Don't you guys find it strange that only one fruit can be eaten, or that they vanish when taken outside? But what if we united them with other items? What happens after consuming them?" Extending his hand, the protagonist began to break down the concept of Eden's fruits. As soon as the golden glow emitted from the fruits along with their concepts, he directed his hand toward the jelly. "If no one has tested this before, why can't we be the first?" A vibrant magic circle emerged around the jar of jelly, kicking off an extraordinary fusion between the Eden fruit and the basic elixir. Bathed in the radiance of the magic circle, Slight and Ruchel gaped in amazement. In an instant, the jelly jar transformed into a 30-point elixir of life, making the contents resemble golden honey even more. Such an item now held the ability to rejuvenate and enhance the life and magic points of the consumer. Countless new opportunities were on the horizon. While long-term use could amplify the effects, excessive consumption at once would lead to divine consequences. Slight was utterly astonished by what Ban had created. Even the usually calm Du was left speechless as she questioned him. Clutching the new elixir, the protagonist noted that they couldn't test it yet due to the room's policies. To check its taste or effects, they would have to step outside first. Thrilled for the first time, Du took the lead. Then let's go now. Everyone's on board to head out right. She asked Ruchel, and Slight, who already recharged, quickly agreed. Watching everyone so eager to try the treat, especially Du, pushed the decision to move forward. In no time, they were teleported to the 11th floor. Once they arrived, Du hurriedly asked Ban about the elixir. Looking into his inventory and confirming the elixir was still there, he gave a thumbs up. It worked! It's still here! To his surprise, Du leaped onto Ban, hugging him in a burst of joy. I knew you could do it, Ban. After Ban cleared his throat, Du realized how embarrassing her action was and turned beet red, as did Ban. More surprising than the hug, she pushed him away with a playful shove. You're too close. Slight tried to come to Ban's defense, reminding her that it was Du who had embraced him. But she quickly told him to hush up. Meanwhile, Ruchel was grinding her teeth in jealousy while the protagonist stood up scratching his sore head. I was even more shocked than you. Just then, Ban heard a hissing sound nearby and realized 3 shelled crabs had shown up. The monsters from floor 11 were there. Their bodies and shells were covered in moss, and there were as many of them as there were tower spiders. Without wasting a moment, Ban took off running toward his group. Guys, they're here. The crabs were furious and chased after him. As soon as Ban got his friend's attention, 2 attacks whizzed past his shoulders, taking out the monsters that were after him. Fuming, Dako had finished them off. He was already disappointed he couldn't munch on the elixir because he was too full. But you guys helped me with my digestion. Ban felt a shudder seeing his teammate eager to eat again. Before he could say anything, Dako issued a challenge. Let's charge ahead against the monsters until we're fully digested, knowing how long they'd likely be fighting. Ban felt regret for not doing something different instead of opting for the elixir. 10 hours later, the group had made it to floor 14. Furious, Du pounded the wall with her hand while grumbling. Why am I still not hungry? Du had dragged the whole crew to floor 14. Even though they were exhausted from battling monsters for several hours, Ban sighed just like her. He never thought his full stomach would last half a day. After all that effort, Light felt the same. To provoke some hunger, they had pushed through 3 floors. We must be the only team that's tried this sort of thing. Yet, I still feel full, even though I can't move another inch. Watching the boys complain, Dako crossed her arms and took a moment before asking, maybe we'll finally get hungry when we hit floor 15. The boys nearly cried at this suggestion, and Ban pleaded with her to reconsider, while Slight attempted to remind Do that it was nearly midnight. The protagonist suggested they should call it a night, even if they had some stamina left for more. Do, upon hearing this, questioned why they should stop. In reply, Ban pointed in a direction. Infuriated, Ruchel clawed at the walls. After fighting for hours, the girl was on the verge of losing it. Do, noticing Rachel's temper rising, realized she could snap at any moment. That was exactly why Ban was reluctant to move forward. Since they didn't need to have dinner anymore, he told everyone to clean up and relax. Tomorrow, they could head toward floor 15. Unexpectedly, Ban whipped up a portable bathroom, complete with a basket of shampoos and soaps. He asked everyone to use the bathroom first, which led Do to ask what he was thinking. Excitedly, he replied, I'll clean up later. I want to concentrate a bit more on the manifestation technique. Crossing her arms with a hidden smile, Do beamed. I'm proud to have taught you. The level of mastery truly transforms the manifestation technique, so keep putting in the effort. In an instant, Do grabbed Rachel by the neck, dragging her to the bathroom. I'll take this beast to wash up. That way we won't be in your way. The protagonist, noticing that Slight had stayed close by, tried to send him to the bath, but it only made him anxious. What are you saying? I'm a guy too. You want me to bathe with them? What kind of nonsense is that? Ban was taken aback by his reaction. He couldn't believe that Slight still didn't realize his true identity as a boy had already been exposed. Shrugging, Ban proposed an alternative. In that case, you can just strip down and wash outside. That idea only made Slight turn even redder. Seeing him react so awkwardly, Ban decided to tease him a bit. We're both men here, so what's the big deal? Why all the fuss? Slight stuttered, trying to find the right words. Even if we are men, I can't do that in front of others. Rolling his eyes, Ban questioned what they should do. Almost in tears, Slight asked him to turn his back. As he started to take off his armor, Slight argued with Ban. If you try to peek, I'm going to get mad. Watching him remove his armor, Ban noticed a necklace around his neck, but didn't think much of it. Once everyone finished what they needed to, they settled down for the night, awaiting the next morning. When they woke up and began breakfast, Slight was already buzzing with energy while chatting with Do. Pick up the spear again. How did we even get to this point, Du calmly reminded Slight of how well he had fought without using his sword from floor 7 to the rest zone. Meanwhile, he'd get better and better at fighting. Ban was also on board with Duco, encouraging Slight to take up the spear. The only one not cheering for Slight was Royal, who was slurping down her instant noodles with a hungry look. She seemed a bit downcast. Slight mentioned he couldn't use the spear anymore. Room 7 didn't have any tough monsters, so nothing much happened. But who knows what could come next? Elite monsters could show up any time. Fighting without the holy sword is too risky. Something's bound to go wrong. Upon hearing Slight's words, Duco started to think seriously. Realizing he had a point, she agreed to let him wield the holy sword. With Duco's approval, Slight was over the moon. In a flash, he pulled out the sword and embraced it like it was a treasure. Holy sword, I won't let you go ever again, concerned. Ban strolled over to Duco to check if letting Slight use the sword was wise. Duco thought she didn't have much choice. He's already hit his mental wall. For now, we have to keep him happy. While they chatted, the beast in front of them roared, brandishing her fork. Rushel gritted her teeth with hunger despite having eaten so well earlier. Duco didn't get why she was acting like that, but Ban had a hunch. Maybe she's on edge because they were so close. He shrugged and backed off while grumbling. First it's obsession and now it's jealousy. I'm starting to stress about this group's future. Shivering a bit, the protagonist asked Duco if she thought they could keep going. But she flipped the question back at him. A few hours later, the group made it to the 15th floor. There, they encountered an army of orcs armed with spears. Raising their arms, the orcs yelled their battle cry and charged at the group. Surrounded, the students readied their weapons, gearing up for a fight. The first to spring into action was Slight, who with the holy sword in hand felt a surge of confidence. With a swift swing of his blade, he shattered the handles of a bunch of spears. Who do you think you're attacking? The protagonist couldn't help but be awed by Slight's newfound spirit, which also made him feel a tad uneasy. As he began to clash with the orcs, he casually mentioned to Duco that they would have had a tough time if they hadn't let Slight take the sword. Noticing Ban losing focus, Duco quickly alerted him. Now's not the time to zone out. Just as she warned him, a massive orc, several times his size, raised its axe ready for an attack. In a rush, Duco caught its attention, stretching out her arm packed with energy. The energy blast zipped past the protagonist and slammed into the giant orc. Rushel didn't stay idle either. Using her claws, she carved a path towards the orc, finishing off the job that Duco had started. As soon as the girls took down the enemy, Ban expressed his gratitude. Duco wiped her hands and reminded him to be more careful, while Rushel flashed a toothy grin in reply. She kept fighting the orcs with such intensity that Ban realized she was on the verge of going berserk. At the same time, Eve still showed no signs of waking. This meant he'd need to venture again what he had struggled with previously. While pondering how to manage Rushel, Ban didn't notice a new orc creeping up behind him. However, when the orc struck, he instinctively raised his sword just in time to defend himself. The hairy, bearded orc yelled at him, "Ah, I am Quonus of the proud legion of the rusted halberds. I'll turn you into pate." Before Quonus could finish his speech, Slight snuck up and attacked him, just like Kinos had done to Ban, to shut the orc up. Even so, the orc withstood the blow and stayed upright, forcing itself to keep going. Now closer to Ban, he smirked. "You seem to be the weakest here." With dust swirling from the impact, the protagonist showed no signs of fear. And how do you figure that? Before the orc could retort, Ban noticed it being taken down. Slight had struck again, and with a sharp gaze, he scoffed. "You talk way too much for just a tower monster." After Slight's hit, the creature's head rolled across the stone floor. With a cold glare, he stared at those across the room. To Ban's surprise, Slight moved ahead by himself while calling out at other orcs. Only Small Friar left with the holy sword. Confidence now infused Slight's attacks, which dealt the same fate to the remaining monsters. After clearing out the last group, he swung his sword, taking a moment to catch his breath, and internally sighed while commenting to himself. "I never imagined I'd come across the same orcs from my homeland right here." But with the radiant sword in hand, he was sure that this savage bunch wouldn't stand a chance against him. In the midst of Slight's musings, "Du!" shouted Emergency. When Slight turned, he saw Du grumbling with irritation. "What are you doing?" Beating everyone without saying a word. Clicking her tongue, Yuan informed everyone that taking out the last orc would soon trigger a change in the floor. Du continued to grill them with questions. "Didn't we agree to regroup before the room transforms? Did you forget that?" Slight huffed unexpectedly, causing both Du and Ban to jump with what he said. "What are you fretting about? As long as I've got my holy sword clearing, the next rounds will be a breeze." Slight felt so confident he insisted they didn't need to waste time on such weaklings. With a smirk, he teased, "Are you upset because you couldn't do anything? Do all right. I'll save some for you next time." Slight's words sparked rage in Dao, who clenched her fists tightly, frowning as a wave of irritation radiated off her. She was ready to throw down. Sensing the tension in the air, Ban stepped in between them, trying to calm the storm. Glancing at Slight, Ban couldn't help but wonder why he had changed so drastically, saying things he normally wouldn't. Just as Ban warned about getting ready for the floor change, the ground started to shake. A bright light enveloped the team as the space morphed around them. Both Do and Slight, stunned, braced themselves. Before long, several gigantic chess pieces began to materialize as the walls vanished. When the group realized their surroundings, they found themselves in the middle of a massive chessboard with pieces scattered everywhere. Puzzled, Ban noted they hadn't actually moved to a new floor. The floor had simply transformed. Suddenly, Ral collapsed, grabbing everyone's attention. Ban rushed over, worried. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" Panting heavily. Ruchel was gasping for air, groaning in pain. She grabbed Ban's arm, gritting her teeth as she whispered, "No more. I can't handle it anymore. I can't hold this back any longer." Ban realized that Rook was on the verge of losing control, which was exactly why she needed breaks before changes in the floor. Just then, amid all the worry, a figure appeared, booming with a thick voice. "Was it you humans who wiped out my soldiers?" The orc, wielding a massive axe, presented himself with pride. "I'm Curus, the centurion of the great legion of the rusted halberd." The mighty orc swore vengeance, his eyes burning with fury for his fallen comrades. "I'll honor my fallen comrades with your bodies." Ban was speechless as he realized that this orc's subordinates must have been the ones they defeated in room 15. Confused, assuming they were still in room 15 or that it connected to that floor, Ban opened the tower's information window. A brief phrase appeared, "Rule of the 16th room, the weakest soldier goes first." To Ban's surprise, the orc Curus pointed directly at him. "Come on," the weakest human stepped forward. He beckoned him with a finger, taunting, "I, the centurion, Curus, shall teach you a lesson." Knowing the orc was referring to him, Ban readied to step up first. However, Slight intervened. "Ban, don't sweat the small stuff." Taking a step forward, Slight declared with confidence, "You don't have to follow pointless rules like these." Ban was taken aback by Slight's actions as he harnessed the power of the holy sword, fiery wings bursting forth from his back. Annoyed with the chief orc, Slight shouted, "How dare a mere orc lecture someone like me shining with holy light?" Slight leaped forward in a blur, charging at the orc despite Ban's warning. The orc observed Slight's approach and wondered if he was indeed the weakest human. Ignoring the question, Slight shouted back, "I'll take you down in one hit." The orc, watching this unfold, thought to himself, "You are definitely not the weakest." Slight swung the holy sword, aiming for the orc's shoulder. Yet, to his surprise, the blade barely scratched the expressionless orc. A warning notification blared. "Rule violated. Penalty applied. A decrease in ability. All stats will drop." The blade of Slight's sword reverberated harmlessly against the great orc's shoulder. Shock was clear in the young warrior's eyes as the sword didn't budge, and an annoyed grin spread across the orc's face. Before Slight could react, the orc lunged, ripping him in half. Light didn't even cough. His expression was a mix of shock and disbelief when he got the news of his elimination. Bond stood there utterly speechless as the notification popped up and Slight vanished from sight. "Player Slight has been knocked out. Welcome to the trick room. Unlike your basic rooms, this one runs under very unique rules and guidelines. These rooms definitely pack a tougher challenge than ordinary ones. But hey, if you stick to the rules, you can conquer them and score some fantastic rewards. However, any slip-up that breaks the essential rules could lead to some nasty consequences." Right in front of Ban and Do, those consequences unfolded with Slight's elimination. Ban had a feeling they were now in hot water. The Tower of Babel always matched the difficulty to the utmost strength of the teams. When the challenge level was set, even if team members dropped out, the level stayed the same as calculated for the original headcount. So it was super important to stride into the next room only when the team was completely ready. With Slight rushing in and getting knocked out, Ban sensed that their quest in the tower was already on a fast track to disaster. He even found himself mentally grumbling about Slight. The orc placed its hand on his shoulder because even though Slight's sword hadn't powered up, it had still managed to create a small gash. The orc glanced at its own hand, now painted in red. Centurion Curus clenched his teeth while bursting into laughter. "You are one ridiculously strong human. You came right for my life and still managed to scrape me before losing yours. I enjoyed battling against you." The orc stepped forward, brimming with energy, as it issued a challenge. "Come on, human, take me on. Face me, the Centurion Curus. I'm ready for whatever you've got." Gritting his teeth, Ban pondered if breaking the rules had somehow pumped up the orc's strength. Do let out a sigh, not anticipating it would escalate to this level. "I knew the sword messed with his mind, but I never thought it would turn him into a total fool." Rubbing his head, Ban realized that Dao's words were unfortunately spot on. Ban hadn't known Slight for long, but he had never seen him act this recklessly and impatiently. He really struggled to grasp what had gone wrong. The only theory Ban could come up with was that not allowing Slight to use the sword throughout the adventure had caused some kind of backlash. Du wasn't sure if Ban was right, but she was definite about one thing. We can't rely on that sword. It's bound to make him screw up at a crucial moment again. With a serious expression, Du vowed, "As soon as we get out of here, I'm putting him through some intense training." Ban glanced at the orc, urging Du to stay sharp to clear this floor, but she shook her head. "With one person out, there's no point in us continuing the expedition." However, Du summoned her own sword. Charging toward the orc, she unveiled her plan. "Let's seize this chance to bend as many rules as we can and discover just how steep the price is." The orc chuckled upon seeing another human, not the weakest kind, advancing. It pointed at Du, shouting, "Just by looking at you, I can tell you're not the weakest. Are you ignoring the rules again?" Du paused for a moment, glanced back at Ban and Rushel. She gritted her teeth. Making a choice was tough. This time, she moved forward with determination. Speaking to Ban Yuan, she said, "I'll apologize in advance, Ban Yuan. Try to handle this beast on your own for now." As Do positioned herself in front of the orc, it lifted its axe to take her out. She reminded Ban, "Don't forget what I told you before we entered the tower." "Got it." Ban attempted to stop her, but the orc, brimming with energy, had already charged at the young woman. Du braced herself for the orc's strike. In the final second, she drew her sword. The notification for breaking the rules flickered on the screen once more, followed by the penalty alert. Just as the orc swung its axe at Dao, she countered with a strike of her own. Ban, speechless, awaited the outcome of their clash. Du began to fade away as the notification announcing her elimination appeared. Even after taking down another human, the orc howled in agony because along with its axe, its hand had gone flying, a direct result of Dao's strike. Gritting its teeth, the orc roared, "How dare you take my arm, you scrawny human!" It sank to its knees before Ban finally acknowledging his presence. The protagonist, wielding his sword, remarked, "How dare you grab my arm?" It knelt down before Ban, recognizing the boy's presence. The protagonist, while swinging his sword, remarked, "You might have gained a nice power boost from those penalties, but clearly you're not in a shape to fight right now." With a cold stare, Ban declared as he raised his blade, "For the two who fell earlier, I'm determined to take you out and move on." Gritting its teeth, the orc spoke weakly. "Is the weakest finally stepping forward?" With a light smile, it concluded, "Nope, I don't think so." Ban was taken aback, feeling the chaotic energy radiating from Rule, who leaped over him to attack the orc. Rushel extended her claws, thrusting her hand out while letting out a fierce roar. Ban glanced back, witnessing Rushel's charge, utterly speechless, as he realized she had completely lost it. Swiftly, Ban released his sword to try and stop Rushel. The protagonist grasped her wrists, halting her advance. Rushel gritted her teeth amidst her growling, attempting to push past Ban's hold. "Stop, Rushel. If you break the rules too, we won't know what kind of boost this guy will get." Ban was referring to the orc, the very one Rushel was so eager to attack. The protagonist didn't see his words reach his friend, leaving him with only one choice. He quickly raised one of his hands and conjured a magic circle. His goal was to plant positive feelings in Rukal's mind. Even though he was blocked last time, Ban was determined to push various emotions into the beast's heart once more. Confident he'd succeed, he made his magic circle shine brightly. As soon as the circle vanished, Ban checked to see if Rushel had snapped out of her frenzy. To his surprise, she fell to her knees, breathing heavily. Rushel placed a hand on her throat as if experiencing a terrible shortness of breath, screaming in agony. Ban was at a loss, worried about why her condition was worsening. While Ban tried to assist Ru the orc, he had overlooked grinned maliciously. It gathered up all the strength it had left, powering through the pain. And with the one hand, it still had it picked up the lost axe. Ban attempted to raise Rule, who had stopped screaming, asking if she could now talk normally. However, Rushel kept growling. Her fury and madness hadn't faded. Suddenly, Ban felt Rushel grab his shoulder. Before he could react, she hurled him aside, saving him from the mighty orc's axe. As he fell to the ground, Ban gritted his teeth, realizing the orc centurion had struck. The next thing he noticed was a notification that popped up. Attack failed. The rules are gone. Rushel moved swiftly, positioning herself in front of Ban to shield him from the wheezing orc. Damn it, I wanted to take both of them out at once. How annoying. The orc, seeing the human woman jump in front of it, was startled and muttered, "This woman, don't tell me." Even acting on pure instinct, she still guards him. The orc's gaze shifted to Ban, unexpectedly commenting, "Hey human man, you're pretty lucky. You've got the best partner around." Just as it was about to finish, sharp claws silenced it. Rukul did not let the orc finish its words and annihilated its upper half. While she shielded him, Ban put a hand on his side, feeling pain. If Rushel hadn't jumped in as a shield, the orc's strike would have sliced Ban in two. Realizing they were both in trouble if things kept going like this, Ban grabbed a healing potion and shouted, "We need to patch ourselves up before the room switches." But grimly, Rushel didn't respond. A wild and fierce look consumed her. She spun around rapidly, unexpectedly attacking Ban. The protagonist fell terrified to the ground. Before him, Ruchal placed her hands on the floor, unleashing an extremely dark and frightening aura, revealing that her berserk state was still in full swing. Ban could see that the fire within her was igniting emotions even more intensely. While trying to make sense of what was going on, a glow surrounded him. The room transition was starting, and soon the duo found themselves in a scenario reminiscent of the last one. They weren't alone. Heavy footsteps drew their attention. In room 17, they encountered masked goblins, a tribe with countless members brandishing clubs and axes. Upon seeing such creatures, Rook's loss of control escalated, as did her anger. Anxiously, Ban frowned and hastily extended his hand, trying to deter her. But before he could, she charged forward with ferocity. Upon witnessing the beast woman attack, the goblins lifted their weapons and charged at her. Growling like a wild animal, Rook extended the claws, sprouting from her fingers, and bared her fangs. In front of Ban, the battle erupted into a frenzy, and he clenched his fists, seething with irritation. Ban struck the ground hard. He was hit with a wave of failure. He didn't really know why, but he just couldn't get that furnace under control. Even while trying to smile and asking Rochelle to trust him without checking first, he had way too much faith in his own skills, with a totally careless attitude. Reflecting on everything that had happened so far, Ban became even more critical of himself. Why didn't I think things through a bit more? I was quick to judge and tried to handle Rel's fight the way I wanted. Maybe I was just being a foolish know-it-all. With a defeated look, Ban felt that nothing else mattered. Since Slight and Dio had already been taken out, the expedition pretty much felt like a flop. Ban lost any motivation to try and stop Rachel. Getting eliminated and sent back started to feel like the best option. When faced with a goblin's bow and arrow, he didn't even flinch. The arrow flew and he accepted whatever fate awaited him, but someone else wasn't ready to give up. Out of nowhere, Rochelle jumped in front of Ban, taking the arrow herself. Seeing her between him and the goblins gave him a scare. She yanked the arrow out and tossed it aside, still ready to throw down. Rising up and gritting her teeth, she intimidated the goblins, showing that she wouldn't back down. With all her instincts kicking in, Rochelle growled ferociously, screaming at the top of her lungs and unleashing all her pent-up emotions. Ban partially understood the protective instinct in her voice. As Rochelle pressed on against the goblins once more, Ban recalled the words she had spoken with a smile before their ascent up the tower. "I'm counting on you in there, Ban. I'll hear everything you say. I trust you, Ban." Even knowing the expedition had already gone south and everything was a chaotic mess, Ban pulled a potion from his inventory. After downing it, he regained 2 life points, 1 body point, 2 mystic energy points, and 1 charm point. With the potion boosting his natural healing speed, Ban declared with determination, "I won't let things end like this." Even though he hadn't given up yet, he still didn't feel very optimistic. Rochelle persisted in her assault on the goblins with all her might. Ban knew she needed to return to normal, but he had no clue how to make that happen. Also, blindly messing with the furnace didn't feel like the right solution. Ban tried to picture what Rachel looked like when she wasn't in berserk mode because of the furnace. She seemed more like a little puppy, totally reliant. But the Rel he was witnessing now appeared to be a fierce beast charging forward toward her doom. That's when Ban realized something about his own thoughts. Rochelle being a beast. Just because she was a beast didn't mean she couldn't be tamed. Only those who were truly wild tended to be like that. But Ral wasn't like that. Ban clearly recognized Rochelle's normal side, her human side. He began to wonder why Rochelle didn't seem to get him. If she wasn't wild from the start, maybe he was going about trying to connect with her all wrong. Ban remembered a question. "Do you know the word submission, Ban?" The word from Dao opened up Ban's understanding. In that moment, he had questioned whether submission was related to governance, but that wasn't the answer Dio was after. Dio had broken down step by step what Ban wasn't getting at that moment. From the viewpoint of someone governed, it might seem unpleasant, yet some people feel safe under a strong leader. In that context, that beast seemed to crave someone to whom she could submit, someone powerful and dominant to guide her. Looking deep into Ban's eyes, Doko had shown him how he should react. "When she stops understanding your words, you must stop trying to speak gently." Ban hadn't bought Dio's advice at that time. However, it all started to make sense now. He recognized that Rochelle could still communicate, but his approach was just too weak. His voice didn't resonate with her. That's when he decided to take the one road that could properly reach her and convince her to stop fighting. Rochelle, still full of rage, kept charging at the goblins, unaware of Ban's thoughts. At that moment, Ban leaped in front of her, blocking an attack by raising his sword in defense. He swung the sword, causing Ral to stagger back while he yelled, "Rochelle, that's enough." The last goblin was confused to be saved by the human who was trying to warn him. "Rochelle, this is the last goblin. If you take it down, we'll be sent to the 18th floor. If that happens, we'll be out of here quickly. So let's call it quits for now. Let's heal up and prepare first." Rochelle, gritting her teeth, didn't move right away. But when the human paused, the last goblin swung its axe. However, Ban interrupted its charge and dealt a kick that shattered both its movement and its teeth. With irritation, Ban snapped at the goblin. "I'm dealing with something important. Just be quiet for a moment." Scurrying to a corner, the goblin yelped like a rookie. When he glanced back at Rochelle, she was on the move again. Realizing she wouldn't listen, Ban had only one choice left. He pulled out a rope and whipped it around his eyes, blazing with irritation. Well, since it's come to this, I guess I'll have to use this. Ban tossed the rope up, letting it spin gracefully. Rushel was drawn toward it. As Ban tugged it fiercely in her direction, the rope sliced through the air like a whip. When it hit the ground, it sent a wave of energy infused with Ban's power, causing Rushel to flinch as he yelled, "Back!" Rushel roared furiously at him, although her hair took on a slightly weakened hue. Still agitated, she watched as Ban lifted a chair. With a chilling demeanor, he placed it on the ground while gritting her teeth in fear of the chair. Rushel finally caught on to Ban's command. He pointed to the chair, telling her to sit, and she screamed even louder in rage at the command. Yet there she was, sitting in the chair while hollering her discontent. Ban sighed clearly, dealing with a handful. He slammed the rope down on the ground, shouting, "Quiet." Faced with the yells and the crack of the rope, Rushel recoiled in tears. Out of nowhere, Ban extended his hand and asked Rushel, "Give me your paw." Despite her frustration and gritting her teeth, she reluctantly offered her hand, placing it atop Ban's. When their hands touched, he noticed her claws had retracted. This made him smile and say, "Good girl, very good." Then he reached out with his other hand, gently patting Rushel on the head as her furious gaze shifted to one of surprise. To his astonishment, a soft glow emerged in her hair, speeding up her transformation back to normal. Feeling Ban's comforting pat, Rushel became aware her cheeks turning bright as she lowered her head. Once he noticed her speaking again, Ban felt a wave of relief. "Ah, Rushel, you're back. It's so good to see you back to your senses." Suddenly, in the middle of his words, Rushel jumped up. Unexpectedly, she hugged Ban and whispered a vow. "You're the first, and you'll always be the only one, my master." A jolt of astonishment coursed through Ban's body. He fell back with Rushel nestled in his lap, wondering what had just occurred. Instantly, a notification popped up for him. The concept of submission has taken hold. Rushel is now under the sole control of Ban. Reading this made Ban feel everything was downright insane. Later on, Rushel awoke again, her head resting on a pillow covered with a shirt. She sat up quickly, recalling what had transpired, only to hear Ban's voice nearby as he tied up the goblin. "Oh, you're awake now, Rushel." Tears of worry streamed down Rushel's face as she rushed to Ban, checking if he was hurt. To ease her mind, Ban demonstrated how well the elixir worked. He explained that he'd made her drink the potion while she was out cold to heal her wounds. The goblin, ignored in the corner, listened, as the creature that had decimated his kind stated that she felt no pain. However, even though she felt fine, Rushel still felt a pang of guilt. "You saved me again, Ban. I've become such a bother to you." Ban gave Rushel's head another reassuring pat, soothing her while telling her not to worry. Looking at her fondly, he recalled, "I promised I'd do everything I could. Sorry for being late. I didn't quite grasp the messages you were sending me. If I had caught on a bit sooner, we could have resolved things quicker." Rushel gently pushed Ban's hand away from her head, taking it instead. Guiding his hand to her cheek, she offered a warm smile and whispered with affection, "It's okay. I appreciate that you remembered and kept your promise. Thank you for stopping me, Ban." "No, thank you for stopping me, Master." Ban was taken aback by her words and felt a blush rise. He quickly attempted to correct her. "That's not how it works, this master business." However, as if she were oblivious to anything but her love for him, Rushel challenged, "What's wrong with calling you my master?" Ban placed his hands on his head. There was a huge dilemma in this situation. They were classmates, so she couldn't just openly speak like a master and servant. He tried to picture what his family would do if they learned that a girl his age referred to him as master. He would surely end up hung upside down and punished. His family's disapproval was on the horizon. Unaware of Ban's thoughts, Rachel asked if her master was all right. Stammering, he suggested they chat after a break, but ended up shouting when he saw her trying to cuddle up to him. Eventually, Rue managed to stay with her arms crossed next to Ban, and there she began her story. "I was born a half-beast, but I'm different from the other half-beasts. My ancestors were truly remarkable, and my dad was bound by a contract with a constellation." Rushel shared that her dad regretted making that contract, yet the constellation was not ready to sever ties with the family, carrying the blood of the great beasts in their veins, passing on a sort of curse with it. She explained that the curse fueled her power by burning emotions, but also made her a slave to those very emotions. Ever since she was a child, whenever her wild instincts would stir, the curse would torch her feelings for fuel, filling her with rage. As she embraced her clan's legacy, few could hold her back. And since people frequently got hurt because of her, Rushel lived a life of suppressing her instincts and hiding her feelings. The more she did that, the lonelier she became. Ban understood Rachel's feelings and why she always seemed so reserved. If any emotion fueled her, she could slip into berserk mode. Intrigued, Ban asked, "Is that why you joined the Union? To locate the constellation that trapped your family in this situation?" Rushel shook her head, clarifying that neither she nor her father wanted to get involved with constellations again. Blushing a bit as she looked down, Ruchel revealed there was a much better way to contain the burning emotions, something she was in search of. Intrigued, Ban moved closer to the girl who was now revealing her true self. The solution is to form a bond of subordination between master and servant, obeying the master's command. It's an instinct deeply rooted in the souls of beastmen. They become utterly submissive to their chosen master, with the master's command taking priority over everything else. Sharing all the details, Ruchel explained why Ban was able to manage the berserk mode and added, "As long as you wish for me to maintain control, the Sinro furnace won't burn emotions again." Changing the topic, Ban wondered why Ruchel had picked him out of everyone. The young woman had a solid reason for that. The master's soul rank must be vastly superior to the servant's. Just a little more sublimation. Not wanting to sound boastful, Ruchel commented, "My soul rank is relatively high. Probably because I was born with the constellation's curse. Because of this, it's nearly impossible to accept anyone else as my master." Sitting beside Ruchel, the protagonist listened as she began detailing her frustrating journey of searching for someone strong enough in the Union, even with students from all dimensions. Stopping to ponder, Ban recalled that when he first awakened his authority, his value was over 300 points. Right now, Raoul's soul depth was at 200 points, while his had reached 460. This perfectly met the beastman's requirements. After a brief pause, Ruchel continued to astonish Ban. "When I first saw you, I felt you could be the one I served as my master. I've been thinking that since we met," hiding a shy smile that turned her face completely pink. Ruchel thanked him. "I'm so happy you made this choice in time." "Thank you, a whole lot." Chuckling a bit self-deprecatingly, Ban remarked that this decision felt a bit heavy. However, Ruchel was not ready to let him off the hook. Seizing him by the arm, she declared, "There's no backing down. I've kept it in check until now, but I don't have to anymore. Now I can smile more, cry more, and act more boldly." Surprised, Ban witnessed Ruchel express the most genuine smile filled with gratitude and warmth. "This is all because of you. Even if this is a little daunting, you need to take responsibility for me." "All right, master." Ban hesitated for a moment before finally agreeing. Ruchel perked up when she heard his response, asking, "Shall we head out now?" Confidently, she wanted to climb the tower alone with him as much as possible because she was eager to explore what it felt like to control the Sinro furnace freely. Before jumping into action, Ban realized he ought to give Ruchel something. Stretching out his hand, he formed the symbol of the wild instinct. Bestowing that power onto Ruchel, he declared, "This is the raw energy I've collected so far, including the orcs we took down not too long ago. It might not be a lot, but I want you to have it." With her eyes sparkling from the glow, Ruchel was amazed by the energy she was receiving. Still in shock, she questioned if Ban was really gifting this to her. Grinning, the protagonist nodded. He clasped Ruchel's hand, sharing the power of the savage instinct while expressing his gratitude. "If you're okay with it, I'd be thrilled to give it to you." So, a brilliant glow filled the room as the savage instinct transferred to Ruchel. Soon, a tiny beam of light linked Ban's finger to her. Gazing at the mark on her finger, Rachel was even more astonished. She beamed, holding her hand, and exclaimed, "Let's hurry up and fight." "I'm not scared anymore." Once Rachel regained her confidence, the duo pushed forward using all their strength. But ultimately, they didn't get very far and found themselves lost in the 19th room. What frustrated Rachel the most wasn't just being booted out, but not having enough time alone with Ban. As they exited the tower, Professor Yumina greeted them, applauding their efforts. A bit puzzled, Yumina mentioned to Ban and Ruchel, "I tried to ask the two who left earlier for details, but they dashed into the training room before I could chat with them. Oh, and Slight was being dragged along. Did something happen between those two?" Rubbing his temples, Ban vaguely reassured the professor that there was no issue between them. Intrigued, he asked how much she had learned about what happened. While enjoying some snacks with tea and donuts, Yumina shared, "I'm still in disbelief. I heard about the part where you caught an intruder. When I found out and saw the footage, I was truly taken aback. I didn't expect the attacks to keep happening week after week. No one saw that coming." It was clear from Yumina's worried expression how concerned she was. Encounters with intruders had a far greater chance of being deadly than any other unusual event. Thankfully, everyone had returned safe this time, but it wouldn't be shocking if that didn't happen again. Believing they had just been lucky, Ban asked if the professor had any clue as to why the intruder attacks were occurring. Thinking intently, Yumina noted, "He was certainly not linked to the academy, but he appeared to have some credentials as a climber. Probably since you two are promising rookies, they aimed to take you out before it was too late." Ban was taken aback by the way the professor regarded them. "Exactly right." Yumina explained that individuals connected to a constellation naturally drew the focus of other constellations, especially in their unique situation. Rejecting a contract with a constellation indicated strong will alongside great potential. Leaving Ban speechless, Yumina concluded, "Many constellations desire you, or at least are keeping a close eye on you." Recalling the recording Ban had made, Yumina asked to confirm if the one who attacked them was part of the Exodus. The Exodus was a notorious band of dimensional pirates, and the largest group to invade the tower backed by constellations. According to Yumina, the constellations supporting the Exodus were extremely radical and known for their violent ways. The new revelation left Ban both surprised and worried. Yumina warned them that forming contracts with the Exodus would only obstruct the monstrous potential he had displayed. Sighing, Yumina felt relieved that Ban and the others had managed to escape, since the Exodus had gone to such lengths to eliminate them. Originally, she had hoped that Class 11 would remain unnoticed, at least until the semester wrapped up. While the professor fell silent, Ban tried hard to remember the tactics used by the intruders. They had employed simple tricks, but if they hadn't been discovered, it could have caused immense suffering. Ban realized that their survival against the invader was thanks to everyone's high stats. A group of ordinary rookies would likely have been taken out instead. This situation truly irritated Ban, who pondered gloomily, how many people has the Exodus eliminated in this way? And there are even constellations backing them up. They've been trying to mess with us since our last outing. Is it really the constellations' fault that Rel had such a tough time this go-around, and now they're causing trouble again? Ban's expression turned fierce, unexpectedly, declaring he wouldn't forgive either the Exodus or the constellations, and vowed to be rid of both. Yumina, who had been quiet until now, frowned in concern for Ban. That look is quite frightening, realizing he had let his emotions get the best of him. Ban quickly apologized, but Yumina felt similarly. Looking downcast, she voiced her worries about the situation. All of you are caught in this mess. As your supervisor, I should help you grow without interference, but it's frustrating not being able to assist much. Ban comforted her, saying no one could control what happened in the tower. Switching gears, he asked about the tower video, which was already edited. Yumina was unfazed and commanded, just upload it online. Their plan flopped, and once the video is released, they'll be out of options for a bit. Let's show them who's boss. After chuckling at the professor's remark, Ban stood up, having discussed everything necessary and prepared to leave. Before heading out, Ban mentioned, "Nothing good ever comes from getting involved with constellations. This has only happened twice, but I'm already over it. I doubt I'll be making a pact with them." Yuma thought that was a wise choice, but she still wanted Ban to seize good opportunities. So she said, "Among the constellations, there are those who genuinely care about their contractors." Ban looked puzzled, glancing at the professor, who was now sweating profusely. She quickly shifted the conversation. "It's nothing, but before you head out, I have a suggestion." Meanwhile, Du was scowling, clearly annoyed. "No, you're definitely not leaving. This little worm needs more punishment." Slight was laid out on the ground, thoroughly beaten. Concerned, Ban tried to calm Du down, but being too harsh on him won't do any good either. Du dragged Slight out of the wrecked arena because Ban wanted them to talk about what had happened in the tower. Before they stepped outside for some fresh air, Slight in tears attempted to rise. "Was what I did really that bad?" Ban didn't hesitate to reply. "Yes, you messed everything up." Ban even pinched Slight's cheek as an extra punishment, grumbling, "If you hadn't goofed yesterday, we'd have made it to the 20th floor. Rushel and I only reached the 19th thanks to luck." Hearing Slight claim he had just made a tiny mistake, Du got annoyed once more. She clenched her fist in frustration, causing Slight to hide behind Ban, dodging another hit, as she yelled, "You call that a small mistake? You clearly haven't thought it through enough." Trying to use Ban as a shield, Slight wailed, No, it's my fault. I'm sorry. It was my overconfidence yesterday." Seeing Slight so regretful, Ban asked Du to lighten up a bit. With a huff, Du looked away and soon declared, "All right, but I want 2 outfits." Ban was puzzled, but Du, hiding her blush, recalled Ban's physique and quipped, "You promised me in the tower. Don't you remember that I could wait for any gift?" Ban accepted that Du could choose whatever she wanted. Rushel was feeling envious, and Slight felt a bit left out. A while later in the City of Flowers, Ronika's group gathered at a clothing store. Du held up a black dress in front of her, asking Ban Do, "These loose clothes really look good on me." Ban assured her they did, but Slight, who was with them, thought his battle gear flowed even better than hers. Du was uncertain about her choice, but opted to trust Ban's advice and try on another outfit. Rushel, watching the two, had a steely gaze as if eyeing lunch. Annoyed, she internally seethed. How dare she treat my master like a servant? Slight timidly voiced his concern to Ban beside Rushel. "Ban, I think you should be cautious here too." Du, blushing without even realizing it, was beaming something she didn't usually do. In Du's mind, although she wasn't used to the style of the clothes Ban suggested, she liked them because Ban had recommended them. It had been ages since she could shop freely, especially like this. As Du smiled with joy, someone was lurking. Ruchel, watching her from afar, made a loud remark just for her to catch Greedy Pig. Dio snapped back at Ruchel, irritated, making her rush to ask for help from Ban, who was puzzled about how things escalated into a fight so quickly. A little while later, Ruchel offered a piece of candy to Ban's mouth. Watching this unfold, Du, who was meant to be the one receiving the gift, was super annoyed. Blushing, Ban attempted to push Ruchel away, insisting that he could feed himself, but she was determined to spoon-feed him. With her arms crossed, Du questioned, So we can assume that the issue of this beast going berserk in battles is sorted out, right? Ban replied with his mouth full. Yes, that's correct. Beaming and affectionately grabbing Ban's arm, Ruchel nestled against him, cheerfully commenting, absolutely, Ban handled that perfectly. Despite their situation, Dako declared the outcome a victory since Ruchel was now under control. Upon realizing that Ruchel's issue was fixed, Slight recognized that he was now the lone troublemaker on the team. At the outdoor cafe, Ban asked Du how hard she had pushed Slight to train for him, to openly admit he's the problematic one. Du corrected Ban's remark. He's not a problem, he's a ticking time bomb. Really, Du drew everyone's attention with her thoughts. Slight's sword was indeed a significant issue. Glancing at the swordsman, she asked, do you have anything to say about yesterday's events? However, even Slight was aware that his actions were far from normal. Leaning back on the table, he sighed in disappointment. I'll try to fight without the holy sword if I can. Seeing him insist on not using the sword made Du upset, causing Ban to worry too. As Slight lay on the table hiding his face, Ban wondered why he wasn't willing to avoid using the sword. He contemplated how long Slight would keep his problems to himself. In the end, all Ban could do was sigh and sip his iced coffee, because he knew he couldn't force Slight to open up about everything. However, in the middle of his cold sips, Ban received a mental nudge from Du. How long are you just going to stand there watching? Startled, he turned to her, who ominously reminded him, you share a room, right? What's the use of having a handsome face if you're not going to flaunt it? Flirt with him just like you did with the beast. Ban nearly choked on his coffee, hastily coughing at Du's comment, unaware of the mental nudge he'd just received. Ruchel quickly asked if he was all right. While Ruchel tried to take care of Bando, kept sending him mental messages. If you keep walking on eggshells around him, he'll just stay stubborn and hide things, won't he? You charmed the beast, so why not, Slight? Finally, Ban looked back at Du and said, I just wanted to get along with Ruchel. It's not what you think. Plus, Slight is a dude. What do you want me to do? Du averted her gaze, irritated, cornering him against the wall, reminding him that he was the one who wanted to support those two. I'm doing my part, but you need to do yours instead of just sitting there doing nothing. Rolling his eyes slightly, Ban replied that he already had a plan in mind, changing the topic to everyone. Ban opened an info window while announcing, hey guys, have you heard about the special external activities happening next week? I'll send the details via message, so be sure to check it out. Ruchel, hearing Ban's words, recalled that these activities were about trips to different dimensions. Ban confirmed the details, explaining that they were large-scale events where students and teachers traveled together. Since it was the first time Do had heard of anything like this, she wondered if the Union regularly organized such public services. Upon seeing the trip info, Slight started to get irritated, his demeanor shifting. What is this observing the lower dimensions in the name of the poor souls who can't defend themselves? The aim of this special activity is to put a stop to the monster wave. Why do you speak of the lower dimensions as if they couldn't survive without a higher dimension's help? Ban agreed with Slight, and Du beside him added, if he wants to be a leader of all dimensions, then this level of understanding is crucial. You don't need to twist your thoughts so much. Slight sighed, masking his irritation, feeling frustrated that all these activities were merely a preparatory step for those aspiring to become deities. Ban remained silent. He had been sensing something for a while. Noticing how deeply Slight held grudges against the higher dimensions, he could only think that something must have gone down on the planet where Slight lived. Setting aside Slight's tale, Ban announced he had something else to share. His words left the three at the table stunned. Starting this week, I'm jumping into Professor Yumina's magical combat classes. That's why I'll be training for now. The trio at the table yelled in unison. Why are you just telling us this now? A few days later, in the training room, Ban found himself sitting cross-legged on the floor. With the magic wand in his grip, Ban asked her, you can talk freely now. I'm all ears. Seeing her silent with the wand, he gave a serious smile that made her uneasy. Hey, if you don't pull through today, I might have to break you. It's been 3 days since I've had you, and you still haven't given me any magic language concepts. Perhaps it's because you've got a strong ego, but one thing's for sure, you're not cooperating. Ban felt the clock ticking down. Professor Yumina treated him like a magic pupil because he had gotten a magic artifact, so he couldn't allow himself to be embarrassed in the next day's class. Ban tossed the magic wand onto the floor and picked up a hammer while he sighed. Time's running out. I'm still struggling to get the hang of this. Is there really no other way? Right, I just need to smash you and absorb the concept from what's left. Ban raised the hammer, wearing a serious expression as he said goodbye to the magic wand. If you do break, it's on you, not me. Farewell. But just before the hammer hit the wand, she shrieked. Wait. The magic wand hurriedly found her voice. You human, you just peered inside me without any warning and you think you can chat with me now? Don't be absurd. Who do you think you are, trying to demolish me? Puzzled, Ban held the magic wand tightly, asking what she meant by saying he entered her. Are you talking about my Babylonian code ability? The magic wand shouted at Ban in frustration. This savage power, why would I accept someone who wields such a cruel authority? Magic belongs to those who follow the noble, graceful, and absolute laws of the cosmos, and still you tore me apart without a single ask. Someone like you could never aspire to be a wizard, forcing him to cover his ears against the wand's wailing. Ban told her to pipe down. Holding the wand upside down, Ban stared at her with wide eyes, urging her to stop the ruckus and quickly share the concept she had. Wondering how she ended up with such a brute, the magic wand finally relented. She swung quickly, releasing a small sphere of light with words dancing around it. Upon gathering that concept, Ban received a notification absorbing 1,100 units of magical languages. The depth of the all-seeing eye, all-hearing ear, and all-speaking tongue has reached 165. The wand, lowering her head, noted that she always envisioned creating a wizard who would shake the world, but now she was being usurped, falling into a miserable existence, reminding the wand that she wasn't even human. Ban asked what life she was mentioning. New notifications popped up. The complete transformation into magical language is now feasible. Additionally, an elemental notification appeared. Fire, water, wind, earth, and other properties can now be artificially generated, enhanced, and controlled. Extending his hand, Ban conjured a magic circle with 5 elements. Now he grasped the magical language and its structure, something that seemed impossible before. He could finally take part in Professor Yumina's classes without a worry. Glancing at the magic wand in his hand, Ban realized she was more remarkable than he had thought. Noticing the young man's intrigued expression, the magic wand began to tremble. Curious, Ban asked, "What's going on? Surprisingly, you're more intact than I anticipated." Trembling while her surroundings grew dark, the magic wand cried, "This doesn't make sense. Why would they do this to me? Why Ban?" Utterly confused, faced the magic wand as she entered a monologue. "I was never meant to be like the will of a tool." Concerned, the protagonist watched as the magic wand approached a deeper story. He didn't want to listen, but he ended up catching words he never expected. The magic wand screamed at the top of her lungs. I used to be human." A stunned silence spread through the training room due to the shocking revelation from the magic wand, who, seeing the disbelief in the boy's eyes, screamed even louder. "I'm telling you, I used to be human." Ban couldn't wrap her head around the magic wand as her words sounded straight out of a storybook or comic book, thanks to the huge cliché. Yet the brave magic wand insisted she wasn't fabricating this tale and that she had genuinely been a living being, a fleshy human. As eyes appeared in the heart-shaped crystal of the magic wand, she exclaimed, "Those people, the ones I trusted, betrayed me and locked me up in this wand. They embedded false memories in me, reducing me to a pitiful existence." Confused, Ban wondered why her memories were resurfacing right then and there. The magic wand held in Ban's grasp revealed that when he absorbed her powers, it seemed the core of the spell that sealed away her memories and abilities had been shattered. Still not quite convinced, Ban questioned if her memories and powers were truly restored. The magic wand responded that she wasn't operating at her full potential yet, having been sealed for such a lengthy time. Rolling his eyes in disbelief, Ban brushed it off. Internally, he pondered, still doubting it. Is she really just an object needing to be sealed for ages? From the moment we discovered her, the wand's stats were already remarkable. The wand found in room 10 had 200 soul points. Mulling over that stat, Ban realized that the magic wand matched Rushal's level, who was born with an impressively high standing among her kind. While Ban was astonished by other aspects, an aura of rebellion began to swirl around the magic wand in his hand without him even noticing. The wand was engulfed in gloomy flames as she cried out, "I will have my revenge. I swear, no matter what, I will reclaim all my powers and track them all down." Ban attempted to soothe the magic wand until he caught wind of her fervent declarations. He released the wand, which then soared, charged with energy. As the wand pledged her oath, it started to morph right before Ban's eyes. Reformed in the air, the magic wand transformed and, shrouded in a bright glow of power, became a striking magic staff, resembling a spear holding a sun. The entire transformation left Ban in shock, but when he picked up the staff, he saw the wand once again cursing those who had imprisoned her in that form, as if it were her mantra, her very reason for being. Ban felt like the magic wand had gone from a middle schooler's toy to a full-fledged teenage powerhouse. Now known as Sun's Tears, the magic wand's attributes were 350 points in both mana and soul. The name piqued Ban's interest, as did the skyrocketing stats. After a barrage of complaints, the staff grew weary. It had exerted itself a lot, but couldn't recall the names of those who had trapped it in that staff. The unleashed memories seemed to be its limit. Surprised by the staff's remark, Ban inquired, "So there's still potential for more growth? This isn't just beginner territory, is it?" The staff was irate. "What, a beginner? You actually called me a beginner. Don't say silly things. Do you really think I'm insignificant enough to only teach basic magic? Don't even think about using me for low-level missions." Ban noticed that the staff's son, after regaining some of its memories, had a complete change in attitude. When he mistakenly called the staff by the name Solon Ban, confused it, but it soon revealed that was the name it used to go by. and so he put forth a deal. Standing before the staff, he proposed, "If you help me out properly, I'll make sure your wish gets fulfilled too. That way you can reclaim your powers, your memories, and achieve your goals." Hearing the offer, the staff fell silent. The next day, before the magical combat class began, Ban encountered Slight and Rushel, who quickly latched onto his arms excitedly asking, "Can I really not come with you? I think just being by your side is enough, right? I'll be quiet, I promise." Slight clung to Ban's other arm, sobbing. After pondering for several days, Ban thought it felt wrong. Not to use the holy sword, didn't it? Why take that gamble? Where would he find something better than his sword? Ban swiftly pushed the two away, irritated. "No way that's happened." "Absolutely not. Do take them with you." Ito grinned mischievously from behind Rushel and Slight, snapping her fingers as she commented, Hey, I've really not liked how these two have been acting lately. Maybe this will straighten them out." Grabbing Rushel and Slight by the collars of their shirts, Duco dragged them while they cried out for Ban to save them. Left alone once again, Ban plopped down on a sofa, finally able to relax, opening a number window. The protagonist began to explore the structure of the student's teleport card, the one that came with the necklace they received upon entering the Union. The binary number codes showed concepts tied to physical movements in space. To make them work, Ban just needed to pull out the variable part, which was the coordinate. Feeling quite clever, Ban grinned to himself. With his current knowledge and his son's power, they teamed up perfectly for generating coordinates. Spells that once puzzled him could now be easily broken down and put back together. As he set up the info on the teleport device, Ban added some previously memorized coordinates alongside an activation point. Before long, a mystical circle appeared around him, leaving him amazed by the outcome. Out of nowhere, he vanished, teleporting in an instant. Ban reappeared in a different location, causing a young witch resting there to jump in surprise. She watched him revel in his success. A bit dumbfounded, curiosity got the better of her, prompting her to ask Tella what's it. Hearing a voice, Ban whirled around. The girl with blue hair and a pointed hat adorned with a buckle stood up gazing at Ban while she inquired, "Did you just teleport?" The protagonist beamed, noting that he had used the function from the students' IDs, but the girl seemed skeptical. "You adjusted the coordinate, didn't you?" Though taken aback, Ban nodded in agreement, approaching him and making eye contact, which made him feel a bit uneasy. She pressed him for details on how he'd accomplished that. Bashfully, Ban responded, "Well, using mana, of course." This piqued her interest even more. "You decoded and deciphered the extensive code within the students' identifications." The girl grasped Ban's shirt, firmly demanding, "How did you manage to alter just the coordinate needed for teleporting?" It felt like a real interrogation as she pushed the protagonist for answers. "How did you meddle with the code devised by the director?" Alarmed Ban wondered why he was suddenly being grilled, fretting over whether he'd done something wrong. Most importantly, he was curious who this girl was, and if he had crossed paths with her before. Just then, the familiar face of Yumina appeared behind him, causing a chill to run down his spine. Ban spun around quickly to see the professor. She stood there with a calm demeanor. "You figured out how to get here all on your own, Ban. Oh my goodness. I told you to join the magic class, but I forgot to mention where the classroom was. I thought I'd need to come find you, but you navigated it all by yourself." After hearing the professor's words and the student who had been grilling him, the young mage looked at both of them with a puzzled expression. Yumina noticed the girl and greeted her. "Oh, Ira, you're here too. Well then, shall we start together?" Bowing in thanks, the young Arag nodded in agreement with Yumina. Ban stood next to her, who smiled quietly while letting out a sigh. He expressed his gratitude, saying, "Thanks for stepping in, Professor. It's the first time I've seen anyone so forceful since meeting Du." Smiling in relief, Yumina remarked, "Well, I'd personally rather not have any incidents that include any other heroines," leaving Ban feeling a bit perplexed. Yumina geared up to kick off the class. Up in the sky in a sheltered arena where a select group of students had gathered, Yumina stood at the podium ready to grab everyone's attention. "Hey everyone, we have a new student joining us. This is Ban from Class 11. Let's give him a warm welcome." As a few people clapped upon his arrival in the class, Ban introduced himself with a gentle nod. "From now on, I'm eager to learn a lot from all of you." Somehow, Ban found himself in this situation. While the classmates applauded and welcomed him, there was an underlying animosity as they seethed over him, chatting so cheerfully with their beloved professor. Yumina. Glancing around, Ban counted only 9 students in total. It seemed that only a select few could truly use magic along with their innate abilities. While scanning the room, Ban spotted the mage who had questioned him earlier. Trying to recall her name, he thought, Ira. She sat off to the side, which puzzled him, making him wonder if there was some tension among her and the other students. However, Ban noticed something that challenged his initial assumption. Ira radiated a whirlwind of mana that erupted like the sun, whereas the other students gave off mere wisps of energy. It was clear there was a substantial gap between them, a gap that kept them apart. Ban recalled that during his special class, Dio mentioned someone possibly stronger than Ortima. Looking at the blue-haired girl with the pointed hat, Ban pondered if that person could indeed be her. As Yumina prepared for the class, a girl with short golden hair raised her hand. "Professor, I have a question." Yumina encouraged Misty to go ahead and ask her question, which was about whether this student could also do magic, considering he hadn't joined in the classes until now. Yumina shared the surprising truth, leaving everyone stunned. He found an artifact during a recent exploration, and this artifact chose him as its owner, causing his magical talents to awaken. When everyone heard about the artifact, they were left in awe, their eyes wide open. The surprise and confusion around made Yumina realize something important, which gave her the perfect opportunity for a little promotion. "Hey, it looks like you all haven't subscribed to the channel yet." Even Yumina was promoting his video channel, making Ban speechless. Some students were scratching their heads about how an artifact could awaken someone's magical talent and choose them as its master, something they had never encountered before. Yumina listened to everyone's remarks with a smile, keeping her thoughts to herself. "You all are amazing enough to be chosen by the Union, but I bet you've never come across something like this before. After all, having innate magical ability is super rare. It's no wonder it's hard to digest this news, but for those with hidden talents, situations like this happen all the time." After hearing Yumina's clarifications, Misty raised her hand again. "Professor, can we ask him to show us some magic?" "Of course." Ban was taken aback by the girl's request, since she wanted to witness what it meant to awaken a latent talent. Yumina quickly tried to shield Ban from that, but he spoke up. "I'm good with it, Professor." Even Yumina was surprised by Ban's response, knowing he had only gotten the artifact a week ago. Standing up, Ban asked for the girl's understanding. "I just started learning magic, so just know that I'm not ready for anything too complicated." Even though he spoke calmly, Ban had a smile on his face, making Misty a little suspicious. He walked to the center of the classroom arena, thinking about spells. There were several spells he still struggled with, so he decided to go with the simplest one. For this spell, Ban chose the air element. He stretched out his hands and summoned the element, envisioning it spinning in everyone's minds. Then he modified the magical attribute, making it whirl like a tornado, expanding outward. In the next moment, Ban used fire, catching everyone off guard as they witnessed his elemental magic. By merging the wind with the fire, Ban conjured a tornado that grew violently in the center of the arena. Many students stepped back in fear of the flames swirling under Ban's command. Most were in shock and commented loudly, "He doesn't even need an incantation. This feels more like a superpower than magic." However, Misty, who was carefully observing, recognized that this was definitely magic. This was a kind of magic that didn't require a chant. Era watched Ban's magic unfold in silence while others fussed. Contemplating many thoughts, she didn't speak up. Once Ban finished displaying his magic, Yumina asked him to wrap it up. Clapping his hands, Ban quickly extinguished the flames and the wind. Yumina beamed and clapped her hands, praising him. "That was an amazing show. The fact that you didn't need an incantation was a surprise, but the power was just as remarkable. It's hard to believe you just started learning magic, right, everyone?" Faced with Yumina's question, everyone fell into silence. As Ban was making his way back up the bleachers, he caught a few grumbling voices saying, "So this is what a special admission talent looks like. Wow, he might even be better at magic than me." Misty, next to the annoyed student, tried to calm him down. "It's just basic elemental magic. No need to make a big deal out of it." Curious Ban glanced toward a spot in the arena. He looked at the blue-haired girl, hoping for some reaction, but when he saw her stony expression, he let out a huff. Ira had turned away, thinking to herself, "This kind of thing is dull. Is that all?" After the welcome was done, Yumina asked everyone to get ready for the start of the class. Internally chuckling, knowing that the girl was strong enough not to be bothered by his abilities, Ban sat down. At the end of the class, as Ban was getting ready to leave, someone unexpectedly grabbed the collar of his shirt. Turning to the side, he saw that Era had stopped him. As Ban was getting ready to leave, someone unexpectedly grabbed him by the shirt. Looking to the side, he realized Era had stopped him. The girl was back to quiz him yet again. "You still haven't answered the question I asked you before." When some students spotted Era chatting with the special admission student, they were intrigued. Completely unaware they were being observed, Ban tried to slip away from Era. "I thought I already gave you an answer earlier." Yet she kept pushing. "You analyzed and meddled with the entire code that the director crafted." Confused, the protagonist wondered if that was an exceptionally tough task. Ira was pretty relentless with her questions. "I would get it if you had permission to tweak teleportation coordinates. But how did you manage that?" Spotting Ira once more putting pressure on Ban, Yumina strolled over, calling out to the girl. Still holding on to Ban to keep him from escaping, Ira asked Yumina if she needed something. Reluctantly, Yumina admitted she actually needed Ban since he had a counseling session coming up. Moreover, Yumina assured Era, leaving her taken aback. Ban never got any sort of permission for changes. Those privileges are reserved for tenured professors. Hearing the professor, Era remarked in frustration. So he really did it all on his own, confirming the girl's assumption. Yumina asked if her answer cleared up the confusion she had. Then she waved goodbye to Era, signaling Bond to follow her.